Dragon Clan. Mingfei Returns from Warhammer 40,000. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201 King of Resurrection. Angus quietly tightened his folding knife, watching Mingfei irrigate the boy's second heart with his own blood. In the past story memories, it was a dose of adrenaline that revived the boy from the state of suspended death, but Angus quickly dispelled the doubt about whether this weird blood sacrifice behavior would be effective. His exposed skin could clearly feel that the temperature in the wine cellar was dropping sharply, as if it had become a cold storage that had just been started at high speed. The hidden elements floating in the air were gathering here. The king in the coffin had not fully awakened, but he had already demonstrated the authority he controlled. Angus gritted his teeth and did not let his body retreat. The invisible terrifying dragon power was spreading with the low temperature. The bloodline suppression of pure-blooded dragons on hybrids was completely manifested. Even though Angus had extreme hatred and anger towards the dragon race in his heart, his body instinctively resisted the battle and just wanted to turn around and run away. The boy's resurgence was far more terrifying than the one in his memory. Obviously, Mingfei's blood was much more useful than adrenaline. If he didn't know that he was in a dream memory, Ange might subconsciously think that Mingfei was actually a follower of the boy in the coffin, lurking until now just to revive his master and come back to the world. Very good self-regeneration ability, and can show better repair function than Larimon when suffering from serious trauma. There is also another skeletal structure. It should be the part that makes up their wings, but it doesn't make much sense for now. The water element is automatically gathering. Is it because the flesh of this species itself has an affinity for the element? More research is needed. The body that is not completely dead has become a shackle that binds their spirit. Only when the body is completely dead can they transfer their spirit. Although it is not as good as the rebirth protocol of the space necromancer, it is still a worthy existence to study at the biological level. Then how do they transfer their spiritual power? Through a pure spiritual space like the Nibelungen. This can also explain their affinity for psychic energy. The boy's organs were drying up and turning red, and the blood was flowing again. The eyes on that handsome face had slowly opened, staring at Mingfei coldly. However, Mingfei paid no attention to the boy's gaze. His eyes, as bright as golden gas lamps, were scanning the boy's body. While his left palm was bleeding, his right hand was still holding a scalpel and cutting the boy's blood vessels or tendons, like a naughty child creating some trouble for the boy's rapidly healing body. But his expression was calm as usual, with the rigor and rationality of scientific research, as if the boy in the coffin was still a human specimen for unlimited research. Rather than the king who was recovering. The previously sawed bones were growing rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. The pale bones were entangled like intertwined tree roots, and they merged into a hard bone plate again, blocking Mingfei's in-depth research on his body. The next second, the boy's two slender arms rose up like lightning, and the cold wind seemed to freeze even the air. The pale frost covered the boy's palms to form a pair of sharp claws. It can be seen that he was furious, and he was going to tear apart this tiny human who'd blasphemed him without waiting for his body to fully recover. Mingfei's palm was filled with bright golden light. He calmly grabbed two ice claws that were attacking his throat with one hand. He was not panicked at all. He stared at the boy who had squatted up from the coffin at some point with a thoughtful look. The boy had a blank expression on his face. His eyes shone with dazzling golden light. The iron blue hair growing from his skin expanded and changed rapidly, forming dense and perfect shield-shaped scales that covered his whole body. 5 Thunder Generals, General Train, soar into the sky and fall into the ground, driving thunder and rushing clouds, with thousands of troops, commanding the divine soldiers, raising the flag and calling for urgent summons, no delay. Hurry up and obey that command. Angus on the side had already entered a blood-spurting state. The blood-spurting and the wolfer event barely dispelled the body's timid instinct to resist fighting. He was reciting the flag-raising spell written on the silver nameplate thrown into the air. Lucian had explained the Shakespeare characters on it to him. A strong light flashed, and countless phantoms dissipated in an instant. An ancient Chinese army galloped on horseback, and sharp spears pierced through space and pressed down on Mingfei and the boy. This is an alchemical artifact that can use language to activate the spirit sealed in it to temporarily suppress the enemy. However, under the stimulation of Mingfei's blood medicine, the enemy named Li Wu's momentum was far greater than before, and this silver metal could no longer suppress his power. Bang! The coffin had already turned into countless fragments when the sound of the explosion sounded. The illusory ancient army collapsed as the lacquer bone wings behind the boy opened, and blood mist bloomed behind him. This was the second set of hidden bone structure that Mingfei mentioned earlier. And in the scarlet blood mist, a sharp dark blue bone broke out of the body, like the tail hook of a poisonous scorpion, swimming out at a tricky and strange angle to attack Mingfei's back. That is the blind spot of human senses, and the boy seems to be quite aware of human weaknesses, but in the next second, his whole body was thrown out directly, and the wall cabinets displaying rows of wine barrels were shattered as if hit by a cannonball, and deep red ice chips were mixed with wood chips. As if the alien's attack had aroused some emotions, the dazzling golden light enveloped Mingfei's whole body, as if a sacred flame was burning. In a trance, a heavy golden armor covering the whole body was gradually taking shape, and a lifelike golden needle carved on the surface of the breastplate was about to spread its wings and fly. A golden laurel wreath wrapped in golden light appeared on his forehead, and a golden sword condensed and formed in his right hand, with a substantial golden flame burning on the blade. In an instant, Mingfei's image changed from a rational scholar pursuing science to a warrior who could charge into the battlefield. I have stayed in that rotten body that was about to be swallowed by divinity for too long. I hope I haven't forgotten how to fight with a sword. He whispered softly, staring at the humanoid alien who rose from the mess with a dazzling star-like gaze. But Li Yu's figure became a little blurry. After failing to suppress him with the alchemical silver medal, Angus, who was shocked by the changes in Mingfei, also realized that this dream began to become unstable. The shouts of Dr. Modler who left, the chat of several old men such as Viscount Charlotte while enjoying black tea, the high fives of Menick and Lucian, memories were shattering in his mind. It seems that the battle will be returned to zero. Mingfei sighed softly, and the dazzling golden armor, halo and sword disappeared in an instant. He changed from the sacred posture of a god just now to the seemingly ordinary boy again. Burning this child's brain is not conducive to the psychological indoctrination of future soldiers. Gentlemen, you were obstructing the development of human science. You intend to cover up the great new discoveries in human history. Dr. Modler and his medical team, who were forcibly driven out of the wine cellar, protested loudly in the manor. The young Count Menick realized something was wrong and immediately led his companions to question the situation. Under drive Modler's passionate and excited confession, Menick's expression became gloomy. What happened, Menick? The movement here attracted the attention of three old gentlemen. They were enjoying black tea on the second floor and discussing the establishment of an academy dedicated to training elite dragon slayers to prepare for future dragon slayer wars. The cargo in the coffin is not dead yet, he is alive. Menick took a deep breath and stated this horrible fact. Impossible, even Deadpool can't survive in that situation. No, even pure-blooded dragons will not have such strong survival ability after 3 generations. Lord Mate widened his eyes and immediately refuted. I saw it with my own eyes. Honorable sir. He has 2 hearts, and the second heart is still beating. This is the discovery of a new species, Dr. Modler said loudly, but was soon driven away by someone, but now is not the time to consider covering his mouth. Damn it, damn it, damn it, could it be that the specimen is a second-generation species or even a first-generation species? Have we won the jackpot or fallen into a deadly trap? Menick paced at a high speed. No matter what it is, this dangerous thing should be destroyed immediately. Destroy the specimen immediately, use RDX explosives to blow it up. There must not be any tissue left. Lord Mate recovered from the shock. Ange and his student are still in the wine cellar. Menick's expression changed. Chief and Tiger, come with me to the wine cellar. Shingen, you take the rest of the people to guard the entrance to the wine cellar. Get your rifles ready. Large hailstones fell from the sky, and a bone-deep chill came over them. The temperature of the castle manor suddenly dropped by dozens of degrees in the blink of an eye, and the lawn of the manor was covered with a layer of pale frost. It's too late. Detonate the explosives in the wine cellar immediately. Ash, get your crop cannon ready. In addition to the 30-year-old Bordeaux wines in the wine cellar, there are also black explosives stored underneath, which can tear apart half of the castle estate after detonation. The abnormal changes made Menick's heart temperature drop to the bottom. He couldn't hesitate. Regardless of whether the revival of the dragon specimen was related to Ange and his student, he had to completely destroy the other party here. The ground at the courtyard suddenly bulged strangely, and cracks appeared. Before everyone could react, several thick and sharp icicles tore the ground directly, surrounding each other like a huge frozen throne. An ancient Asian boy stood at the top of the icicle. He had a pair of iron-blue wings on his back, and the ferocious iron scales were wrapped in pale ice crystals. He looked down at everyone with the majesty of an emperor with a pair of dazzling golden eyes. Dragon power, the dragon power that trampled on everything and crushed everything. Menek breathed heavily, feeling his confidence collapsing. The words that he usually blurted out rolled in his mind like a whirlpool, but he couldn't say them out. Under the suppression of the dragon's might, he felt that he was almost suffocating. This was the advantage of Bloodliner. The dragon-slaying elites of the secret party had dragon bloodliner and similar power to dragons, but in front of this extremely noble dragon king, they seemed to have turned back into lowly hybrids. Under this suffocating pressure, only a touch of golden light was rapidly approaching the boy. The boy's handsome face suddenly became ferocious because of anger. He flapped his wings behind him, and the hail falling from the sky was carved into sharp ice spikes by an invisible force, and rushed towards the figure holding a giant sword and rushing towards him with a biting cold wave. Chapter 202 Li Waiyu, the King of Ocean and Water, for Saint Rus. For the primage. Mingfei roared loudly, and his emotions were now in a state of extreme excitement and fanaticism. Saint Rus had just briefly taken over his spirit in the dream. In the stories and legends that Mingfei had heard, there had never been such a thing. When the sons of Saint Rus were in the most difficult times, it was often the great Saint Reno who appeared to save them. There is no doubt that this is absolutely the supreme honor. If the Blood Angels mother group knew about this, the Weepers, who had been ostracized because of the curse of the founding of the army and the Badab War, might be able to get their help. But these things have to be put aside for later. Now we have to try to deal with this revived alien. Mingfei ran wildly with the sword in his hand, and the golden holy flame burned on the pure moon sword, which was the only bright color in this dark and cold world. The boy roared, flapped his iron-blue ferocious membrane wings and swooped down. He was wrapped in sharp ice spikes all over the sky, as if he was leading thousands of troops to pounce on the bright color. The aura that the human had exuded when he tried to condense a set of armor with unknown elements actually made him feel an emotion called fear. Although the other party's aura is no longer as good as before, he still dared not be careless. He must use thunderous means to wipe out the other party from this world, and then think about how far the lowly humans who stole their power in the past have developed now. The transparent ice crystals were stained with a touch of golden light, and each ice spike that could easily penetrate the human body engulfed Mingfei like a storm, but Mingfei's speed did not slow down at all. The broadsword body of the Jinyu giant sword acted as the hardest shield, and all the ice spikes were smashed into crystal powder. He charged with the sword, and rushed to the front of the alien in one breath. After turning the sword, he smashed the last few ice spikes that attacked, and then accurately stacked at the position of the alien's first heart. The alien seemed to have been prepared for a close combat. The extremely cold ice covered its palms, blocking the sword that could have cut its entire chest. At the same time, the silver-white mist condensed into a blue giant sword in its right hand that was completely inconsistent with its body shape, and slashed straight at Mingfei. The swords collided with each other, and after the first contact, they collided hundreds of times at a speed that ordinary people could not see clearly. The strong wind swept the entire castle manor with cold debris. There was no doubt that a pure sword fight was going on between the two. The two boys wielded the pale blue giant swords that were extremely inconsistent with their bodies and fought desperately. No one could see their movements clearly. They could only see the golden and dark blue light colliding fiercely with a flickering amplitude, like a flowing electric arc. But this sword fight was not so pure. The invisible force field that was sweeping like a blizzard was the home of the dragon. The controlled elements tried to condense into fatal attacks outside Mingfei's blind spot to sneak attack and kill him, but every time Mingfei seemed to have predicted it in advance and avoided it in time. Oh my god, Lord Make, who evacuated to the outside of the manor in time, looked at the extraordinary battle between the two humanoid creatures in the manor and his face turned pale. Just when they confidently thought that gunpowder and steel could blast away the shadows brought by the group of ancient creatures, the battle that broke out in the castle manor taught them a lesson again. It is hard to imagine that the battle between cold weapons can actually erupt with such a shocking visual effect. In the era when gunpowder weapons were not yet popular, those dragon slayers used the cold swords in their hands and the courage in their hearts to fight against such terrible creatures. Moreover, the might of the dragon that could crush the hybrids to their knees was still lingering in the world. Just facing it made them feel suffocated. The hybrids' bodies instinctively recalled the ancient shadows that ruled the world in the ancient times. It's time to evacuate here. While that student Evanch can still buy us some time, Lord May took a deep breath, lowered his head, took out a black box from his handbag that he never left, and handed it to Viscount Charlotte. Those undeads who serve the dragon clan will soon swarm in like flies smelling cheese. Make, what do you want to do? Viscount Charlotte grabbed the black box, his hands trembling slightly. Split up and leave. I hope that dragon and those undead disciples can be led away by me. Make took out a delicate revolver from his arms, cocked the bolt and held it in his hand. You take another carriage and take the egg away, go in the opposite direction of me. The three gentlemen looked at each other and shook hands, which was rare. They knew that after this separation, they might not see each other again. The last 3 Iron Cross Roses of the elite Crossroads Society of the Secret Party will also wither now, but this is nothing. Compared with those companions who fell earlier, they are lucky. The university must be opened, and the war against the dragons cannot be stopped. No matter who survives, our cause must continue. Lord Make said at last. Ange, I'm sorry that I had the idea that you would be a dragon spy before, but now I just want to know where you found such an excellent student. Mennick stared at the battle in the manor and held the faintly vibrating Atkin longsword in his hand. This was a battle of true dragon level, not the small fights in the past to find Deadpool. The awakened dragon showed his magical elemental control ability like in mythology. It was like a shocking blizzard in Castle Manor. The two people in the center became the brightest light source, forming two completely different worlds from the dark rainy night outside. In Chinese, he is a general who is rarely seen in 1,000 years. Lu Shenyan's eyes stayed on the brother of the same clan who faced the dragon, and then looked at Angus. Lu Mingfei is his real name, right? Angus just nodded. It was useless to explain more to his deceased comrades in the dream. As an Avenger, if possible, he also wanted to rush into the manor to test what kind of combat power he could show in front of the real first generation. After all, the ignorant tool used to slay dragons, is now a real dragon slayer that he cannot see clearly. You seem to be very obsessed with the fact that you are a human being. Li Waiyu spoke softly to Lu Mingfei not far away in ancient and pure Chinese. I will always be a human, an alien. Lu Mingfei panted, trying to calm the heart that was beating so hard that it seemed to want to jump out of his body, staring coldly at the boy with wings on his back. The blood in your body is no different from that of my race, but you still maintain the hypocritical human appearance and the cowardly mixed blood body. Li Waiyu's voice was very clear. You stand between the boundaries of humans and dragons. People like you cannot be recognized by humans. You must hide your identity and live like mice. If one day humans find out that you are an alien species with abilities far beyond theirs, and use these abilities to gain wealth and status above them, what will they do? Will they be grateful to you for slaughtering their ancestors? No, they will fear you, avoid you, hate you, and even kill you in the end to divide your secrets and wealth. In that case, why do you still want to protect humans? For the will of the Emperor. Lu Mingfei answered coldly. The two seemed to be in a time similar to Halfling, but now Lu Mingfei needed this time more. Blood Rage, this alien technology that can be called blasphemy but can greatly enhance the strength of hybrids, has been squeezed to the limit by Lu Mingfei, and has even reached the point of 3rd degree Blood Rage. This level is estimated to make hybrids irreversibly degenerate directly to the level of aliens, and become a Deadpool who only knows how to kill and obey the aliens from the spiritual level. But as a loyal Astartes who has fought for more than 100 years in the Weepers, he has resisted the temptation and bewitching of chaos, and restrained bloodthirst and black anger. The killing desire that emerged from the depths of his blood and wanted to occupy his mind was quickly suppressed by Lu Mingfei, but the physical burden brought by it was also huge. And Li Waiyu, I don't know what happened to the original gene body during the short period of taking over his body. He can feel that the body of this alien is still recovering at a high speed. In the battle just now, he didn't even use the word spirit that belongs to the alien. And Lu Mingfei has exerted all his normal powers, including the prophecy psychic power. You were a very interesting specimen, and your blood also contains other different powers. Li Waiyu's voice became cold, but you have embarked on the road to becoming a god, and even have the opportunity to steal this power for the use of mankind. According to the regulations of the Elders' Council, you must be completely wiped out. The road to becoming a god. You aliens are also qualified to call yourself a god. Lu Mingfei did not hide the sneer and disdain on his face. The only one who is qualified to be called a god is, but he soon couldn't say a word, as if his throat was blocked by something, and he couldn't say those two words. Only? Which false god do you serve? Li Waiyu asked. In your human myths and legends, all gods are just our incarnations. Shut up, alien. Lu Mingfei adjusted his mood and raised his sword again to make a fighting posture. Stupid human. Li Waiyu shook his head, and a pale blue dream-like cold air gathered around him, condensing into a ferocious ice armor with unique beauty, and the sharp barbs and hooks flashed with crystal cold light. The surface of the pair of iron-blue membrane wings behind him was also covered with a layer of fine ice armor shield scales, and the end of the long tail condensed into a sharp ice knife, as poisonous as a venomous snake. In a blink of an eye, his momentum changed again. Although he was still a human, he was undoubtedly as majestic as a god walking on Earth at this moment, although this majesty did not exist for Mingfei. It is your honor to be personally wiped out by the king of ocean and water, who holds one of the powers of the elements, human. Li Waiyu spoke indifferently. The blizzard had stopped, and the pale blue mist filled the completely destroyed castle manor. There is no doubt that with the passage of time, the power of this alien has recovered to be stronger. But Mingfei's figure also changed at this moment. The boy who was about the same height as him had disappeared, replaced by a tall giant wearing bright yellow metal heavy armor, the eyepiece of the helmet emitting a fascinating red light in the misty blue fog. Although it is somewhat inconsistent with the original intention of my visit this time, it does require a stronger force to purify aliens of your level. The low voice like thunder came out from the breathing fence of the helmet, and turned into bursts of white air in the extremely cold air. This is not cheating. With the Primarch and the Alchemist, it is not impossible to form a powerful army loyal to the Emperor to crush you. Now let's face the real son of St. Jeremiah, the alien. Jiangnan teacher's Dragon King almost made it clear who the Wind King would be and used the book Summer Morning, so Li Waiyu's authority was changed and made one of the main bosses. Chapter 203. Champion's Power. The invisible wall formed two completely different worlds inside and outside the castle manor. The interior of the manor seemed to have fallen into the extremely cold Siberia, shrouded by a vast blizzard. An irregular sharp-edged ice block the size of a rockery seemed to be generated out of thin air. In the blink of an eye, it formed in the mid-air where the blizzard was raging, and then fell towards the steel warrior on the ground. The warrior in bright yellow heavy armor took a step, bursting out with agility and speed that was completely inconsistent with his bulky appearance to avoid the falling iceberg, and then charged towards the god who was surrounded by extremely cold mist and seemed to have walked out of the ice valley. The momentum was like a running heavy tank, although it was still 16 years before the first tank in history entered the battlefield. Your body has changed beyond the specification. I can't feel any dragon blood. What kind of power is this? Li Waiyu felt the vibration of the ground and his tone became uncertain. But he did not stop controlling the elemental power. Sharp ice spikes rose from the ground, trying to pierce the body of the charging warrior. Human technology, the blood of St. Jeremiah, and the wisdom of the Emperor. Remember the power of austerities with your life, alien. A dull roar like thunder came from the breathing grid of the helmet. All the attacks condensed by Li Waiyu failed to penetrate the thick and heavy shoulder armor. The weeping red heart in the black and white grid was bright. Mingfei's charge did not slow down at all. After smashing the last icicle blocking the way, he rushed in front of Li Waiyu and swung the huge armored fist. Li Waiyu held his sword horizontally to block. At the same time, the slender tail behind him, which was like a venomous snake, condensed into a blade and stabbed at the weak point between the opponent's helmet and breastplate at a tricky and fierce angle. But in his astonished eyes, the next second, the giant sword forged with elemental alchemy was smashed by a punch. Bang! Although he was not equipped with power gloves, Astator's physical strength was not comparable to that of the hybrid after the bloodburst. After smashing the sword blade, the huge bright yellow fist violently blasted through Li Waiyu's ice armor to protect himself, and ice chips flew everywhere. At the same time, his long tail that wanted to kill the opponent was also grabbed by the opponent's agility and reaction speed that did not match his heavy appearance. The ice tip at the end of the tail had not even touched the opponent's body, but even if it did, it would be useless, as Astator's neck was also protected by armor. This was different from the armor worn by soldiers in the ancient Kingdom War. Astator's power armor was the wisdom of human technology. The seemingly simple power armor was actually a very complex defensive system that combined powerful physical defense performance and sensor arrays to provide Astator with all-round protection. At the same time, it could be closely integrated with Astator's superhuman physiology, sensors and reflexes, without causing even the slightest hindrance. As his fist clenched, the blade at the end of the long tail was broken. Mingfei grabbed the alien's tail tightly and wrapped it around his strong wrist several times to prevent it from breaking free. Then he raised his fist again and smashed it against the ice armor that had not yet recovered. This punch hit Li Waiyu's chest firmly, and a crisp bone-cracking sound rang out. If Li Waiyu looked inside himself at this time, he would find that the solid bone plate in his chest that had been fused into a hole had cracks. Bang! 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 Mingfei punched continuously, and the force of each punch could kill a Deadpool alive. Li Waiyu's chest visibly sank. Enough! He roared in anger, and the extremely cold ice covered his palms to form huge claws and swung them towards Mingfei. At the same time, the pair of iron wings behind him also stretched out, becoming his third pair of limbs. The ferocious thorns on the dragon wings wanted to tear this human into pieces. In his opinion, humans who stole the power of dragons are always lowly species. They used despicable means to make him fall asleep because they could only do this. However, thousands of years later, there are humans who suppress him in a face-to-face confrontation. This is unbearable for a proud king who holds the power of elements. However, Li Waiyu was completely defeated in the close combat. Most of his swift and deadly attacks were cleverly resolved by the opponent. A small part of the attack with the wings fell on the opponent and even failed to scratch the opponent's armor. He roared angrily and flapped his wings desperately to take him to the sky. However, Mingfei grabbed his tail. The powerful force restrained him like a ship tied to a huge anchor, which could not sail easily. The next second, he was pulled back by a huge force. A bright yellow bloody fist in his side quickly enlarged. Bang! Mingfei punched Li Waiyu in the face, and the broken ice was smashed into his eye socket by the cold fist. The handsome Asian face was blurred and blood flowed. Then, he pressed the palm of his hand holding the alien's tail on Li Waiyu's shoulder protected by the broken ice armor like a yoke, and the other palm grabbed his neck. Li Waiyu's golden eyes were stained with blood, and he could not see the other's expression clearly, but could only see the fascinating red light of the other's helmet. The next second, he instantly knew what the other was going to do. From the huge force that almost suffocated him, a kind of fear surged in his heart. This madman! He actually wanted to twist his head off his body. In a moment, the ninefold true dragon will appear, and the eternal ordinary horses will be wiped out. Lu Xunyan whispered. He and his remaining Linhard companions were waiting outside the manor. Not long ago, they were ready to fight as if they were facing a great enemy, holding muskets loaded with mercury bullets and loading cannons with silver mercury shells processed by alchemy. Now they have already put down their guns and watched the battle in the manor in shock. The deceased in the story didn't know how the original story would go, but he never thought that the new story would develop in this way. If the first round of confrontation was a battle between mixed-blood humans and dragons in the cold weapon era, then the current battle was a more primitive and ancient melee, but there has probably never been a dragon-slaying hero who can fight dragons in pure melee in history. Of course, Mingfei was not a pure melee. Lu Xunyan could see that Mingfei's heroic heavy armor was not a simple metal product. When he ran, his might was like a giant dragon trampling the earth and running wildly. This reminded him of the shock he felt when he first arrived in Europe with Li Hongxing and witnessed the rumbling steam locomotives on the tracks in Europe for the first time. After this matter is over, can you let him go back to China with me? Lu Xunyan asked Angus. Help you kill the dragon you want to kill the most? Angus smiled helplessly. I think it might be a bit troublesome. The dragons he usually wants to kill are all real dragons. Li Waiyu screamed in pain, and after a fierce struggle, he made the most humiliating move. He cut off his own dragon tail, and before his spine was completely pulled out of his body, he used his best efforts to release the word spirit. Dust-free land. Within the domain, all living and non-living matter were repelled by the power of the word spirit, prompting them to stay away from the caster of the word spirit. But the crazy human in heavy armor was as solid as a rock and as stable as Mount Tai. Li Waiyu could only humiliate himself and quickly move away from the crazy and powerful human. Mingfei wanted to chase him. He had been on guard against or suppressing him from using the word spirit. He had not yet found a good way to deal with this power that was unique to dragon blood and could change the material of heaven and earth. Just like when he faced the series of word spirits released by the White King in the Night Food Plain, he could only choose to fight with his life. Li Waiyu did not give Mingfei a chance to get close. He soared in the wind and snow and kept a considerable distance from Mingfei. Although the long tail behind him could not grow out immediately, the dislocated and twisted bones in Li Waiyu's body began to repair. His inner fear was swallowed up by endless anger in an instant. The free elements between heaven and earth seemed to become more mannered because of the king's rage. He began to chant the complex and mysterious dragon text, but his voice was as gentle as the soft ballad of the snow girl compared to his ferocious and furious expression, but what followed was the extreme cold that froze the entire world. Word spirit. Ice abyss. A towering blue iceberg suddenly appeared in the mountain stream outside Dark Hamburg, and the space within 100 meters of Mingfei's position was instantly frozen. For a moment, Mingfei was sealed in solid ice and could not move. And, it's time for you to see what the true authority of God is. Li Waiyu roared angrily in the sky. Let us welcome the loyal War Master of the Second, crossed out, Empire, the Primarch of the First Legion Dark Angels. Lionel Johnson returns after a 10,000-year slumber. Caliban Green Flag, also recommend a good Warhammer novel. By the way, it's great to see more and more Warhammer fanfiction. I'm just afraid Chapter 204 The Power of Faith. If it were an ordinary person or a hybrid, such extreme cold would quickly destroy the fragile human body, freeze the blood into ice, and cause necrosis of various organs and tissues. But Mingfei only felt a slight chill, which was then dispelled by the temperature regulator inside the power armor. The seemingly bulky and redundant power backpack fixed on his back actually contained a subatomic microfusion generator, which provided a huge energy to support all the functions of the power armor. Astonishing heat was ejected from the innate nozzle behind him, and the high temperature quickly melted the ice around him, and Mingfei quickly regained his ability to move. However, before he could break the ice that trapped him, the furious dragon released his second word spirit. The water elements floating in the sky and earth condensed into ice, and the ice formed into hideous giant dragons and snakes that stretched their bodies between the sky and the earth. 1, 2, 3, finally, a huge creature composed of 9 ice snakes appeared, entangled and bit the iceberg that froze Mingfei. The boundary between reality and myth seemed to be broken. It was like the summoning technique in myths and legends, summoning ancient and terrifying beasts from hell to the world, giving people a strong visual shock and a deep sense of powerlessness. Word spirit. Geeing, I didn't expect that this word spirit actually existed, and it showed such a scene. Angus wiped the cold frost on his face outside the manor, staring at the dragon and snake dancing wildly in the manor in the distance. The level of the Dragon King's complete revival has to be raised again. We don't have Ultraman to deal with enemies of Godzilla's physique. The Krupp cannon is ready. Ready to fire at any time. The members of the Linhard Club adjusted the cannons not far away, and the muzzles were already aimed at the castle manor. As long as Lucian ordered, the 3 Krupp cannons would pour out high-powered gunpowder. Do you want to fire? We must not let this kind of thing out. Lucian panted. He has always been very confident in the cannons from the Krupp family. Lord Li Hongzheng spent countless silver to buy more than 300 cannons from Her and sent them back to the Qing dynasty. However, after witnessing the power of the dragon, he couldn't help but feel a little shaken. Wait a little longer. Angus patted his old friend's shoulder. He also wanted to let the Krupp cannon fire to test the effect of modern firepower against dragons, but Mingfei has not been defeated yet, and this past dream is still continuing. Boom, there was a harsh roar. With the help of the propulsion of the power backpack, Mingfei rushed out of the iceberg violently, holding a ripping chainsaw sword in his hand, and the chain blade rotated at high speed, cutting everything. Mercy of Weeping. Because of the scarcity of power weapons, even if he became the champion warrior of the Weeping Legion, Mingfei used this two-handed ripping chainsaw sword to purify the enemies of mankind for a long time. The automatic medical device had been injected with combat stimulants. With the help of the helmet, goggles and rangefinder, he immediately locked Li Yu's position in the complex environment of the raging storm and the huge alien's restlessness. He immediately raised his bolt rifle with his other hand and fired, emptying the magazine in one breath. 30 rounds of explosive shells flew towards the alien that was recovering its injuries and strength in the sky. After the previous lesson, Li Yu dared not be careless again. A ferocious dragon snake turned its slender neck to block the bombardment of the explosive shells for him, and ice chips flew across. At the same time, the heads of the other beasts turned around and opened their mouths to spit out extremely cold breath to engulf Mingfei. Along with the breath, there was also a pale flame, which burned fiercely under Mingfei's feet. Mingfei didn't know what kind of injuries he would suffer if he encountered these flames in his normal state. After all, he didn't feel any discomfort with the protection of the power armor. But it became a bit troublesome to kill the aliens. Mingfei missed the multi-barreled melter gun in the chapter. It was the only melter weapon besides the melter pistol used by the chapter leader. This expert-level weapon could easily melt even the Astartes ceramic steel armor, and the aliens would not be able to stop it easily. Yuan Zinv was indeed an excellent user of the dream taper word spirit. Perhaps it was the dream that shattered Feng Jianli's personality. He perfectly restored Mingfei's state and equipment during the Astartes period. Mingfei estimated that as long as Yuan Zinv could hold on, it would be feasible to restore and copy a Land Raider tank or even a Stripe cruiser, but this would be inconsistent with his original intention of entering this dream. Whether the Astartes can be perfectly reproduced in the future is still unknown, but these Dragon King level aliens do have powerful power. You can't expect the aliens to suddenly suffer from depression and reveal their flaws, right? This is more unreasonable than expecting the aliens to open the Nibelungen by themselves to enter this state. Mingfei put aside other unnecessary thoughts, took a deep breath, stepped on the flames and rushed out of the breath range of 9 infants. An alien head opened its mouth and rushed to bite him to death, but Mingfei did not give it this opportunity. Mercy of Lamentation made a violent roar, and the high-speed rotating single-molecule chain blade tore the ice-cast alien head like cutting paper. His charge did not weaken at all, and he avoided the alien heads that attacked one after another with an agility that was completely inconsistent with his body. At the same time, he raised the automatic loading grenade gun and kept changing the shooting angle to fire, but Li Waiyu flapped his wings and dodged at high speed in the blizzard, and controlled the elemental power for protection, so that few bombs hit the opponent's body directly. Li Waiyu also tried to use word spirit sword control to affect the armored metal on Mingfei's body, but the quality of ceramic steel was beyond the control range of his sword control. He controlled the power of water, and even the word spirits of bronze and fire kings cast by the crown of the Dragon King would be greatly weakened. I'm afraid that before the power accumulation is completed, he dare not come down to fight Mingfei in hand-to-hand combat, and only use the elemental 9 infants to attack the other party. The two sides fell into a rather awkward situation. One attack strength could not penetrate the other's defense for the time being, and the other did not have an efficient means of air attack. Just when Mingfei was worried about how to shoot the alien down from the sky, suddenly a familiar power surged into his body. It was the warm and sacred holy light blessed by the Emperor. At this time, his bright yellow power armor was stained with a layer of golden light, becoming more brilliant and dazzling. A pair of fuzzy light wings were extending from both sides of the power backpack, like the ancient wing-shaped power backpacks of the Holy Blood Angels Mother Group. Child, I didn't ask you to turn on this state for me. Mingfei frowned slightly and whispered. I'm sorry, but this is not what I did. It was that one. The voice of the Source Girl sounded in his ears, with trembling and uneasiness. Which one? Is it the Father of Angels? Mingfei was refreshed. Did the great St. Gervais want to take over his body in the dream again? Then he had no reason to refuse such honor. But he soon noticed something unusual again, because the austerity's form was fading, the Mercy of Lamentation was not stained with the alien's blood, and the superhuman body with 19 operations and the Mark 7 precision power armor also disappeared, and he returned to the hybrid form with alien blood in his body. All the holy light that appeared before was retracted into his body, as if it was forcibly squeezing and transforming his body organs. Mingfei only felt like he had become a toy, being needed by others, accompanied by extreme pain that gave him a strong sensory reaction. Li Waiyu also noticed the abnormality of Mingfei. He stopped in the air with some doubts, and condensed several sharp ice cones to fly down to the other party. However, what he didn't expect was that Mingfei didn't even dodge, allowing those ice cones to pierce his chest and nail himself to the ground. Is there something wrong with your condition? I knew that humans could never have the power to fight against the dragon race. After feeling the despicable and weak dragon bloodline again, Li Waiyu's mouth showed a happy and cruel smile. He no longer hesitated, and sharpened ferocious ice claws formed on his arms in an instant, swooping down with a piercing sonic boom. But the situation changed again. Li Waiyu's 2 ice claws that wanted to tear Mingfei apart were firmly grasped by the other party, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not go any further. Damn human, you're actually deceiving me. He moved his eyes to Mingfei's chest, trying to control the few ice cones still inserted on it to crush the other party's body from the inside, but the moment his eyes touched the other party, he was stunned. It seemed that there was a golden flame burning along the blood vessels inside Mingfei's body, and the organ tissues had also changed from the human beings he had known in the past. It was as if he was imitating the body structure of his own human form to change, transfer and generate new organ tissues. The ice cones seemed to be melted and broke on the ground. The wounds that were pierced before did not bleed a drop of blood and were healing at a high speed. The golden flames quickly materialized on the surface of the body, and the lingering flames melted the flying snow. Li Waiyu realized that something was wrong, and decisively opened her mouth to chant the ultimate dragon script to release the word spirit, but when the last dragon script came out, someone beside her lightly snapped his fingers. Undo. The elements that had just been condensed disappeared without a trace. Li Waiyu looked to their side with horror. The one who snapped his fingers was Mingfei, or it could be said that the boy who appeared at some point beside him was still holding his hands after snapping his fingers. The power of faith is 97% compatible, close to perfect. The boy stared at them with a calm tone and expression like a scholar observing experimental data. Now let's start testing the body data of the initial transformation plan. Chapter 205 My Emperor. Mingfei suddenly woke up. What came into view was the Milky Way across the sky, and the curtain of the night was dotted with thousands of twinkling stars. Mingfei had seen such scenery countless times when the warship was on a regular voyage, but it had never been as pure and reassuring as what he saw at this moment. Although it was not known whether there were other aliens in this universe, at least there was no pollution from the supreme heaven, and no trace of blasphemy from the Eye of Terror. He sat up from the frozen sea and saw a huge white moon slowly rising from the sea level in the distance. Half of the moon rose above the ice, and half of the moon was still below the sea level. The craters on the moon were clearly visible. The ice reflected the shadow of half of the moon, and it formed a perfect circle with half of the white moon in the sky. It seemed that Yuan's Yin had released the dream taper. Castle Manor, the awakened alien, the raging blizzard, all the scenes disappeared, and the memories of the summer morning seemed to have ended. But Mingfei knew nothing about this. He lost consciousness after the sacred and blazing holy light poured into his body. "Brother, are you awake?" someone whispered to him. Luming's, the boy with the same name as his uncle's child and suspected to be a demon spirit, appeared in front of Mingfei, bathed in the silvery white moonlight. The smile on his face was gentle and cunning, and his eyes were shining with golden light. "We haven't spoken since we came back from the night food plane. Brother, do you miss me?" "No," Mingfei responded indifferently. "Where is this place? What tricks are you playing?" Whether he admits it or not, Luming's did give him some help, such as letting the innocent woman survive the Maria Hospital incident instead of being purified by him, and providing information about the fatal flaw of the ancient power. Illusion when facing the war against the White King alien. What a sad answer, Luming's sighed with a resentful look on his face. "Although I also want to reminisce with you, brother, there is a more important person who wants to see you." When he said this, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, as if he thought of something funny. Mingfei was puzzled, and looked around the world on the ice sea again, and found a simple wooden house not far away. "Who else is here beside you?" He became alert instinctively. From a space wreck of the Dark Angels during the Great Purge of the Empire, he was fortunate to learn some deeper and more secretive history of the Horus heresy. For example, Horus, the Primarch of the 16th Legion, who was once the most beloved descendant of the Emperor and respected by other Primarch brothers, was sent to a so-called temple for healing because of his serious injuries before his rebellion and fall. "Brother, your persecution delusion is still so serious," Luming sighed again with resentment, "but it's not your fault, brother. You did go to a very scary place during that time, but some things still need to be witnessed by yourself." After speaking, he took the lead and walked towards the small house standing on the ice sea in the distance. Mingfei was silent for a while, and then followed Luming's while silently praying and reciting the Emperor's holy words in his heart. Such a beautiful scene is obviously not a natural scene, and he obviously does not have the ability to leave here now. So he decided that no matter what was in the house, he would smash it and destroy it, in order to defend his loyalty to the Emperor and never be polluted by the evil and blasphemous power. The structure of the wooden house was very simple, built with dark brown logs, and it looked like it could not withstand the severe cold here. Luming's pushed open the door of the wooden house, but he did not go in. Instead, he stepped aside and opened his arms to make a ceremonial gesture, indicating that there was a more noble and great existence inside. Mingfei took a deep breath and walked in. Unlike the blasphemous and evil creations he imagined, there was only one living person in the wooden house, and his existence was so dazzling and eye-catching that Mingfei did not realize that the space in the wooden house was dozens of times larger than it looked from the outside, or the other humanoid specimens suspended in the air. His attention was completely on the boy. He seemed like a star in the galaxy, with a warm and holy light that dispelled all the darkness and coldness, and a body full of light exuded a dangerous heat. Handsome, beautiful, heroic, no matter how many adjectives there are, they are not enough to describe his face that seems to be in deep thought. Anyone who sees this boy for the first time will feel peace from the bottom of their heart, rather than looking at his face or figure. "Father." Mingfei hesitated for a while, then half knelt on the ground, performing the highest standard of etiquette when an Ostates faces a Primarch. "Hello, Kartos." Or Mingfei. The boy spoke, speaking pure Chinese. He did not look at Mingfei, but stared at the humanoid specimen floating in front of him, whose chest was cut open, and the internal organs and tissues were clearly visible. Mingfei suppressed the ecstasy and excitement in his heart. It was an honor for him, and even for the entire week's chapter, to be called by the Great Father of the Blood Angels and the ninth Prime Rush, St. Gervais. He soon noticed the specimen in front of the boy. The face and the pair of iron-blue ferocious membrane wings behind him were very familiar. This was the Dragon King alien who called himself the King of the Sea and Water, Li Waiyu. Did I defeat him? Lu Mingfei whispered to himself. No. This battle ended in failure. The boy seemed to have heard his whisper and said lightly. Lu Mingfei's expression suddenly became panic and ashamed, and his head lowered even lower. Please forgive my failure that brought shame to the Holy Blood Angels this time, Father. I will wash away this shame with the real alien blood. This is not your fault, it's mine. The input ratio of the power of faith exceeded the threshold that the hybrid body could withstand, and it collapsed during the battle. The boy said calmly. He turned his head, and the light from his eyes that seemed to be burning like a star seemed to be able to pierce into the depths of Lu Mingfei's soul. Also, I'm not your father. Lu Mingfei raised his head, looking a little dazed. Although St. Gervais is one of my most cherished sons, but what you have before you now is just a fragment of humanity. A living corpse trapped on the twisted throne for thousands of years, watching dreams in the future fall into darkness and despair, the last bit of humanity before being replaced by divinity. The boy said absent-mindedly. But his word hit Lu Mingfei's heart like a bolt from the blue. His body began to tremble violently. This was not fear, this was unprecedented excitement and glory, which almost made him faint. Lu Mingfei was not a fool, the boy had already revealed his identity. The Emperor. The father of the Empire, the Lord of mankind. Because of the long journey and the fierce war, not only the Lamenters, but also many Astartes had never been to the center of the Empire, the throne world terror for pilgrimage, let alone enter the palace to meet the Lord of mankind sitting on the golden throne. The legend of the Emperor is only recorded in books, and the Emperor's holy face is only in portraits and church glass paintings. Loyalty to the Emperor has been deeply engraved in the hearts of every Astartes since the operation. And now, Lu Mingfei is likely to be the first Astartes to see the true will of the Emperor nearly 10,000 years after the Great Heresy. What an honor. But soon Lu Mingfei lowered his head in shame, falling into deep self-blame and regret. He actually failed to recognize the Great Emperor and even mistook him for the Prime Rush St. Gervais. This is a blasphemous and disrespectful act, and its severity is enough to make the week's chapter go on another atonement expedition. Don't be bothered by unnecessary thoughts, Cortos, the boy said, his rough palm that was not commensurate with his age gently resting on Lu Mingfei's shoulder. Now is not the time to pay attention to etiquette. Everything is subject to your will, your majesty. Lu Mingfei took a deep breath and tried to calm his thoughts. I want to ask you a question now, Lu Mingfei. Do you want to become a Prime Rush? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 206 Corruption. Become a Prime Rush. Lu Mingfei's expression became confused again. The Prime Rush is the descendant of the Great Emperor and the genetic father of the Astartes. In the minds of most Astartes, he is a sacred existence only under the Emperor. But unfortunately, after the Emperor sat on the golden throne, the few remaining primarchs of the Empire also disappeared one after another in the next 100 years. Lu Mingfei only knew that the Primarch of the Ultramarines, Robert Guilliman, was sleeping on the home planet Makraki, and the remains of the deceased St. Giles were now stored in the home planet of the Blood Angels, and they were all under absolute strict protection. The Weepers, who had been wandering around the borders of the Empire, had no chance and no qualifications to visit them. If someone else asked Lu Mingfei whether he wanted to become a Prime Rush, he would think it was a temptation from chaos, and would kill the other person on the spot to prove his loyalty to the Emperor and St. Giles. But now the one who asked him was the Lord of Mankind, for whose will and ideals he and his brothers in the chapter had been fighting. After the war in the Night Food Plain ended, Lu Mingfei always believed that the fragments of the soul of the Prime Rush St. Giles that St. Giles carried in the Holy Grail of blood would be sent to him, but he never thought that it would be a fragment of the will of the Emperor himself. Even when the Emperor appeared later, he always thought that the other party was St. Giles and always called him father. After a long silence, Lu Mingfei slowly raised his head and took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, I don't think I am qualified to be the great. I'm just a son of St. Giles who fights for you and mankind. After hearing Lumenfei's answer, the fiery light in the boy's eyes slowly extinguished and became calm as water, but the corners of his slightly thoughtful face were slightly raised. Smile, even before he sat on the throne, he did not show this expression. I have always believed that unnecessary emotions are the root cause of corruption, so absolute rationality has become my instinct. When I created the Imperial Guards, I also baptized this rationality in them. But who could have thought that after 10,000 years on the throne, what has not been swallowed up by the divinity is the humanity and emotions that I have rejected. Lumenfei held his breath and listened attentively to the Emperor's holy words. He might be the only human in the past 10,000 years who had the honor of being in such close contact with the Emperor's will. I am very happy to come to such a beautiful cradle, Kartos. It reminds me of what Terra used to be like, the boy said. The shadow of the high heaven does not exist here, and the rich emotions of mankind will not become the nourishment of the chaos gods. I'm asking you the second question now, Lumenfei. The boy kept changing his name for him, as if he was intentionally treating him as two different personalities, and did not continue the topic of the primary. Are you still willing to go to the Dark Universe to fight for mankind? Yes, Your Majesty. This is my mission as the son of St. Jerome, Lumenfei answered almost without hesitation. My brothers in the Lamenters are still waiting for me. Although the hometown is beautiful and peaceful, there are still more humans in that world who need to be saved by the Astatives. Very good, Lumenfei, I believe Robert will like you. The boy nodded calmly, without any more emotions because of his answer. We will go back, but not now. He waved his palm gently, and one human specimen after another floated over and surrounded them neatly. Lumenfei took a quick look. Most of them were dead pools that he had killed, from followers of the false god Odeon to the evil creations of the heretic kings, and even the mutated dead pools that were contaminated by chaos not long ago. There were also a few familiar figures. Xu Zihan, Xu Tianzhao, Yuan Xin, alchemist Sergeant Lao Tang, even Lumenfei himself was among them. Do you know how my god selected candidates with strong wills who could directly confront the unborn after I took the throne? The boy asked. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, what you said is an absolute secret, and I am not qualified to know it. Lumenfei bowed his head. The unborn refers to the entity of the evil in the warp, and he usually calls it demon, which is a more direct term. And guards undoubtedly refers to those powerful guards who have accompanied the Emperor since the Great Crusade. It is rumored that they are extremely powerful, even the Astatives are far behind them. The dungeon beneath the Imperial Palace imprisons 4 of the most high immortals. 8 skulls, 7 miasma, grantor of 6 wishes, and driller of souls as a test. The candidates need to defeat the 8 skulls without weapons and power armor, breathe the miasma of the 7 miasma for 3 hours without the aid of technology, listen to the verbal temptations of the grantor of 6 wishes for 16 hours and leave calmly, and stare into the 9 eyes of the driller of souls without blinking for 24 hours. Upon hearing this, Lumenfei developed an even deeper awe of the Emperor's claws stationed at the Imperial Palace of Terror. The warriors who could pass these trials and still survive without being corrupted could indeed directly confront the demons of the ward. But now you can be exempted from these trials at will. The boy waved his hand, and the Xu Tianzhao specimen with eyes closed and sleeping floated over. After observation, the genes of the hybrid humans and dragons have undergone magical changes, and they have the trait of being almost completely immune to psychic corruption. That's why I call you alternative untouchables. Even if the gods of chaos personally come down and try to drag you into their ranks, they will fail because their bodies cannot resonate. You will be killed, but not corrupted by psychic energy. The boy's eyes rekindled the brilliance of a star. Is it immune to psychic energy? Lumenfei tried to understand the Emperor's words, and was hesitant about whether to say something. But, my brother Xu Zihan and I have both received your psychic blessing, and I am similar. That is the power of faith, my loyal warrior. The boy sighed softly. I destroyed the last church of terror with my own hands 10,000 years ago. Now there are tens of billions of churches built for me. The power of faith of countless people is gathered on the zombie trapped on the throne. A dry and somewhat charred humanoid specimen flew over. The ratio between the power of faith and the hybrid body still needs to be tested, otherwise it will be burned and disintegrated by the power of faith like this, the boy said. The good news is that the child you recruited has good abilities, and the experiment will not cause any damage or consumption. Lumenfei did not speak, staring blankly at the humanoid specimen. His face was on the dried burnt body. Of course, he knew that this was not the real him, but should be the after-image of a certain state of himself in the dream of summer morning. He seemed to recall the scene when the surging sacred golden light gushed out of his body and engulfed him, and the intense pain of being burned by the flames rose from the depths of his soul. and the Lord of Humanity has been burned by this power for nearly 10,000 years. Don't be distracted by insignificant things, Lumenfei. The boy's eyes seemed to be able to pierce the depths of Lumenfei's soul. He was a little absent-minded. When my new genetic engineering research has further breakthroughs, you must be wary of the influence of the Weaver of Truth on the world. Although the crow is not the original body, the Lord of Change is the most cunning and changeable chaos god, and any change in the situation is pleasing to him. I can't interfere too much in the world, otherwise the gods of the high heaven will be attracted. Understood. I will be loyal to you until death and live up to my mission, Your Majesty. Lumenfei took a deep breath and his eyes became extremely determined. In addition, there are still ways for hybrid humans to be corrupted. The boy waved his hand, and several Deadpool corpses flew over. When the dragon genes in hybrid humans exceed a certain proportion, they will become unstable, and their resistance to chaos corruption will be greatly reduced. When they completely degenerate into Deadpools, the power of chaos can easily corrupt them. Lumenfei suddenly realized that this was the reason why the heretic Groya, although a hybrid, still had his body corrupted and mutated after following the Lord of Change. But he thought about it and realized something was wrong. If the dragon genes exceed a certain proportion, yes, dragon aliens do not have any resistance to psychic corruption. The boy said indifferently, you must find the aliens that are connected to the crow as soon as possible, and then destroy them. The rumor spread more wildly than I thought. Under pressure, I temporarily disbanded the group chat and re-established it after a while. Let me clarify again, I'm not the victim, and I don't want this kind of attention. It's like you all waking up tomorrow to find that your family groups, relatives groups, gaming groups, and company groups are all spreading rumors about you being cheated on. You can't even sit at home and get cuckolded. Chapter 207 Genes. Understood, everything is subject to your will. Lumenfei's expression was serious, his eyes burning with a fiery and fanatical fire. Although the real world can greatly suppress the power of psychic energy, the world spirit power that the dragon race can control the elements is not within this scope. If the Lord of Change really corrupts the alien, or even forcibly occupies the alien's body, and uses it to build a space similar to the Nibelungen to attract the attention of the chaos evil god in that universe, there is no more disastrous result than this. Although St. Gervais is sad and proud of you and the Lamenters, I think you are the original gene not because of your rare character. Cortos, the boy's rough and dark palm, which is completely inconsistent with his age, gently stroked Lumenfei's shoulder. Your blood gene is extremely special among mixed blood humans. The impurity of blood cannot change my determination to fight for you and humans, Your Majesty. Lumenfei was a little uneasy. After all, when he first returned to his hometown, he regarded mixed bloods of humans contaminated by gene stealers. Human blood genes are not static. From the ancient terror to the golden age and then to the empire, human species genes are changing all the time. The boy said lightly, you must find out as soon as possible which part of this beautiful cradle your body belongs to. Lumenfei was stunned again. He didn't quite understand the words of the Lord of Humanity. Leave here. It will take at least some time for the new genetic engineering to make sufficient progress. The boy didn't give him any more instructions. With a light wave of his hand, he appeared outside the wooden house in an instant. When he raised his head again, the doors closed. Are you happy, brother? How do you feel about seeing Saintly Majesty in person? Not far from the wooden house, Lumens asked with a smile, with a hint of cunning on his delicate face. Something dug a hole in the ice, and a pool of dark blue water in the ice hole faintly reflected the huge half-moon in the distance. And he sat in the shadow of the moon and fished, with a long fishing rod hanging above the ice hole. The corner of Lumenfei's mouth twitched. If he had a bolt gun, he would have loaded it and aimed it at this person immediately. It was obviously inappropriate to call him a devil. After all, after meeting the Emperor, Lumens's identity had quietly changed. How long have you known about this? His clenched fist loosened again. I knew it when I came back from Japan. After all, we're brothers. Lumens smiled faintly and raised the fishing rod in his hand. Who are you? The Lumens in my impression is not like you, and the child does not have this kind of power. Lumenfei frowned slightly. I'm Lumens, brother. Is it similar to the connection between Yuan Xin and Feng Ji and Luli? Brother, why don't you go and ask it yourself? Go to the place where you were born and raised, and then go to your parents to ask. Oh, I forgot that your current father is Lord St. Geely's. Lumenfei turned and walked away, his back to the huge white moon behind him. He didn't want to continue talking nonsense with the other party. This was a pure waste of time, although he didn't know the speed of time in the outside world when he was in this illusion. To be honest, in less than a year, watching my brother go from a timid kid waiting for the goddess to rescue him and then waiting to pester her for the rest of his life to a Superman warrior who wants to save the earth and protect mankind, it's too OOC, out of character, which means that the personality of the fan creation is different from the original work, and it is no longer the original character but an original character with the original character's name. It's not 1 year, it's 107 years. Mingfei didn't even turn his head. I forgot to count the time of that universe. Mingfei stuck out his tongue. Indeed, after fighting for more than 100 years, even a pig should have transformed into Marshal Tianpin. Mingfei ignored him and looked for a way to leave on this seemingly endless ice field. With a slight sound, the ice surface under his feet suddenly appeared with spiderweb-like clear cracks. With Mingfei's reaction speed, he should have stepped to a safe place with one step, but his body seemed to be frozen, standing there unable to move. Mingfei turned around and glared at Mingfei. I'll give you a little hint, brother. Don't you want to know what you are? Mingfei smiled and waved at him, letting go of the fishing rod in his hand. The fishing rod was pulled into the ice cave with a whoosh, as if something had taken the bait but took the opportunity to escape quickly. At this moment, the ice under Mingfei's feet completely collapsed and shattered. He fell into the cold sea with a plop, falling towards the depths without any strength. The white moonlight slightly illuminated a layer of clean seawater through the ice layer, but a moment later, a huge and agile black shadow swam over him from the top of the stirring fierce water flow, swallowing up all the moonlight. Mingfei suddenly woke up and stood up from the sofa. His head seemed to hit something on the way. The black shadow had disappeared, and what came into view was Yuan Xian's face, which was as beautiful as a girl. He breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that he had woken up. You finally woke up, Captain. I thought something had happened to the dream taper. Yuan Xian's worried look faded a little. The death of a consciousness in a dream does not mean that the real world will be safe and sound, especially when the dream taper is out of control. Even the caster of the word spirit will face brain death in the real world. Feng Jianlu is the best example. I'm fine. Mingfei tried to sort out his somewhat confused consciousness. How much time has passed? 2 hours and 43 minutes. Principal Ange woke up 30 minutes earlier than you. I went to notify the college medical department when I saw that you are still not awake. I'm going to notify the principal now. Yuan Xian hurriedly left the room, and Mingfei was the only one left in the reception room of the Holy Blood Museum. Mingfei was silent for a long time before he let out a long breath, leaned back on the soft sofa again, and began to think about the next plan. The Emperor's will is here, so there is no need to worry about the plan to establish a new type of Astatives. The creation of the Primarch, the Imperial Guards, the Astatives and many other superhuman warriors were all created by the Emperor. I believe that the Emperor can completely create a powerful new warrior template with the characteristics of the hybrids. What an honor. Maybe the Imperial Guards can be on par with the Emperor. The Imperial Guards, also known as the Emperor's Claws, symbolize the claws of the Imperial Eagle, and to some extent can be regarded as the spokesperson of the Emperor's will. Then what should these new warriors who were also created by the Emperor himself be called? The Emperor's children? No. This is the name of the Third Rebellious Legion during the rebellion. They are loyal guards who fight for the Emperor and mankind. In fact, if possible, Mingfei would rather return to the Lamenters to supplement the scarce legion on the verge of being expelled, but this seems to violate the Astatives Codex, and the Blood Angel's Mother Core will not recognize these warriors who do not have the blood of Holy Ras flowing in their bodies. Mingfei couldn't help but curl his lips upwards. Even after returning to his hometown, he had never been so excited as he was now. Did you see that one? That, St. Giles. Yuan Xian returned to the room at some point. She noticed the change in Mingfei's expression and asked in a low voice. Mingfei's expression suddenly became extremely embarrassed. If he could, he really wanted to do something to apologize. It was too blasphemous to mistake the Emperor for St. Giles. If the fanatical believers of the state religion knew about it, they might accuse the Lamenters and even the Blood Angel's Mother Core of several crimes. That's not St. Giles, it's the Emperor, the great lord of mankind. After a moment, Mingfei corrected seriously, our core will no longer fight alone. The Emperor of God is protecting us. We will follow his will and purify all the sinful aliens and heretics with his wrath. Yuan Xian was stunned for a while, as if she was thinking about something. After a long time, she nodded. I understand, Captain. Chapter 208 The Kidnapped Girl. Dad, today is New Year's Eve. I brought you dumplings stuffed with celery and pork. I still remember the New Year's Eve of the year before Mom and you divorced. You went out and packed 2 boxes of braised large intestines, which made Mom very disgusted. After all, she ate it every day. I didn't tell Mom about you, Dad. This is your own choice. Mom has her own life now. Your return may add troubles to her carefree state. In the quiet ward, Shoesham silently looked at his unconscious father on the bed, whispering to himself. The lid of the lunchbox on the bedside table was covered with a layer of wet water vapor. The dumplings were still warm, but it was still unknown when Shu Tianzhao would wake up. He should have rushed back to Castle College after his injury recovered, but it didn't take long for Captain Lu to tell him that the things in the college had been resolved, and asked him to rest for a while, and there was no rush to return to the college after spending the spring festival with his family. So on the day when the whole family celebrated the Spring Festival Gala and had a reunion dinner, Shoesham brought a box of dumplings to the deserted hospital to accompany his father to celebrate the festival, and at the same time cleaned his unconscious father's body. The shortage of manpower was one aspect, and the main reason was that the linen covered with blood-red religious symbols on Shu Tianzhao's bed was really creepy. Otherwise the nurses in the hospital would be very willing to clean the body of this male god-level man in addition to adhering to their work. Glancing out the window, although it was not yet 12 o'clock, several gorgeous fireworks had already risen in the night sky. Shoesham carefully hid the handle of Murazam's knife under the windbreaker of the executive department, and left the ward with a basin of water. The corridor was quiet. When passing by a ward, he could hear applause and laughter from the Spring Festival Gala program inside. It should be Mr. Zhao performing a skit. He suddenly remembered that he hadn't watched TV for a long time. In addition to studying, his life in Castle College was just swinging blades. However, if the historical records related to the Dragon Clan in the college were viewed as stories, it would probably be more exciting than any TV series. Splash Shoesham poured out the dirty water in the basin and scrubbed the towel used to wipe his father's body. The cold temperature and pale light added a bit of horror to the bathroom. Especially after the expressionless figure of the man behind him appeared in the mirror, this horror atmosphere instantly reached its peak. The blazing gold dyed Shoesham's eyes. He silently threw away the towel in his hand and silently pressed the handle of Murazam's knife. He stared at the pale face of the man in the mirror, and a pair of ivory white legs fell from his shoulders. The other party was carrying a girl in a school uniform skirt. But what made Shoesham feel familiar was the breath of the man. Familiar. Have we met somewhere? As soon as the voice fell, a cold light flashed, and Shoesham's body was released like a taut spring, with Murazam's blade drawing a moon wheel and sweeping towards the man's neck. The man simply raised one hand to block the swift and fatal attack, and Murazam scraped a striking spark on his arm covered with dark purple scales. A corrupted Deadpool who had undergone a demon mutation. Shoesham took a deep breath and entered the bloodburst state without thinking. The activity of the dragon bloodliner was rising sharply. While boiling and burning in the blood vessels at a high speed, it also strengthened his body senses. The chemical substances of adrenaline, serotonin, and endorphin were secreted at an accelerated rate. He was not careless and directly upgraded to the second bloodburst. Shoesham was the first to use this refined bloodliner taboo method that would cause the hybrid to irreversibly degenerate into the direction of Deadpool. In the past 6 months since he lost his father, he did everything he could to improve his strength and catch up with Mingfei. Especially after Principal Angus handed him the book that recorded the secrets of the Lanhard Society with Bloodburst. The blazing heat dispelled the coldness in the hospital toilet, and the fiery red light stained the blade at Murazam. After entering the second blood-spurting state, Shoesham still maintained his human form, without any changes such as dragon scales or fingers sharpened into claws. Shoesham believed that this was the blessing of the Emperor. It was like a hurricane sweeping through, and the flames left several cursed arcs in the air. They were the after images left by Shoesham's swing of the knife. When the man reacted, half of his body had been cut open, and the wound was scorched by the high temperature of Junyan before blood could even flow out, emitting a strong burnt smell. In the battle involving the Dragon Clan, protecting innocent humans is not only the stipulation of the hybrid Abraham Covenant, but also the highest priority stipulation stipulated by Captain Lu of the Weeping Angels. Shoesham fulfilled this stipulation very well. He hugged the girl who fell from the man's shoulder with one hand, and when the opponent's other purple claw stretched out, he blocked it with his knife, and used the force to retrieve to keep a distance. After putting the girl down, he rushed forward again. The blazing flames were no longer restrained, and they burst out brilliantly on the man's body, as bright as the fireworks rising in the night sky. The purple-black scales burst, and Shoesham slashed the man in half with a horizontal cut from the abdomen. The man wanted to howl, but the next second, Murazame's red-hot blade pierced through his open mouth to the back of his head, and the flames with a hint of sacred gold engulfed his pale face. The purification was over in 47 seconds. It's much weaker than those fallen Deadpools on the yacht. Is this the initial mutant form? Shuzaham pulled Murazame out of the burning head of the Deadpool, his expression indifferent. After making sure that the movement here did not attract the attention of anyone outside, he turned and walked towards the girl who was saved from the Deadpool. The girl was still in a coma, and her ponytail fell unnaturally. Shuzaham was very familiar with the school uniform she was wearing. It was the school uniform of Shilan Middle School, which cost more than 1,000 yuan a set, and it might be the most expensive school uniform in the city. But the fabric and style used were worthy at the price. When students from other schools disliked the ugly school uniforms of their own schools, the handsome boys and beautiful girls of Shilan Middle School wore school uniforms designed by famous designers of a certain fashion week that were said to be hired by the principal, freely showing the beauty of youth and Shilan's aristocratic style. After seeing the girl's face clearly, Shuzaham was slightly stunned. Even though he didn't pay much attention to the appearance of women most of the time, the girl in front of him still gave him a stunning feeling. Flawless, such an idiom popped up in his mind, and it was the most appropriate to use this word to describe the girl's face. Shuzaham could not see any flaws on her face. It's just that, although this girl does have the potential to make people commit crimes, humans who have fallen into Deadpool generally only pursue the desire for bloodthirsty killing, and should not have the intention of robbing beauty. Just as Shuzaham was thinking, the girl's beautiful eyelashes trembled slightly, as if she was stimulated by the burning smell of Deadpool and woke up from her coma. She slowly opened her eyes, with fear and anxiety in her clear pupils. She shrank into the corner, and Shuzaham hurried forward to stop her from making that high-decibel female scream in the next second. Calm down, the bad guy has been solved by me, and it's okay now. But as soon as these words came out, even Shuzaham himself was not sure that he could calm people down. If Deadpool is a cruel kidnapper, then from a human perspective, someone who chops people into several large pieces and cremates them on the spot is 100 times more terrifying than a kidnapper. But unexpectedly, the girl seemed to be really calmed down. Although her body was still trembling, the look of fear on her pretty face had faded a lot. Are you, senior brother Shuzaham? She looked at Shuzaham with her clear eyes and whispered. Do you know me? Shuzaham frowned, and his palm quietly touched Murazame again, ready to deal with the possibility that the girl in front of him was actually a heretic trap. I guess everyone in Shilan Middle School knows you, the girl said softly. Shuzaham silently retracted his palm. He gathered his emotions, slightly restrained the golden light in his pupils, and asked the girl in a low voice. How were you captured? Are there other bad guys besides him? I don't know. The girl was a little confused, as if she was recalling. My brother was sick and in the hospital. I came to bring him food. Then when I went to the bathroom to wash the dishes, I suddenly blacked out while washing. Then I didn't know anything. Okay. Shuzaham sighed. It seemed that this child was just unlucky to be targeted by Deadpool, but it was not known how many Deadpools were lurking in this hospital. They had to be purged before they caused heavy casualties. This hospital is no longer safe. I will notify someone to come and send you and your brother away. What's your name? Shuzaham took out his mobile phone from his windbreaker, ready to let Eva contact the branch and ask them to send people to evacuate and seal off the hospital. My name is Xia Xia for summer, Mi for demise. The girl grinned, her pretty eyes curved into two crescents, as if she had put all the fear and insecurity behind her. Chapter 209 Shuzaham and Xiaomi's Dark Adventure. Xiaomi, Shuzaham roughly searched for this name in his memory, but he didn't have any impression. With her appearance, she shouldn't be unknown to Shilan Middle School. Even if he was not well informed, he had heard of the names of Sushia Kaiyang and Liu Miao on the Shilan Middle School beauty list. He didn't dwell on this too much and turned on the screen of his mobile phone. Eva, this is Shuzaham. In case of emergency, notify the branch to send people to the first hospital immediately. Shuzaham frowned, and he took another look at the 3G signal of his mobile phone. It was confirmed to be full, but Eva didn't send any reply. He tried to dial Wang Kaiyan's number in the address book. Although he was able to get through, there was only a monotonous beep-beep sound from the other end, and no one answered. What's wrong? Is there another monster come in? Xiaomi saw Shuzaham's expression become ugly, and began to feel uneasy. She couldn't help but get close to this seemingly reliable senior brother. After all, it is normal for the weak to seek protection from the strong on their own. It's not clear yet, follow me closely. After Shuzaham silently prayed to the Emperor in his heart, he took a deep breath and pulled out Mura's aim again. He estimated that he had fallen into an unknown realm, but he didn't know whether it was Nibelungen. Shuzaham felt that the power of the Emperor's holy light was as thin as the real world. Kicking away the scorched and smelly corpse at the door, Shuzaham confirmed that there were no new enemies outside the toilet, and signaled Xiaomi to follow him. The hospital was dead silent. The Spring Festival Gala program broadcast on TV, the fireworks set off outside the hospital, and the nurses who occasionally checked the conditions of the patients in the ward, the human breath had disappeared. In less than 2 minutes, the entire hospital seemed to have become a dead silent morgue for corpses. The windows seemed to be splashed with a layer of black ink, and the eyes could not see through the weird darkness outside. Are you running for Dad? Shuzaham quickened his pace towards his father's ward. Although the school uniform girl Xiaomi was out of breath, she barely kept up with Shuzaham. After all, Shilan Middle School, which often provided talents in various aspects to the national team, would naturally not cut physical education classes, and the physical fitness of students could be guaranteed. Brother, did you hear any sound? Xiaomi suddenly spoke, her pretty face turned pale. Sound? Shuzaham frowned, slowed down and tried to listen. After a few seconds, he gave his answer. No. But I heard something. Xiaomi looked like she was about to cry. It seemed like something was blowing in my ear and whispering. What was the content of the whisper? I don't understand, it doesn't sound like Chinese or English. Xiaomi had a sad face. Shuzaham thought for a while, and after confirming again that he did not hear any special sound, he temporarily believed that this was an unknown influence on ordinary people. Just pretend you didn't hear it, stay focused, and pray to the Emperor in your heart. Pray? Emperor? Xiaomi was stunned. Brother, are you a believer? No, I'm a warrior. But now is not the time to preach, follow me. Shuzaham did not explain too much, and continued to run forward with a knife. Xiaomi stared at Shuzaham's back, her pretty face changing rapidly. It was hard to tell whether she was angry, aggrieved or uneasy, but after a moment she returned to the image of a flawless weak girl, lowered her head and hurried to catch up, her eyebrows slightly wrinkled. But after a few steps, her head bumped into Shuzaham's back. Brother, why did you suddenly stop walking? Xiaomi glanced at the corridor in front of her, and no enemy appeared. 10 steps back. In addition, no matter what you see next, don't be surprised, and don't ask too many questions. Shuzaham said seriously, and as soon as the voice fell, his throat burst out with high and mysterious syllables, breaking the dead silence that enveloped this place. His father's ward was less than 30 meters away from the public toilet, but Shuzaham estimated that he had run more than 100 meters in this corridor, but he still couldn't reach the ward at the end of the corridor. This space seemed to have been wrapped by a cold dimension and isolated from the real world. I don't know how long the corridor in front is and where it leads to. Shuzaham realized this. He was unwilling to waste time and tried to break this space with brute force. Word Spirit. Junyan. An orange-yellow fireball was instantly generated, dragging a dazzling flame tail forward for several meters before smashing into the floor. Shuzaham quickly turned around and protected the girl behind him in his arms to prevent her from being injured by the aftermath of the explosion. However, the expected deafening roar and violent airwaves did not happen. The seemingly powerful Junyan fireball could not even destroy the bench in the corridor. Brother, your fireball technique seems to have failed, Xiaomi whispered, or did you do it on purpose to show your gentlemanly style? Neither. Shuzaham had a blank expression on his face and walked quickly towards the landing point of Junyan. A big pit was smashed out at the landing point, but the bottom of the pit was not the next floor, but a mass of squirming flesh and blood. He frowned and stabbed the window on the right side of the corridor with his knife. The dark glass was pierced by the blade, but the touch of the blade cutting into the darkness behind the window was almost like stabbing into a mass of sticky flesh. The corridor they were in seemed to have become the esophagus of a huge creature. Xiaomi walked up curiously, and when she saw the pit that was healing rapidly, she was frightened and her face turned pale and she stepped back repeatedly. Are we going to be trapped here to death? No, there should be other ways to leave. Follow me. Shuzaham was very calm. While holding the knife and continuing to move forward, his blazing golden eyes searched back and forth, trying to find the weak point of this space. But what he didn't notice was that the girl behind him, whose clear eyes were full of fear, also quietly showed a trace of red majesty. After moving forward for dozens of meters, a vague and inexplicable whisper suddenly sounded from Shuzaham's ears, as if someone was whispering near him. At the same time, the hazy purple mist began to spread in front of them. The walls and the ground of the corridor removed their disguises, and the wriggling flesh and blood were exposed at this moment. Eyeballs flowed in the amorphous flesh and blood like blood in the veins. For a moment, I didn't know how many eyes were looking at Xu Zihan, or Xiaomi behind him. The situation worsened again. Dozens of figures suddenly appeared in the mist in front of them like frames, but it was impossible to tell whether they were patients or nurses who suffered in this hospital. Their faces all had curved bird beaks without exception, and they looked like standing bird-headed people. They all started chanting in an unknown language, and the tune sounded like the shamans in the ancient tribes of the earth performing evil sacrifices. The sound was harsh, cold and vicious, making people upset and miserable. "Don't look like Deadpool, are they new enemies? I have to find a way to notify Captain Lu." Xu Zihang instinctively felt extremely disgusted and hated these birdmen, as if they were born to be his mortal enemies. He gritted his teeth and endured the harsh mental attacks of these birdmen, and entered the third blood-bursting state without hesitation. The dragon blood was completely boiling at this moment. The energy contained in the dragon blood flowing in the blood vessels was like nitroglycerine strengthening Xu Zihang's body, but at the same time, the dragon's brutality and killing desire were also rising. Word spirit. Kin flame. But after 2 seconds, Long Wen's chanting stopped, but the free fire elements in this space were still gathering uncontrollably, and the burning flames were covered with a layer of strange pink. Xu Zihang's body couldn't stop shaking, and something like a black vine was growing wildly in his retina. He saw in the mist an army of countless horrible creatures that shouldn't exist in this world, short evil spirits with bodies made of ever-changing flames, giant bird-headed people holding scepters burning with blue flames, and twisted machines made of flesh and metal. The roars they made seemed to make the human soul collapse with wailing, and a creature that could not be described in words and had no specific form was floating behind this army, and countless eyes were focused on Xu Zihan. The treacherous whisper in his ear became louder and more excited, conveying all kinds of crazy knowledge and false truths to Xu Zihan, asking him to be loyal to another great existence, called Lord of Change. Chapter 210 Appearance. The wisdom of the Lord of Change has illuminated the dark galaxy. The Emperor is one of the countless incarnations of the Lord of Change. You are still believing in his great essence. If Lu Mingfei was present, such blasphemous and bewitching words would not deceive him, but Xu Zihan, he is essentially still a 19-year-old child. It was not until more than half a year ago that he officially came into contact with the other side of the world. His will is naturally impossible to compare with Lu Mingfei, an Astartes who has fought for more than 100 years and has a fanatical belief in the Emperor. This kind of bewitching is fatal to mortals. Those who are bewitched do not realize that they have fallen into the abyss of error. For example, those humans who have been contaminated by genus Deulers believe that they are still believing in the Emperor until they walk into the digestion pool of the Tyranids, except that the Emperor they know has 4 arms. When facing the invasion of Chaos heretics, they will even take up weapons and shout for the Emperor to fight the enemy, but this cannot change the fact that they are contaminated by aliens. Xu Zihan gritted his teeth, endured the maddening whispers and screams in his ears, and kept reciting the prayers that Lu Mingfei had taught him. Lu Mingfei had clearly told him that praying to the Emperor was not asking for help from him, but to rely on one's own courage, will and faith in the Emperor to fight against the heresy. Xiaomi was also affected by the screams and inexplicable whispers of the bird people, and her flawless beautiful face became a little distorted because of the pain. "Who are you? Why do you know all this? You don't exist in history at all," she roared in a deep voice, as if communicating with an invisible other party. Just as the two were fighting against the distorted whispers, the humanoid creatures with twisted bird beaks on their faces ended their cold chanting, and the fireball condensed by the Junyan had become their control. The flames with colors fluctuating between purple and red illuminated the rainbow-colored scales on their bodies. It seemed that as long as Xu Zihan and Xiaomi resisted the temptation of words, this huge fireball would engulf them. But in the next second, the situation changed again. A trace of pure gold appeared from the inside of the fireball, and then expanded rapidly. In the blink of an eye, this strange pink-purple fireball turned into a golden sun. Under the shining of this sacred golden light, the bodies of the bird-headed people spontaneously combusted with painful screams, struggling to be burned to ashes. This space began to collapse. The wriggling flesh, twisted tentacles, flowing pupils, all of this was like ice rapidly melting under high temperature in front of the golden sun, and the illusory border curtain was torn open and burned. It was at this moment that the crazy words and dead words that entangled Xu Zihan and Xiaomi disappeared, and they regained clarity. "Go." Xu Zihan woke up immediately as if he had been enlightened. The holy golden light wrapped around him. After seeing the gap in the space destroyed by the golden sun in front of him, he immediately pulled Xiaomi, who was not fully awake, behind him and ran forward until the familiar sound of fireworks exploded in his ears. Shuzaham turned his head to look out the window, only to see that the outside was no longer as dark as ink. The city was bustling with lights, and the bright fireworks rising from the night sky seemed to celebrate their successful escape from the unknown space. Looking around, he heard the voice of the Spring Festival gala host counting down from the ward next door. In a few seconds, it would be the Lunar New Year. After making sure that he had returned to the real world, Shuzaham stopped and let out a long breath. The Emperor's blessing. He was a little ashamed. Although he wanted to use his courage and faith to fight against the demonic sounds that seemed to be able to drill into the depths of his brain, it was still the Emperor's holy light that protected him. The Devil's Whisper is quite cunning. It will insert a tiny lie or miss a key character in a series of information that is more complicated than a tongue twister. If you ignore this point and recognize that this information is correct, the deadly seeds of pollution will be planted in your heart from now on. Even if you just think back to those blasphemous words just now, Shuzaham feels a tingling scalp and fear. He quickly shook his head to forget these blasphemous words, and let anger briefly fill his brain. Next, we must find that demon who set up the trap in this space. Even if we die, we must destroy it with the Emperor's wrath and purify it completely. Are you okay? After taking a few deep breaths and praying to calm down his emotions, Shuzaham leaned over to check on Xiaomi, who was slumped on the ground. Xiaomi was stunned, her expression was a little dazed, and it seemed that she had not recovered from the shock just now. This girl is so unlucky. First, she was kidnapped by Deadpool, and then followed him into the Devil's Trap. To be honest, it was a miracle that she didn't go crazy. Shuzaham sighed. It was unlucky, but if it involved demon pollution, at least Mingfei instructed so, when encountering creatures polluted by demons, you must not be soft-hearted, and purify them directly on the spot. He lifted up the girl's perfect face, and looked closely at her pupils. This is a relatively straightforward way to observe whether the other person is contaminated. According to Mingfei, people who are contaminated by heretical forces will initially experience physical changes, such as pupils changing color to show blasphemous and evil 8-pointed star symbols, skin peeling off to reveal bright red flesh, horns, pustules or feathers growing on their body, or growing a few more female breasts. Men can also grow them. In short, Shuzaham silently memorized them. "Brother, you are being a hooligan," someone whispered. Shuzaham was stunned. Xiaomi didn't know when she came back to her senses, and her clear pupils were staring straight at him. At this moment, the distance between the two of them was just short of someone pushing the handle for a standard kiss in Korean dramas. Although a little embarrassed, Shuzaham still calmly loosened his hand slowly. "I'm just checking if you have any signs of being contaminated by the devil." "Demon, contaminated?" Xiaomi seemed to be pondering Shuzaham's words. "Was the thing that was quacking in my ear just now a devil?" "You don't need to know so much. It's safe now. Take your brother away from here, and someone will help you filter out this unpleasant memory later." Shuzaham didn't explain too much. He did his duty. He stood up and walked quickly towards his father's ward, and at the same time took out his mobile phone from his windbreaker again. "Eva, this is Shuzaham." Eva got it. This time, Eva's soft female voice sounded as soon as Shuzaham finished speaking. Shuzaham breathed a sigh of relief. "In an emergency, please notify the branch to send people to the first hospital. We have found traces of the fallen Deadpool and the devil, and require the hospital to be sealed and evacuated." "Understood." The executor of the branch in the area, Li Jianxing, has been notified and will arrive in about 6 minutes. "Do you need to notify Captain Lu Mingfei?" "I'll report to him in detail later." The matter has not been resolved yet. Shuzaham looked back at Xiaomi, who was also staring at him. "There is also a girl named Xiaomi who needs to undergo a memory cleansing procedure. Please arrange it." "Got it." What Shuzaham didn't know was that Xiaomi was actually looking at the pair of golden wings behind him. It's just that because the light is a bit illusory, this pair of wings looks more like several golden light bands fluttering, which is different from the obvious feather-like wings behind Lu Mingfei when he is in the innocent state. But it fits Shuzaham very well, and it doesn't feel like the kind of character Kosa who walks into the three-dimensional world will have a clear sense of disobedience, as if this pair of wings was born for him. Putting down the phone, Shuzaham clenched the handle of Murazame's knife and gently pushed open the door of the ward where his father was. The incandescent light in the room went out at some point, but the fireworks outside the window and the faint golden light emitted by the linen scriptures wrapped around his father's bed reflected another figure in front of the bed. A pair of pupils burning with purple flames looked over, and after seeing the pair of fluttering wings behind Shuzahan, he spoke, his old and hoarse voice carrying hidden malice and disgust. Another stupid dollar the cursed. Chapter 211 Pretty cured Xiaomi. Only a golden after image remained in the air. Shuzahan had already drawn his sword and rushed forward the next second after he pushed open the door. The light wings behind him fluttered like a ribbon, illuminating the figure in front of Shu Tianzhao's bed. Under the eyes burning with purple flames was a thick bird beak with jagged edges. The seemingly wild and unruly hairstyle on the back of the head was actually a bunch of thick purple tentacles, the same as those bird-headed people that had just come into contact with in the strange space. However, its flesh swelled up at the moment Shuzahan approached, becoming tall and strong, with feather-shaped black scales covering the surface of the skin to form a twisted heavy armor. In a ball of erratic flames on its chest, a pupil peeking at the outside world could be vaguely seen. The mutant Deadpool that had been wiped out on the yacht. But it had a new change of this time, it seemed to be getting closer and closer to the essential form of a certain existence. Shuzahan's pupils were as bright as a golden gas lamp. When it approached the other party, it had not finished speaking, and Murazame had already made a piercing scream. He responded with a blazing red blade. Speedy day. Koi Kao no Karing. Dafuku. After the attribute of alchemical weapon was offset, when facing a heavily armored unit like the mutant Deadpool, Murazame needed to rely on a single blow to critical or a fatal attack to make up for the efficiency of killing. The Emperor's holy light brought a strong physical enhancement. Shuzahan's burst speed was close to the third order 8 times speed instant state, including the speed of drawing the sword out of the sheath. Only a flaming red halo was left in the air, and the fatal blade light was approaching the neck of the bird-headed Deadpool. At this time, the other party's voice had just fallen, but all of Shuzahan's actions seemed to have been expected by it. A twisted bird claw grabbed the blade at Murazame, and it could no longer move forward. The bird claw on the other arm was as agile and vicious as a venomous snake and swept towards Shuzahan's chest, trying to dig out his heart. The fluttering wings behind Shuzahan became as straight as a sword at this moment, as if several golden lightning bolts pierced through the claws and torso of the mutant Deadpool, and the hard shell formed by bird-like scales on the skin surface seemed to be non-existent, and black blood splashed out from the gap. The mutant Deadpool let out a shrill scream, and Shuzahan did not hesitate, letting go of Murazame's knife handle and hitting sideways. With a desperate iron mounting, he smashed the glass window with himself and the Deadpool, and fell down to the inpatient department. Bang! With a loud explosion accompanied by fireworks in the night sky, 2 figures fell from the 5th floor and smashed a Volkswagen parked below. Glass fragments flew everywhere, and the car cabin was almost integrated with the chassis of the car. Even the alarm could not be sounded. Shuzahan endured the pain all over his body, pulled out Murazame and retreated. The Deadpool under him was not a qualified cushion, and Deadpool did not give him a chance to execute him fatally. The body that suffered a little impact due to gravity was repairing rapidly, and the new bird-like scales pushed off the damaged old scales. The slender arms that had been hanging for a while jumped up again, and they were about to tear Shuzahan in half in 1 second. But at least the battle space has become wide enough, and Shuzahan does not need to worry about the battle affecting Shu Tianzhao and the safety of the hospital building itself. After spending 2 or 3 seconds trying to actively control the light wings behind him without success, Shuzahan took a deep breath and burst out a high and complicated dragon text from his throat. Compared with the ultra-high-speed dragon text chanting that was shortened to 2 syllables in the third bloodburst state, his chanting this time seemed a little longer. He realized that the state of 3-degree bloodburst might bring him some danger in front of the existence of the suspected demon, at least in the dangerous space. After he entered the 3-degree bloodburst state, the whisper that could make the soul collapse immediately increased dozens of times. Word spirit. Junyan, full power explosion. Like a thunderous explosion, whether it is the roar or the light, it overwhelmed all the fireworks blooming in the night sky in the first minute after the arrival of the new year. From the high-rise building in the distance, it seemed as if the sun rose briefly from the back of the inpatient building of the first hospital. The huge orange-yellow fireball, wrapped in a high-pressure shock wave, plowed towards the bird-headed Deadpool not far away, trying to purify everything along the way with flames. Shuzahan did not hold back, nor did he think about what consequences would arise from the movement he caused. Anyway, there would always be someone to clean up the follow-up for him. And what he had to do is to purify this Deadpool suspected of being possessed by a demon as quickly as possible. The next second, he heard the Deadpool also let out a piercing scream, but it was not a scream after being hit by Junyan, but a different kind of spell chanting. A ball of pink and purple fire quickly condensed and blasted against the orange-yellow fireball that looked like the sun. The violent shockwave generated by the collision of elements shattered all the glass in the impatient building, and the vibration caused riots in the first hospital and surrounding buildings. Shuzahang ignored all this. He clenched the handle of the knife and looked at Deadpool with a serious expression behind the remaining flame. Deadpool could release the word spirit. He was not surprised at this. After all, Deadpool's predecessor was a hybrid, and the relevant courses in Castle Academy also mentioned this. But the power of the Deadpool, Shuzahang's sight was focused on the other party's right claw. A flowing object that seemed to be condensed from countless glass fragments was being held in his claw. Shuzahang felt a different breath from it. It was the space where he was briefly trapped before. This breath was not within the range of human senses. He sensed it because of the Emperor's holy light on his body. In that space, there was a power that did not belong to this world. You're even more stupid than your father. The bird-headed Deadpool spoke, holding the crystal object that shone with rainbow luster and moving forward, as if leaning on a long cane. You have been in contact with the cursed for such a short time, but you are willing to become his puppet and are proud of it. A ball of black blood bloomed behind it, and the black bones protruded from both sides of the thick spine and grew into fan-shaped bone wings. The black blood flowers remaining in the air quickly gathered between the new bone wings and turned into blackbird feathers. Deadpool, or rather, the demon hidden in his body showed his true appearance, leaving a huge shadow under the afterglow of the flame. It's not too late to abandon him now, child. As long as you are willing, the door of infinite wisdom of the Lord of Change will always be open to you. The demon's voice became persuasive. Become like you, with a crow's mouth on your face and chicken wings on your back? Shuzahang said coldly. You are no different from us, kid. It's just that the power he bestowed is disguised as an appearance that you think is very holy. Forget it. The devil seemed a little impatient. You're even more stupid than that, Kartos. It raised the flowing crystal-like stick in its hand, and the power that did not belong to this world gathered again, and a purple wheel of flame slowly formed above its head. Shuzahang took a deep breath, sheathed the sword again, and prepared to perform the extremely fast A-slash again to approach the opponent and start a life-and-death battle. Brother, you seem to be unable to beat this boss. Do you want to team up together? A voice as light as a silver bell sounded, and a girl in a school uniform skirt walked into the battlefield with her hands behind her back. Shuzahang was stunned. He knew this girl, or he had just known her for less than 10 minutes. Xiaomi. The high temperature left after the fireball bombardment had no effect on her. With a faint smile on her pretty face, she approached Shuzahang, her steps as relaxed and happy as a girl next door going home after school. She stood there and posed a few times, humming, the embodiment of love and justice. When Sailor Moon, Xiaomi applies to join the war. Shuzahang saw the girl's eyes clearly, and the color was as bright and beautiful as gold. She was also a mixed blood. And her bloodline level was at least A. What is your ability? He asked in a low voice. Now was not the time to ask about the other party's background, and he really needed to help her to get rid of this demon-possessed Deadpool as soon as possible. I said it's the pretty cure of wind, so of course it's blowing wind. Xiaomi said with a smile, without any tension or fear before the battle. Brother, can you still make fireballs? I can cooperate with your fireballs. Shuzahang glanced at the purple flame wheel that was slowly rolling above the demon's head. A trembling vertical eye in the center was staring straight at them, as if it could see through the depths of their hearts. There was no time for him to think carefully. He began to chant the dragon text without hesitation. Xiaomi, who was standing aside, put away her smile and began to chant as well. Unlike Shuzahang's high and complex voice, the dragon text that Xiaomi chanted was ancient and melodious, like a hymn from the ancient times. Shuzahang felt the air flowing. The position where he and Xiaomi were was like the center of the eye of a storm. The eye of the storm was swallowing up the air, and the air pressure nearby dropped sharply under the influence of Xiaomi's words. He recognized this word spirit, the Eye of the Wind King located at the 74th sequence of the word spirit periodic table. Wind is the most uncontrollable element in nature. It is not an exaggeration to describe it as the butterfly effect. The Eye of the Wind King can stimulate strong airflow to generate a tornado, and it can also serve as the starting point of a superstorm under a calculated and suitable air environment. Even the fire element gathered by Junyan obeyed the control of the Eye of the Wind King. Xiaomi became the core of the storm. The orange-yellow fire snakes rotated around her, like a spinning wheel on fire, and blooming like a lily in a bohemian dress. The demon raised his head, and his eyes burning with purple flames stared at Xiaomi, who was brewing a firestorm like the daughter of the storm, with his own greed and planning. It waved the crystal, and the purple flame wheel with vertical eyes on its head rolled towards the center of the storm. From an angle that Shuzaham could not see, Xiaomi's pupils became as red as boiling lava, and she looked directly at the mutated Deadpool with disgust. Word Spirit. Junyan, Word Spirit. Eye of the Wind King, double explosion. Wind and fire, the two elements showed a perfect superposition and fusion. The red flame rushed towards the purple flame wheel with vertical eyes. The scorching light was like a blazing fire that burned the city, instantly piercing the blasphemous and evil flame wheel. The firestorm followed and engulfed the body of the demon Deadpool, forming a deadly rain of fire in the center. The flames wrapped in fine wind blades cut the body of Deadpool frantically. The seemingly hard scales quickly collapsed after the fatal point was exposed. We will meet again, Jmungunda. The inexplicable whisper reached Xiaomi's ears. She frowned slightly, and the speed of the fire rain swept by suddenly accelerated. But the purple flame burning in the eyes of the bird-headed Deadpool disappeared, as if the demon's consciousness had left, leaving only a body screaming in the firestorm. Chapter 212 Repatriation. At 00:27 inches the morning, an unidentified explosion occurred in the First People's Hospital of the city. It can be seen that the open fire at the scene has been extinguished. According to people familiar with the matter, the explosion caused a shocking loud noise and flames at the time, and it is suspected that an underground natural gas pipeline in the hospital exploded. Fortunately, the accident has not caused any casualties, and the cause of the explosion remains to be further investigated. Although it was the first day of the Lunar New Year, such a prosperous event could not fail to attract the attention of the news media. More than 40 minutes after the explosion, the city's journalists followed the footsteps of the fire department and the police and rushed to the scene. Before them, the castle branch and the local Orthodox who handled the affairs of the hybrids arrived. They focused on the hospital's surveillance video and the traces of the hybrids, such as the unknown charcoal that had been shattered into pieces in the flames. The S-level commotion hasn't been dealt with yet, and I didn't expect you to make a bigger one. This matter will be on the headlines tomorrow. The Orthodox side has officially issued a deportation order for you, and even the Academy can't speak for you. After a series of phone reports, Li Jinxing was so anxious that he drank several large glasses of water before he calmed down. I'm Chinese, where are they going to deport me to? Shuzaham asked calmly. Yes, the pretty girl in school uniform beside her also raised her hand. I have a Beijing household registration, a native Beijinger, and I walk in the underground. Now it's not about nationality, but about the mixed race forces to which you belong, Li Jinxing said with a frown, ignoring the pretty girl who was talking nonsense. Fortunately, we have the remains of Deadpool this time to prove that you are indeed trying to eliminate Deadpool instead of causing damage due to your out-of-control bloodliner. Otherwise, the Orthodox Ministry of Justice would have sent people to capture you and take you back to have your collarbone pierced. It sounds very martial arts. Shuzaham nodded and gave his own evaluation. The Academy has also agreed to the repatriation order from the Orthodox side. Norma has booked a flight ticket for you on the third day of the Chinese New Year. After you go home, communicate with your family, write a report about this matter, and then prepare to return to the Academy. Li Jinxing said, and then he turned his attention to the girl in school uniform beside him. Also, what is the situation with this child? An awakened hybrid. If she is not from the Orthodox side, then you can prepare for admission. But before that, I have something to say to her. Shuzaham said lightly. No wonder you don't let us take her away for the memory cleansing procedure, understand? Li Jinxing nodded and glanced at the two of them. Then you stay here for the time being, and don't go anywhere without permission. Don't cause us trouble during the Chinese New Year. Sorry. Shuzaham apologized sincerely. Li Jinxing sighed helplessly, left the room and closed the door, and suddenly only Shuzaham and Xiaomi, a single man and a single woman, were left in this small safe house. There's no one else here. Do you have anything to say to me? Shuzaham turned his head to look at Xiaomi. The other person looked harmless and was completely different from the queen who was in control of a firestorm a few hours ago. What? Xiaomi blinked her clear and bright eyes with a puzzled look. Should it be you, senior brother, who should say something to me? Before Shuzaham could answer, she became a little excited again. She grabbed Shuzaham's arm and asked hopefully, by the way, is our world like Sailor Moon, a certain magical index or the stigma of wind, and there are many superpowers? Shuzaham's face twitched slightly. I haven't seen the works you mentioned, but there are indeed many superpowers like you and me. Then we two are quite compatible. I'm the pretty cured of wind, and you, senior brother, are the cool supporting actor of the fire handsome guy. The combined attack skills we release together can definitely defeat all villains. Xiaomi waved her little fist and hummed. I'm not some supporting character of fire. My name is Shuzahan. Shuzahan's face was tense. However, he admitted that the power of the fusion of the wind and fire spirits was indeed beyond his expectations, and Xiaomi seemed to have intentionally controlled the range. Although the visual effect created by the firestorm was shocking, it did not affect the hospital's residential building too much except for dyeing the back wall black. He took the initiative to change the subject. Does anyone else know that you have this special ability? No, I'm the only one who knows. Xiaomi shook her head. When you were attacked by that bad guy, why didn't you use this ability to resist? Who would have thought that there would be such a guy in the hospital during the new year? Xiaomi stuck out her tongue. I passed out as soon as my eyes went black. How could I have time to sing a spell? Sailor Moon had no fighting power before she transformed, okay. Shuzahan was stunned. This explanation was reasonable. After all, not all hybrids can be like him, who have a certain fighting power in addition to the spirits. Then, it's okay. When things are over here, you can go home. Shuzahan did not continue to ask about Xiaomi's background or family. It was not his job to check household registration. If Castle Academy wanted to recruit Xiaomi into the academy, they would naturally follow their procedures. Although Xiaomi looked like a fighting seedling worth cultivating, Mingfei did not seem to show any intention of recruiting female members to join the battle group. Now it's my turn to ask senior brother. Xiaomi approached his face curiously. Senior brother, why can you grow those illusory wings? Are you an angel? I can't tell you the former for the time being, and my answer to the latter is, no, I'm just a warrior. Then, is that bird-headed monster the devil you mentioned? I eavesdropped for a while, and it seemed to know you and called you stupid. I can't tell you that either. In addition, if anyone asks about the details of what happened tonight, I hope you can keep this part confidential. Shuzahan said seriously. Senior brother, you're really tight-lipped. Xiaomi was a little disappointed. Okay, then, who was the emperor you kept talking about before? Shuzahan unconsciously straightened up. His expression became serious and pious. He is the great lord of mankind. He is the patron saint of all mankind. He loves all living beings, and is the tower of hope for mankind in the dark galaxy. He is immortal and has existed long before the first city of mankind was built. He has guided mankind forward in different eras with different identities. His glory protects the heroic souls to return to the golden throne, rather than falling into the abyss of filth. Looking at Shuzahan solemnly and piously expounding on the great deeds and power of the emperor, Xiaomi was stunned, and her clear eyes were full of doubts and confusion. But not long after, the door of the room was pushed open, and the words of Li Jianxing, the head of the branch, interrupted Shuzahan's introduction. Just now, there was news from the hospital that your father woke up from a coma. A little modification was made to the previous chapter. The name of the word spirit should still follow the old version, and the previous pure land of Ligyu has also been changed back to the dustless land. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 213. Shu Tianzhao wakes up. My father has woken up. Upon hearing this news, Shuzahan's expression changed significantly. This was perhaps the best news he had heard since he knew that the Emperor's holy light had truly descended upon him. How is he now? Has his body undergone any abnormal changes? He took a deep breath and calmed down his turbulent emotions. He has not yet recovered his ability to move, and needs time to recover. As for the abnormal changes, they have not been discovered yet. Li Jianxing was somewhat surprised by Shuzahan's reaction. He should be happy that his vegetative father had woken up, but he was too calm. Thank you for telling me this. Can I go see him now? Procedurally speaking, it's not possible now, but as long as you don't create any new problems, I can approve your early departure. Li Jianxing glanced at his watch. At this time, the characterization of Shuzahan's responsibility was probably not over yet, but the inspection report had already pointed out that the body fragments did have highly contaminating dragon genes, so even if Shuzahan was reprimanded by the Orthodox school and had other substantial punishments, he would have to wait until he returned to Castle College. Thank you. Shuzaham stood up from his chair, picked up the sword beside him and put it under his windbreaker, turned his back to leave jinxing and gave Xiaomi a meaningful look. Xiaomi understood, she blinked, and made an okay gesture on the side of her school skirt without leaving a trace. Shuzaham nodded silently, turned around and left the room quickly. Goodbye, senior brother. I will go to the school you study in the future to find you. Xiaomi smiled and waved goodbye to his back. A trace of uncontrollable molten red flashed in her pupils, as if trying to penetrate the depths of Shuzaham's soul. The hospital set up tents in the open space on the other side to serve as a temporary inpatient department. Fortunately, there were not many patients this year, and the hospital did not appear to be overwhelmed. Because the bed wrapped with religious scripture linen was too conspicuous, in order to attract the attention of other people to this unique unknown religion at this time, and Shuzaham did not allow the removal of the linen and parchment covered with scriptures, the first hospital, which cooperated with the castle branch, had to place the entire bed and the person in the most remote corner of the temporary inpatient department. Shuzaham opened the tent and saw the man on the bed. The man opened his eyes and stared blankly at the top of the tent, or perhaps he was studying the strange blood-red words on the linen strip in front of him. Dad. He walked forward and called softly, while his right hand slightly approached the handle of the Murazame sword under the black windbreaker. The man came back to his senses from his daze, and Shuzaham's handsome face was reflected in his pupils. He seemed unable to move his body, so he could only grin and reveal a stiff smile. Son, you've grown taller and more handsome. Shuzaham's eyes were slightly red, and scenes from the past kept flashing and reappearing in his mind. The man's back left behind when he was swallowed by the huge waves, the man's face under Odin's mask when he re-entered Nibelungen, the world struggling to let himself escape. He took another deep breath, trying hard not to let the tears flow out of his eyes, leaned down and put one hand on the man's shoulder for a symbolic hug, without touching the scripture cloth surrounding the bed too much. Welcome back, Dad. Why do I always feel, if I don't wake up, I might be cremated in the crematorium with this bed in a few days? Shu Tianzhao grinned. Although his smile was stiff, he was still very happy. Was it your idea to turn me into this mummy? This is to protect you, Dad. Shuzaham stared into the man's eyes, and was relieved after confirming that there was no abnormal change. You should be grateful to the Emperor. It is his glory that keeps you from being polluted and invaded by the devil. A few hours ago, the devil appeared in front of his father's bed, and a few hours later, his father woke up from his coma. Despite the protection of these scriptures, and the sacred golden light that these scriptures revealed at the time, Shuzaham was still worried. Shu Tianzhao's expression became dazed again. Emperor, devil, son, how long have I been in a coma? If you count from the time we took you out of Nibelungen, Dad, you have been in a coma for a total of 11 days. Shuzaham answered without thinking. Nibelungen, take out. Shu Tianzhao seemed unable to digest so much information at once. Dad, do you remember what happened that night? You took me and my brother Mingfei and mistakenly entered the Nibelungen of Odin, the main god of Norse mythology. Shuzaham asked softly. Brother Mingfei? Shu Tianzhao was stunned at first. Is it that little Zion? You and him became brothers? This is not the point, Dad. Shuzaham was speechless. The man's thinking was always a little jumpy. He didn't know whether it was his nature or a deliberate disguise. But he still explained. Mingfei and I are fighting brothers. I can trust him with my back. It sounds reliable. Wait, I remember that little Sign was also yelling about the Emperor when he transformed, then I stayed behind to cover him so that he could take you away, and then, as he spoke, Shu Tianzhao's body trembled violently, and his face seemed to be distorted because of pain. Damn, my head hurts so much, I can't remember the rest at all. Then let it go for now, Dad. Shuzaham grabbed the man's hand and comforted him softly. A faint golden light overflowed from his body, and the blood-red words on the linen wrapped around the bed lit up with a trace of almost invisible golden meaning, which calmed Shu Tianzhao's body and thoughts. After a long while, Shu Tianzhao saw the familiar badge on the right chest of his son's familiar black windbreaker. It was a half-rotten silver world tree. You joined Castle College. He looked a little strange. Yes. I'm now a freshman at Castle College and the deputy leader of the Weeping Angels. Shuzaham nodded. Weeping Angels. Shu Tianzhao looked at the left chest of his son's windbreaker and suddenly realized that this tearful red heart badge that looked like a standard fun logo for Love Warriors was the logo of that organization that sounded quite childish. I remember I told you not to go to the damn place. Shu Tianzhao showed a look of regret. Then, who contacted you first? Contact? Are you talking about the admission process? It was Professor Manstein. No, I was asking who was the first to discover your bloodline and recruit you to enroll. Strictly speaking, we were the ones who exposed ourselves. After Lumenfei and I came out of the basement where you stayed in the old site of Media Asia Group, we encountered an attack by fallen hybrids from abroad. After we dealt with it, we happened to meet the commissioner of the castle branch, Shuzahang explained quietly, but the main reason was that Principal Angers seemed to know Lumenfei, and we finalized the admission almost the next day. Angers? That old guy was involved too? Shu Tianzhao became more and more annoyed, but he soon realized that something was wrong. Basement? Did you go to the place where I live? Yeah. Including your dark room, Dad, where you play red wine, cigar records and a bunch of dragon secrets. Shuzaham paused. Yeah, and those photos you took of Mom secretly. Shu Tianzhao showed an embarrassed expression on his face. It was not that he was too fragile as a dragon slayer, but his other side should not be exposed in front of his beloved son in this way. He had always thought of a scenario. One day in the future, when he encountered danger, he, who was just a useless driver in his son's eyes, would suddenly draw his sword and show the momentum of Zhao Zilong of Changshan in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms that he often read to his son, and kill 7 times and 7 times, so that his son would know how awesome his father was. And then his son would tell his lover, and then the family would be reunited and make dumplings happily. That plot would be too perfect. In fact, he had already done it. In the dark rainy night, in order to let his son leave safely, he stayed behind without hesitation to stop the god, but Shu Tianzhao never thought that he could come out alive and see his son again. But even if there was no Odeon drama, this kind of pretentious fantasy scene could be arranged at any time as long as he wanted to let his wife and children know their real self. But what's the point of this? Just like the protagonists in some movies, no matter how powerful and upright the protagonist is, once the villains tie up the protagonist's family, there are not many options left for the protagonist. Shu Tianzhao believes that his bloodline is strong and powerful, and his words are even more powerful than the Time Zero that kills people invisibly. The only one who can compare with him is the living legend of the secret party. But even that old gentleman fell to the ground in the event called Summer Morning at a faster speed than his companions died. Can he protect the mother and son in the future when death approaches them? This reminded him of the comic book with a peculiar style. In the previous few chapters, the man who looked invincible died at the last moment to protect his daughter. He sighed with some sadness and helplessness. 5 seconds is still too short. So Shu Tianzhao chose to leave. He gave up the identities of Su Xiaoyan's husband and Shu Zihang's father, so that the two of them would no longer have any contact with the dark side of the world. At the same time, he quietly returned to the darkness and continued his responsibility as a watcher. But what he didn't expect was that some things would not end with his departure. The world of mixed bloods that Shuzahang had wanted to stay away from was now embraced by Shuzahang. You should have a good rest, Dad. I'll go out to report the matter. Looking at his father's expression, Shuzahang sighed softly, intending to let his father digest and recall the information first, and turned to leave the tent. After going out, he contacted Lumenfei, who was far away at the headquarters of the Weeping Angels, through the EVA hotline, and told him the whole story of what happened without missing a word. Does my father need to go through any inspection procedures to make sure the demons haven't done anything to him? Just observe first. With the power of the Great Emperor's holy words as protection, the demons can't cause any trouble. On the other end of the phone, Lumenfei's voice sounded very calm, and Shuzaham could also hear an excitement and joy that could not be concealed. Ever since Lumenfei went back to deal with the thieves stealing the house and contacted again, he has always been in this mood, as if he is thinking about happy things all the time. This makes Shuzaham a little confused. Also, bring your father back after you finish dealing with the matter. Old Sergeant Tang said that we can start research on plasma weapons after you come back. Chapter 214 Watcher, you went abroad to study at an unknown university before you finished high school, and your mother didn't object? The man tilted his neck, opened his mouth, bit the dumpling that Shuzaham had picked up, and chewed it with relish. Opposed. So I persuaded her all night, and fortunately, the information provided by Castle College can support the fact that it is an excellent college on the surface. Shuzaham watched the man finish the dumpling in his mouth, and picked up another one from the lunchbox and fed it to him. Theoretically, patients who wake up from a long coma will not be able to eat normally so quickly, but Shu Tianzhao is not a normal person. Not long after waking up, he said that he was very hungry and wanted to eat, so Shuzaham took the lunchbox that contained the dumplings that were unscathed in the battle to heat it up. HMPH, barely okay, Shu Tianzhao hummed. What's your 3E test score? A. As expected of my child. Even if the bloodline is diluted, it's still at the A level. Shu Tianzhao's eyebrows danced, and a few meat scraps sprayed out of his mouth while speaking. Shu Ziham quietly wiped it off with a tissue. I thought your bloodline should be B or B, because hybrids are not like signs. If they reproduce with ordinary people, their bloodline will be diluted and defective, so most hybrid families will engage in various old-fashioned family marriages to ensure the purity of their offspring's bloodline. Shu Tianzhao was still talking. What family are you from, Dad? In Shu Ziham's impression, Shu Tianzhao had never mentioned his grandfather or grandmother to him, as if he was always alone. Who knows? My father, that is, your grandfather ran away to the United States a long time ago, and he didn't care about this at the time. Shu Tianzhao ate another dumpling, smiling. Anyway, the future inheritance of our family depends on you. Do you have a girl you like in Castle? Don't look for those blonde girls. Although they are open and hot, if you really want to start a family, you still have to find a local one, preferably from Beijing or Shanghai, so that it is easier to register your children. So Dad, are you serving the secret party? Shu Ziham interrupted his father's rambling topic that was drifting further and further away. You knew about the secret party in your freshman year. It seems that Castle College is firmly grasping the students' sense of organizational honor. Shu Tianzhao was surprised, and then said, it can't be said that who serves whom. We are all standing on the standpoint of protecting mankind to fight against the revival of the dragon race. But there are no files and records about you in Castle College. That's because your father has a high level of confidentiality. As one of the strongest super executives in the history of the executive department, all my paper files were locked at the bottom of the ice cellar before Norma was developed. Even if they were entered into the Norma system, students like you are not authorized to access them. The man was overjoyed again, showing off his true identity in Castle College with great pride. Isn't Eva's authority qualified? Eva? What is that? The war personality of the college secretary Norma, now secretly serving the Weeping Angels. It sounds like a very high authority, but I haven't heard of this thing. Did they come up with it recently? Shu Tianzhao was stunned. Can this kind of thing provide private services to student clubs? Don't tell me that old guy Yang accepted your cis godson and gave you this benefit. The principal didn't accept me as his godson, but he seems to want to accept Lu Mingfei as his godson. Shu Ziham said calmly, Dad, you seem to have not contacted the college for a long time. It's been a long time. Shu Tianzhao seemed to be thinking about it, and asked one more question. Who is the director of the executive department now? Von Schneider. The Avenger who was left half dead in the Greenland Shadow incident. Damn it, son, when you graduate, don't join the executive department. Nothing good will happen to you working for this madman. Shu Tianzhao paused, then raised the corner of his mouth. Anyway, I'm on a long-term secret mission. Except for specific contacts and a few important school directors, no one else is qualified to know of my existence. Another dumpling. What about Principal Angus? That old guy has held the power of life and death since the establishment of the academy. All S-level executive officer files have passed through his hands. Do you think he knows me? After rescuing you from the Nibelungen, Lu Mingfei asked Principal Angus, and he said he didn't know you. Shu Tianzhao's face froze at first, but then he reacted, this is normal. This kind of secret must not be disclosed casually. Does the principal know that you are my son? I don't know yet. Shu Ziham shook his head. When Lu Mingfei and I entered school, we didn't tell anyone about Nibelungen and Odeon. When Lu Mingfei asked the principal about you, he asked after he rescued you from Nibelungen. Shu Tianzhao's face gradually darkened, and he chewed the dumplings in his mouth silently. Shu Tianzhao was not too surprised by the fact that he was rescued from Nibelungen. After all, Lu Mingfei was a ruthless kid who wanted to exchange blood with Odeon even with Kumyunir inserted in his body. As for what secrets the other party had, it was not the time for him to explore it now, because he still had a lot of things to deal with. Son, can you let Eva check the file? After a long silence, Shu Tianzhao suddenly spoke. Sure. Shu Ziham took out his mobile phone and handed it to his father. Eva, use your authority. Understood. A cold and soft female voice sounded. Eva can view any text and numbers uploaded to the system in Castle College. This authority was also assigned to Finkel. Shu Ziham found it hard to imagine that the usually sloppy and unserious senior brother Finkel actually had such a high authority in secret. When he went to the bottom of the ice cellar to meet Eva privately, he was as familiar as going home. But Finkel was not interested in reading the various taboo and top-secret materials of the secret party. In his words, instead of reading these anti-human dark things, why don't I appreciate the beautiful scenery of my junior sisters in swimsuits? Watcher, file number SSS870924001. Shu Tianzhao said in a deep voice, as if there was a long-standing unknown secret hidden in his words. SSS. Shu Zhang's heart moved. This is the highest level of confidentiality file. The task file that Lumenfei threw into the trash can was only one S. These 3 S files may only be qualified to be consulted by the principal and the directors of the school board. He had read some top-secret S or SS level files. In addition to the various Draken histories that would be accused of historical nihilism or even thrown into a mental hospital if disclosed, there were also many research projects of hybrids trying to strengthen themselves. There was a time when Lumenfei took his black card, which had now become the meal card for all members of the Weeping Angels, into the ice cellar and brought back several boxes. Among them is the research record of the bloodline purification and refining plan, the predecessor of the violent blood technology. The plan was already under study before World War I. The initial plan was to inject the diluted and alchemically enhanced dragon blood into the hybrids as a powerful medicine, and then according to this plan, it was extended to transplant this powerful medicine together with the organs and tissues of the hybrids into ordinary people to create artificial hybrids. Another example is another study conducted during World War II, which tried to replace part of the bones or nerves in the body with hidden retractable metals through the hybrid's stronger vitality than humans. In general, it was to create or even mass-produce Wolverine. Of course, there were no X-Men comics at the time. These plans can be said to be the dark history of the secret party. It is not known whether they were for fighting against the Drakons or satisfying their own desires. Regardless of whether they were useful or not, and even the plans whose proposers were stupid, as soon as they saw the research titles, they were put into experimentation, and finally ended in failure and were accompanied by the death of a large number of hybrids who served as experimental subjects. Some were even anti-human and anti-ethical, and it was not an exaggeration to call them black magic. However, Lumenfei was very absorbed in reading, sometimes even taking notes, as if he wanted to come up with something new with reference. Search completed. No records found for the file number SSS870924001. Just as Shu Zhang's thoughts were drifting slightly, Eva gave her own answer. Damn it, the most feared thing about being an undercover is that your file is deleted. If the contact person also dies, that would be a lot of fun. Shu Tianzhao's face looked a little bad. For a moment, he found that the traces he left in the world in the past were a little shallow. Just like what someone said, the true death of a person is that everyone forgets his existence. If there really comes a day when he is forgotten by the whole world, who will remember his existence? Dad, do you want to contact the principal to talk to you? Shu Zhang said. It's okay, don't worry, and what I want to say can't be explained clearly over the phone. I have to go back to Castle College with you, just to make up for the parent-teacher meeting I missed before. Feed another dumpling. The man looked at the handsome and quiet face, and the corners of his mouth curled up. At least his son would still remember him. Dad, take a rest after you finish eating. I need to go back home to deal with Mom. After feeding the man the last dumpling and then half a cup of hot water, Shu Zhang covered the lunchbox and stood up silently. Just as he was about to leave, Shu Tianzhao suddenly called him, his face showing a somewhat awkward expression but also with a bit of hope and expectation. Does your mother know about me? She doesn't know. Shu Zhang shook his head. Mom is the kind of heartless child. I think she should have forgotten you, so I didn't tell her anything about you, which would only bring her unnecessary trouble. After all, he paused, this was the choice you made yourself, Dad. Shu Tianzhao's eyes were a little dim, like a deflated ball. He showed a helpless bitter smile. Although you were right, what you said is really heartbreaking. I can understand you, you don't want to involve us in another dangerous world, it's just that for some reason, your approach is a bit bad. And you still have me, Dad. Shu Zhang stared into his father's eyes, his expression calm. I won't lose you again. No matter what the future holds, I will follow you, even if it means fighting with you to a grand and beautiful death. Shu Tianzhao stared at Shu Zhang for a long time, his eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of crystal. Damn it, don't say such unlucky words on the first day of the new year. I'm still waiting for you to bring a girlfriend back to see me. He smiled happily, the bitterness on his face was swept away, and there was a hint of relief in his smile. Chapter 215 Changing Timeline. The last time I went back to Castle College was in 1988. Not long after I graduated and joined the executive department, I received a mission to return to China and never came back. Outside the car window, the white snow slightly obscured the green on the low mountain in the distance. A castle-like building complex on the mountainside was looming in the snow and wind of Illinois. On the fourth day of the Chinese New Year, Xu Tianzhao and Xu Zihang flew back to Chicago from the coastal city of China and took the CC-1000 express arranged by Norma to Castle College. In fact, the domestic affairs have not been dealt with yet. For example, Xu Tianzhao's safe house where all the weapons and dragon-related information have been patronized, he suspected that it was done by the Zhengton clan, especially after knowing that Zhengton had issued a bullshit repatriation order to his son. He was furious and wanted to pick up a knife to go to the door to greet them, but was dissuaded by Xu Zihang. "Dad, what is your mission?" I remember that the main target of the Falscott was the suitcase you carried. What was in it that even the Falscott was attracted to? Xu Zihang asked. In the past few days, the two of them tacitly did not mention anything about the Dragon clan. It seemed like a father and son who had reunited after a long separation were enjoying their festive spring festival. As they stepped back to the dark side of the world, the short-lived peace had ended, and Xu Zihang began to want to understand the secrets and shadows that his father carried. In the beginning, it was to monitor possible dragon activities. Xu Tianzhao paused. "It seems that you haven't been taught about elemental turbulence in your freshman year." "It hasn't been taught yet, but I read relevant materials in the library after I experienced it," Xu Zihang said. "From the perspective of alchemy, the world is made up of 5 core elements. Usually the distribution of these elements is balanced, but in the case of severe disturbances, elemental turbulence will occur that is invisible to the naked eye. Atmospheric phenomena such as atmospheric discharges, hurricanes, storms, and drastic and abnormal temperature changes are the direct manifestations of elemental turbulence." Xu Zihang experienced that catastrophic disaster in Japan. The revival of the White King broke the elemental balance in space. Even though he was in the night food source, the natural disasters such as volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, storms, etc., caused by the elemental turbulence in the outside world almost sank the entire Tokyo into the sea. "Great, my son is an excellent student wherever he goes," Xu Tianzhao praised with a smile. "Generally, only the awakening of dragons of the second generation or above will trigger elemental turbulence, and between 1989 and 1991, that city experienced no less than 6 small-scale elemental turbulences. I believe you can also detect some unusual weather changes in your hometown. Abnormal and frequent rainy season. In Xu Zihang's impression, it often rains in that coastal city, and typhoons land from time to time. Yes, this speculation lasted until 3 years ago. Xu Tianzhao's expression became solemn. He looked around the car to make sure there was no one else, and then continued, "That was the first time I ran into Odion." Did his father have seen the Falscott before the accident half a year ago? Xu Zihang frowned. The whereabouts of the Falscott Odion remains a mystery, especially the appearance of the demon makes the situation more complicated, but this cannot hinder the steps of the weeping angels. Aliens, heretics, demons, false gods, no matter what, anything that harms mankind should be purified by them with the Emperor's wrath. That day, it was also because of the typhoon landing and it rained heavily. I ran into him when I rushed back to the safe house late at night with 2 servings of braised large intestines and a serving of spicy chicken wings. Xu Zihang was a little speechless, and wanted to remind his father to delete some unnecessary descriptions. The braised large intestines and spicy chicken wings were really inappropriate. The scene at the time was similar to what we saw in Nibelungen, but I didn't enter Nibelungen. Odion condensed the rain into a large flowing mirror and confronted me from Nibelungen, Xu Tianzhao said in a deep voice. Just when I left the backup information and prepared to get off the car to test it, he turned around and leapt on his horse. Left? Xu Zihang was a little surprised. He thought the Falscott would have a confrontation with his father. Yes, I couldn't figure it out at the time. Logically, this thing would never show up in front of people for no reason to show its presence and then walk away, so I started investigating in the following time, and tried to run into Odion again more than once, but to no avail, until we ran into him again more than half a year later. Well, its target is quite clear, that is the suitcase in your hand. What's in it? The question turned back to the second question he asked at the beginning. Xu Tianzhao took a deep breath and said slowly in a low voice, "Flesh and blood. The ultimate of the world, the flesh and blood of the Black King and Hog." Xu Zihang's pupils shrank slightly. He never thought that the silver suitcase he took out of the trunk would contain something related to the black alien that represented despair. He would rather believe that it contained his father's favorite braised large intestine. Flesh and blood, which part? What's the use? He asked. Anyway, it's okay as long as it's not the appendix or the large intestine. Shu Tianzhao made a disappointed joke. It was first mastered by the secret party in 1900. Not long after it was sent to Castle Manor in Germany, it was attacked by the Dragon Clan. The secret party and the Linhart Society members put up a fierce resistance and lost it. After that, there have been fragmentary information. It is said that it has been circulating between the Arctic, Russia, Mongolia, and Japan. In the years since my divorce from your mother, I have been traveling around Asia following the intelligence given by the executive department. It was not until recent years that there was not very true information that it flowed into Siberia. I won't say much about my experience of taking it back. Anyway, I almost lost my life in Siberia. Shu Tianzhao sighed. This is the only trace of the Black Emperor who has been sleeping in ancient history for hundreds of years. It may be the key for the Dragon Clan to dominate the world again, or it may be the only key to stop the destruction of the world. The worst thing is that it was lost in my hands and fell into the hands of a god of unknown origin. Shu Tianzhao's face was solemn. I don't know what consequences this will lead to, but Odeon is definitely not a righteous god, and during the days lying in the hospital bed, I thought carefully and discovered a somewhat horrifying fact. The first time I ran into Odeon was on the same day of the same month as when we accidentally entered the Nibelungen and faced Odeon, but the time difference was 3 years. That day, there was also a typhoon landed, and it was raining heavily. Shu Zaham frowned. This is a bit too coincidental. It's not as simple as a coincidence. I always have a feeling, as if Odeon knew that I would take the box and was waiting to take it from me. Well, could it be some kind of world spirit that is unknown to us and can predict the future? Shu Zaham guessed. It's unlikely. If there really is such a spirit that can predict the future, then the Dragon Kings in history would not have been assassinated by the hybrids in various ways. Shu Tianzhao's expression became a little uncomfortable and painful again. This may be related to the memory I lost in Nibelungen. I always feel that I seem to have experienced these things, but not in this timeline. Maybe in another timeline. I took back the box and entered Nibelungen 3 years ago, but because of some power, the timeline was reset or even destroyed. The timeline started again, and Odeon, who was not affected, still thought that 3 years ago was when I took back the box, but he didn't know that there was an error in the timeline. That's right. That's right. That's it. Shu Tianzhao became more and more excited, his eyes radiating golden light, as if he had already understood some key secrets. Calm down first, Dad. Shu Zaham quickly stood up and pressed his father's shoulders to stabilize his emotions, while paying attention to his movements and expressions, guarding against his father's possible residual influence by the devil and being bewitched by various blasphemous or false knowledge. Chapter 216a. Little Weeping Angel Shock. Typhoons and rainstorms are manifestations of elemental turbulence. It's not surprising that the appearance of the false god Odeon can trigger elemental turbulence, and he appeared in advance. Maybe he just wanted to visit you, Dad. Just like Dad, you were going to attend my opening ceremony, but it's been several days since you came. I will only think that you're delayed because of something instead of thinking that it is because my opening ceremony was delayed for a few days in the previous timeline. The theory of the new timeline you conceived is untenable, Dad. Shu Zaham quickly gave his own rebuttal. Without substantial evidence, his father's speculation cannot stand up to scrutiny. Shu Tianzhao was speechless. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that what his son said made sense. He was a little discouraged and the light in his eyes dimmed. Indeed, I feel it's a bit nonsense when you say that. Forget it. It's better to find a way to find Odeon's location and snatch back the box containing the Black King's large intestine instead of worrying about this. Shu Zaham has been paying attention to the changes in his father's demeanor. Compared with the instability caused by the dragon bloodline in the body, the demon launches unpredictable pollution in the cognitive and spiritual aspects. He had a deep understanding of this when he was trapped in an unknown space in the hospital. The devil tried to drag him into the abyss of error with all kinds of false and blasphemous knowledge. And his father had been in Nibelungen for the past 6 months. It was impossible for him not to have residual mental trauma in that situation. So he decided to start preaching the words of the great emperor to his father after returning to the Holy Blood Museum, so that his father would believe in the emperor, fight for the emperor and mankind, and shape a pure, resolute and uncontaminated soul. As the father and son were silent, only the howling of the wind and snow outside the window echoed in the carriage. The long black dragon slowed down quietly when approaching the platform and slid into the platform smoothly. After getting off the car, a Mercedes-Benz car with a striking double-wind blood drop mark came into view. This sorrow car is the only car currently used by the Weeping Angel. A stern-looking strong man wearing sunglasses stood beside the car, as if he had been waiting for a long time. "The S-Class told me to come and pick you two up," the strong man said in not very standard Chinese, and stepped forward to stretch out his big arm as thick as an ordinary person's thigh to take over the luggage of the father and son. Has the schoolwork department reached a cooperation with the Weeping Angels now? Shuzhan was a little surprised. These school workers were elites who retired from the Navy SEALs. They usually only obeyed the orders of the executive department. Now they were actually working as drivers for them. "It's not cooperation, it's the principal's order." The sturdy school worker put the luggage in the trunk. "Now S-Level also has the authority to mobilize members of the schoolwork department. It seems that the little sign is doing well in Castle," Shu Tianzhao said half-jokingly. "Does Angus know his true strength?" "That depends on whether you are asking about the strength in the real world or in Nibelungen, Dad. Does it make a difference? Is it divided into home and away games like in basketball games?" "That's true, but it's hard to explain it to you, Dad, now. I'll explain it to you after returning to the Holy Blood Museum." Shuzhan did not explain everything to his father immediately, as this involved the deeper secrets of the Weeping Angels. After passing through the cast-iron carved school gate, the Mercedes-Benz drove into the castle-like academy and drove along the familiar road to the location of the Holy Blood Hall. "It has changed a lot. I can't recognize what is there. It seems that Angus has made a lot of money from the school board over the years. The style of the entire academy has been completely refurbished. At the time, Castle still trained students according to the Berlin Military Academy. Students were even allowed to use words to practice fighting. I remember that the head of the executive department at the time was an old man from a crazy family in Europe who drank dragon blood. This old guy was ruthless and always opposed Angus." Looking at the Baroque-style academy building outside the window, Shu Tianzhao's mouth curled up slightly, as if he had returned to the days when he was still studying at Castle Academy more than a decade ago. Shuzhan remained silent. He knew about the previous style of Castle Academy. The reason for the change to the current style of a private free academy seemed to be a certain heavy accident. But to be honest, he thought Mingfei would like Castle's previous style. He had always wanted to establish a special regiment, and he also wanted some genetic modification. "We're here." The words of the school worker pulled Shuzhan back to reality from his thoughts. Shuzhan replied okay and opened the car door and got out of the car. Before he turned around to get his luggage from the trunk, the scene in front of the Holy Blood Museum really shocked him. The Holy Blood Museum has its own courtyard, and now there is a giant milky white statue nearly 5 meters high in the center of the courtyard. Although the statue is not yet completed, and multi-layer scaffolding of the same height is surrounding it, the overall image of the statue has been completed from the appearance. This is a statue of an angel, with a pair of wings spread out behind it. However, unlike the angels in myths who wear white clothes and wear moon tree branches on their heads, this angel wears heavy armor. The exquisite patterns and carvings engraved on every part of the armor give it a perfect artistic atmosphere, while the belt, knee pads, skull on the breastplate, and the purity mark with scriptures add a bit of religious flavor, symbolizing wisdom and strategy. The ruby-like dazzling eyes are particularly eye-catching in the center of the breastplate, which is also one of the few places on this statue that has been dyed in advance. The angel held a sharp sword burning with holy flames in one hand, and a trident-shaped spear with wings in the other hand. The stone flag on the spear was wrapped around the angel's wrist naturally under the sculptor's hand, as if it was fluttering in the wind. Under the foot was a hideous creature with only half of its head left, its twisted horns were all cut off, and its sharp fangs were nailed to the base of the stone sculpture, serving as a reference for the angel's heroic appearance. Sangros. Shuzhan recognized at a glance that this angel statue was the father of genes that Mingfei highly respected, and Mingfei himself stood on the scaffolding with a sculptor's knife and a stone chisel to polish the angel's face. A halo burning like a corona had already taken shape behind its head. It seems that he has been concentrating on this job these days. "Welcome back, brother. I was planning to finish this great statue of St. Rose before you come back." Mingfei saw Shuzhan getting off the car. His face was full of joy, and he landed lightly from the scaffolding several meters high with a few flips. The snow-white lime and his hair were dyed with a layer of silver. "Your artistic style is still so perfect," praised Saint Rose. Shuzhan admired from the bottom of his heart, and he was also a little surprised, "But I never knew that in addition to painting, your sculpture level is also so high." This is the way Santa has taught us to keep our hearts pure and peaceful. Mingfei's tone was pious and respectful. The Ninth Legion, which was once called battlefield ghouls due to genetic defects, was transformed into the noble blood angels under the command of the Primate. Through the pursuit of art, they suppressed their thirst for blood and the black rage that would appear in the future. I'm glad to see you wake up from your coma, uncle. I've fulfilled my promise. Then, Mingfei looked at Chu Tianzhao, who was listening to their conversation with a confused look on his face, and greeted him with a polite smile, just like the rainy night when he got on the Maybach more than half a year ago. His pupils were covered with a layer of golden light, as if he could see through the depths of a person's heart and soul. Chu Tianzhao was a little scared by being stared at. Before he could open his mouth, Mingfei turned his head to talk to Xu Zhihan. Does he really remember nothing? Well, he has no memory of anything he experienced after separating from the Nibelungen. It is not ruled out that it was a despicable trick performed by a false god or a demon. No traces left by the devil have been found so far. Let's go find the source girl, maybe her words can work. Okay. Then can my dad be allowed to know all the secrets of the weeping angels? Sure. Okay. I will let dad believe in the emperor and fight for him. Xu Zhihan nodded and looked at Chu Tianzhao, who was confused. Let's go, Dad, let's go in first. The two children didn't give them any room to speak. After the conversation, Mingfei jumped back onto the scaffolding and continued to ponder the angel statue, while Chu Tianzhao was confusedly pulled by Xu Zhihan to bypass the statue and enter the Holy Blood Museum. There is a phonograph in the corner of the hall. It used to be an exhibit, but now it is put to use. The black record under the needle slowly turns, and the calm and gorgeous syllables of aria on the G-string echo in the Holy Blood Hall. The huge mural hanging in the hall facing the gate has been replaced with a new one, but compared with the previous gorgeous and shocking angel leading the army, this huge painting hanging from the second floor is relatively simple. The main body of this painting is just a man's head. The man in the painting has his eyes closed, his expression is solemn and slightly sad, and the moon tree laurel crown on his forehead presses down his black hair. It seems that there is a golden sun burning behind his head, and the sacred halo above his head seems to form a golden needle with spread wings. Just one look makes people want to kneel down and surrender to the men in the painting from the bottom of their hearts. The Emperor, the great lord of humanity. Xu Zhihan had never seen the true face of the Emperor he believed in, but after seeing the image of the man in the painting, his instinct told him that this was the holy face of the Emperor. He took a deep breath, declared a prayer in his heart, and knelt on one knee devoutly to perform the highest etiquette of the austerities taught by Mingfei. Is this also within the scope of Anger's permission? I feel that as a parent of a student, I need to report some problems to the school. Xu Tianzhao was a little frightened by his son's abnormal behavior. Kneeling down to salute a mural seemed to be too deeply poisoned by religion. Don't be rude, Dad. Xu Zhihan got up from the ground. I will take you to find the source girl now. Wait son, can I ask who the source girl is first? At present, she should be considered a dream trainer of the regiment. Her main job is to protect the White King's Dragon Cross. Xu Zhihan explained. Dream trainer? You have this kind of profession here? Wait. Xu Tianzhao suddenly realized that something was wrong. He shook his head as if to wake himself up. He asked doubtfully. Son, you just mentioned the White King's Dragon Bone Cross, right? Well, this is one of the secrets of our regiment, Xu Zhihan said slowly. The White Emperor in the history of the Dragon Clan has been killed by brother Mingfei. The Dragon Bone Cross left behind after his death is in the basement under our feet. It should not have been moved yet. A theft happened not long ago. Xu Tianzhao's eyes lost focus and became dull. After a while, he suddenly woke up, and after slapping himself several times, he was finally able to say a complete sentence, his voice trembling. Fuck, this world is really crazy. Chapter 217 Dad, believe in the Emperor. Xu Tianzhao thought that it was already amazing that Mingfei had been able to pull him out of Odin's Nibelung in the past 6 months. The power displayed by the god Odin was not something that any hybrid could easily deal with. But what his son said now really shocked him a little. The White King? The dragon that was second only to the Black King was still alive. The Ice Sea fragments did mention information about the White King. During the Black King's reign, this White Emperor led 1/3 of the dragons to launch a great rebellion. After the failure, he was chopped into pieces by the Black King and erased from history. The hybrids who had not read the Ice Sea fragments did not even know that there was such a rebel in the history of the dragons. If something of this level is really revived, then don't even think about covering up the secrets of the dragons. Nuclear bombs are the most basic and ultimate trump card of mankind. It would be fine if the White King was burned to slag by the biggest killer weapon of mankind now, but if the White King does not accept the rules of nuclear bombs, then Xu Tianzhao would have to consider taking his wife and son back to Nibelungen overnight. He didn't want his grandson to grow a few more arms or legs. Son, are you sure you are not telling the story of some hot-blooded enema, right? Xu Tianzhao's eyes were dull, and he still couldn't believe his ears. No, I witnessed the revival of the White King with my own eyes. Xu Ziham shook his head, his voice solemn. He recalled the 8-headed dancing white deformed dragon in the night food field. Humans were as small as ants in front of it. The power of an individual could not match this supernatural creature. Even if Ultraman came, he would have to form a group to fight as a theater version. Then, how did Lu Mingfei kill him? Transform into a Super Saiyan. Xu Tianzhao felt that it was not himself and his son who were crazy, but this world. Unfortunately, I was not able to witness how Brother Lu Mingfei purified the White King. When he appeared in front of us again, he was already carrying the White King's dragon bone cross behind him. Xu Ziham paused and continued, but it is certain that it must be the divine glory of the great emperor who protected him and purified this evil alien that wanted to destroy humanity with his anger. While Xu Ziham was singing a long speech praising the emperor like chanting a sutra, Xu Tianzhao also took the time to force himself to accept this unreal fact. He asked, "Does Angus know about this? How many other people know about this?" It is difficult to compare the value of the Black King's large intestine and the dragon bone cross of the White King's fall, but the hybrid forces will definitely fight each other for them, and even start an alternative local war. The situation in Asia is unclear, but the hybrid forces in Europe and America are several huge capital monsters behind the scenes of the world. Before World War I, the finance minister of the German Empire was still a veteran of the secret party. It is difficult to say how high the status of these hybrids hidden in the dark has been achieved in the open society now. In contrast, there are still a few dragon-slaying elites who shed their blood and ignited themselves just to dispel the shadow of human history. In addition to preserving themselves in the doomsday when the Black King returns to settle accounts, the hybrid forces now slay dragons to devour the legacy of the dead dragons, and then evolve into a new dragon. The bones of the White King after his fall are the best and safe evolutionary food. As for how to eat, it is definitely not just for making soup. Currently, according to the understanding of Principal Angus and the school board, this dragon bone cross belongs to an unknown second-generation species, not the White King. After all, there has never been a complete skeleton left behind by a dragon of the second-generation species or above in history, so it is not that troublesome to cover up this fact. Xu Ziham verified the iris and pushed open the door to the basement. After the previous theft, the security of the Holy Blood Hall was further upgraded. Second-generation species, Xu Tianzhao's mouth twitched. It sounded like pointing at a diamond and saying it was a piece of glass. The real value is very different. You just take it as a collection. Don't use it. The alchemist sergeant of this regiment is working on it. We don't need to worry about it. Xu Ziham said calmly, and walked down the stairs with his father. The underground floor, which was originally used as an arsenal to store bolt guns, chainsaw swords and other equipment, was closed, leaving only a road leading to the second underground floor. Thick metal formed the new walls and doors. The 8 golden characters Emperor's Alchemy Laboratory shone brightly, and a wooden sign working was hung next to the door. It seems that research work has been put on the agenda. Xu Ziham was a little surprised. After so much theoretical study, is old Tang finally going to start practicing? There are also alchemy sergeants. Wow, you can actually find a serious alchemist who knows how to use dragon bones in this day and age. Xu Tianzhao exclaimed. But soon he could no longer make a sound. With the hybrid's far superior vision, he saw the silver-white skeleton placed at the end of the hall on the second underground floor. It was like a collection of angels and demons. The open arm bones and the open wing bones seemed to be fused together, which easily reminded him of Jesus nailed to the cross on Good Friday. Dragon Bone Cross, this name is indeed quite appropriate. Welcome back, Mr. Xu. Did you have a good vacation? Perhaps because of the theft incident not long ago, Yuan's Inn did not turn on only 2 lights to save electricity. Now the entire underground second floor is brightly lit as daylight. He ended his contemplation and meditation, stood up from the tatami and greeted Xu Ziham. To be honest, it's a bit bad. Xu Ziham responded politely, let me introduce him. He is my father. This is Yuan Xin, the strongest warrior in the regiment except Lu Mingfei, and also that dream trainer of the regiment. Hello, uncle. Yuan Xin performed Japanese etiquette and bowed slightly. Shu Tianzhao then moved his eyes away from the dragon bone cross, subconsciously wanting to examine his son's friends in school from the perspective of a student's parent. But this examination startled him. The young child in front of him, who looked more beautiful than a girl, gave him an extremely dangerous aura. The dragon blood hidden in the other party seemed to be able to erupt and boil like a volcano at any time. It seems that what his son said was not a lie. The other party might even be stronger than him. Hello, are you from the Japanese branch? Shu Tianzhao still smiled and greeted Yuan Xin. I guess so. I have been on the blacklist of people that the Japanese branch wants to kill. Yuan Xin answered quietly. Shu Tianzhao's grinning mouth twitched. He felt as bad as an old father who knew that his top student son in school made friends with gangsters in society. He had been in Japan for a period of time and knew the cruelty of the Japanese branch and the more dangerous and difficult organizations that opposed them. Chin, I need your strength. My father is missing a key memory. Let's see if you can use your words to dig it out. This is very important to us. Shu Tianzhao found a new linen strip engraved with blood-red scriptures from the side, and wrapped it around his father's body again and again without paying attention to his father's stunned expression. Yuan Xin nodded. He was already accustomed to the fact that an extremely dangerous word spirit he possessed was used as a VR projector. What's going on? Shu Tianzhao was confused. The word spirit of Yuan Xin is dream taper, which can enter the depths of a person's subconscious and construct past memories to form dreams. Shu Tianzhao gave a simple explanation and dragged his father to lie down on the tatami. Damn, then won't all my past love affairs in castle be exposed? Shu Tianzhao was shocked and realized that his past would be exposed in front of his son, and the embarrassment of social death followed. You've already said it. Yuan Xin started to sing softly, and the song was ethereal like a mountain ballad. Shu Tianzhao was puzzled at first why that child suddenly started to sing awkwardly. After realizing that it was Long Wen's chanting, he tried to resist with his will, but soon he fell asleep like a tired worker who touched the bed. Dream taper is essentially still a high-risk level of mind-control word spirit. When he woke up from a dream that reminded him of his past life, he saw Yuan Xinu's pretty face with a heavy expression, as if she was going to give him a critical illness notice and ask Shu Tianzhao to sign it in the next second. What happened? He realized something was wrong. Your memories in Midlungeon have been completely erased, Dad. Even the dream taper couldn't be found, Shu Tianzhao said with the same serious expression. The devil doesn't want us to know something. Shu Tianzhao was quite quick to accept the new version of the new enemy, the devil. It wouldn't be surprising if there were demons when there were dragons and gods. Who knows if there would be a Saint Jesus one day, which would be perfect for a mahjong table. After asking Yuan Xin whether her condition could support the release of the dream taper for the second time, a new dream began, but this time it was Shu Tianzhao and Mingfei who entered Odian Midlungeon's memories again, and while reviewing Shu Tianzhao's memories, they saw if they could bring back some of his past memories. Shu Tianzhao's skyrocketing strength, the word spirit. Junyan, the real power bestowed by the Emperor they believe in, and themselves possessed by an unknown force under the iron mask of Odian. Seeing it with your own eyes is more convincing and impactful than describing it verbally. Especially when Shu Tianzhao was holding Murazaim and intending to give himself, who looked tortured, a quick end, Shu Tianzhao felt even more sad. He didn't expect that there would be a day when Murazaim would become Frostmourne. But Shu Tianzhao is not the fallen Uthaze, on the contrary, he is the fallen King Terranase. At Shu Tianzhao's instruction, the memories came to an abrupt end when he held Murazaim. Yuan Xin released the nightmare taper, and the three returned to reality. Believe in the Emperor, Dad, Shu Tianzhao said softly, looking at his father who was still in a state of shock and couldn't calm down for a long time. This is the only way to prevent your soul from being disturbed by demons again. Chapter 218 The non-existent Shu Tianzhao. Believe in the Emperor? Shu Tianzhao looked confused. If this had been said before, he would have probably thought that his son had been brainwashed into a fanatic by a religious organization, and then he would have drawn his sword to settle accounts with the other party. However, in the dream that had just been replayed, he witnessed Shu Tianzhao being blessed with holy light, which meant that the Emperor he believed in was not an illusory concept, but a real existence. But what does this Emperor represent? If it is of the same nature as the suspected god clan such as the Dragon clan and Odian, then they are equivalent to the Emperor's thugs or chess pieces attacking each other, which is not good for mankind. But Shu Tianzhao kept talking about the Lord of Mankind, the only light that illuminates the dark galaxy, the guiding light of mankind. Some titles are not even limited to the Earth but have jumped to the scope of the Milky Way. This made Shu Tianzhao a little distracted. Could it be that the Emperor is an alien? Aren't they following the modern magical style of passionate dragon slaying with romance? How did it become a weird science fiction religious style? Wait, let me take a moment. I still haven't reacted. Shu Tianzhao waved his hand, indicating that he still needed time to digest those extremely informative images. Okay. Do you need me to prepare a room for you to rest, Dad? Shu Tianzhao nodded, not too anxious. This is Castle Academy, which can theoretically face a Dragon King level invasion. Even if a demon really descends, it will not cause too many casualties and turmoil. Although the Weeping Angels do not have a strict initiation ceremony, in view of his father's special situation, the prayer of loyalty and certain special ceremonies, if any, are still necessary. No need for now. I have to go to Wanger's and report my mission to him. Shu Tianzhao thought for a while and decided to deal with his own affairs before considering matters of faith. Then I'll talk to Mingfei and ask him to go with you. I think he has a lot of say in Castle College now. The third dragon slaying plan. It seems that the school board has given you sufficient resources because of this incident. The warm winter sun shone through the skylight, tinting the bookshelves that extended to the dome with a faint golden edge. Several red squirrels were still hibernating in the shadow of a bookshelf somewhere, unable to listen to the conversation below. Executive Director Schneider flicked through a stack of documents in his hand, and the only pair of silver-gray eyes exposed on the breathing mask flashed with an unknown luster. Principal Hilbert Jean Angers sat opposite him, slowly tasting the fragrant black tea. The school directors all had the same attitude towards the near theft of the Dragon Bone incident, shocked and angry, and they also condemned the security omissions during my time in charge of the academy. Angers said slowly, but it cannot be denied that no family wants to be associated with Sebastian, a mixed-blood mercenary team. It is the best way to show sincerity to Mingfei, and I just took advantage of him. I don't believe that it has nothing to do with them, Minister Schneider said without raising his head, his eyes still on the documents in his hand. Sebastian entered the academy through a high-authority channel, and the person who killed him was quite professional, and all the access records were erased. I can't even be sure which level of authority it was. This matter can be put aside for the time being. My good student has been in a very good mood recently and seems to have no intention of pursuing it further. Angers smiled. Also, I want to remind you that your good student does not pay much attention to the safekeeping of the black card. Many students have seen members of his club waving the black card with the highest authority in the academy to order a few luxurious lunches or subs in the cafeteria. Schneider said. At least they are not interested in the ice cellar. Ange smiled. By the way, 10 hours ago, a level student Shuzaham brought his parents to Castle College with this level authority. If you don't remind me, I think it won't be long before Castle College is ready to hold its first parent conference. Schneider flicked through the file book in his hand to the last page. It sounds like a very good suggestion, but there are a lot of places that parents cannot see during the campus tour. And joked, I will ask him what the situation is. After about 10 seconds of silence, Schneider put the stacked files back on the table. Can I ask what your second set of dragon-slaying plans are? At least I only know now that there is a second set of dragon-slaying plans in addition to letting those crazy people in the equipment department study weapons of mass destruction. Killing dragons with cold weapons is a thing of the past. Everyone in Walheim believes that driving a giant robot to fight a head-on battle with an equally giant dragon clan is the new way of war to kill dragons in the future. Of course, the huge amount of funds given to the equipment department was not for them to research this. Schneider knew that they were researching high-energy laser weapons. The technology level of the hybrid world was much higher than that of the normal human world. And with the money power of the secret party, a giant European and American monopoly group, every year scientific research geniuses from various countries would join the secret party, and then they would be attracted by the new and unknown science of the dark side of the world and truly integrate into the organization. However, when the high-energy laser weapons could be shipped, was still unknown. Mingfei is the second dragon-slaying plan. Then this third plan is the superposition of the first two plans. Schneider denied the feasibility of Mingfei being the second dragon-slaying plan. He stared into Ange's eyes. Nibelungen plan. You want to create a dragon king belonging to mankind. The document densely recorded an alchemical plan that could greatly enhance hybrid individuals. It was designed by Vice President Flamel, the alchemist with the highest attainments in dragon alchemy. To put it simply, the plan was to implant dragon blood or dragon genes that had been purified through multiple alchemical biology processes into the bodies of hybrids, break through critical boundaries while maintaining their consciousness so as not to degenerate into Deadpool, and create a super hybrid that could face the Dragon King. To be precise, it's not superposition, but a new plan officially launched after a breakthrough in alchemical science. The board of directors knows about it and agrees to the implementation of this plan. But they haven't decided on the candidate yet, right? The Gattuso family hopes to use the plan on their heir Caesar Gattuso in the future, and my choice is Mingfei. Is it necessary? The fact that he can kill the next generation alone shows his strength. The allocation of resources should always be more balanced. Schneider said. I just want to make the dragon-slaying sword sharper. Angus said lightly, drinking the black tea in the cup. I regret to tell you that the first-generation species I faced in 1900 was not his full strength. If we want to face the fully revived first-generation species, we must do our best. However, Mingfei is the one who has the most say in this plan. He has the only complete second-generation dragon bone in the history of hybrids. If the Nibelungen plan is to be truly implemented and to ensure the effectiveness of the plan, his dragon bone is still needed. With the temperament of those school directors, they will not be willing to obey Mingfei because of this dragon bone. Angus did not continue to speak, but stood up and walked to the tea cabinet on the side. Then, the doors gently knocked. Principal, I'm Mingfei. Come in. Angus took out 2 white bone china cups, just in time for Mingfei, who pushed open the mahogany door of the office and Xu Tianzhao behind him. Schneider frowned and looked up and down at Xu Tianzhao, seeming a little unhappy. After so many years, your taste is still as elegant as ever. Xu Tianzhao came in and looked around the principal's office, and spoke with a smile, as if he was meeting an old friend after a long time. Angus, who was washing bone china cups, heard this, raised his head and looked at the tall Xu Tianzhao carefully. A trace of confusion and doubt flashed across his brows, but he soon returned to the polite smile of an educator. If I'm not mistaken, you are the father of Xu Zhihan. I'm very happy that you can provide such an excellent student for our castle college. Xu Tianzhao's smile froze, and he glanced at Mingfei, who looked calm and had no intention of explaining. He coughed softly. Xu Tianzhao, a graduate of 1989, Executive Department File Number AI892421S, the Executive Officer of the Watch Mission, issued by the former Executive Department Director Arsene Beowulf, and personally stamped by you, the Principal. Don't you remember it? After a short silence, Angus Schneider seemed to be digesting this information, and the latter had taken out his mobile phone to try to search for the file number mentioned by Xu Tianzhao. Although I can't remember all the students with the file number suffix S will leave a deep impression on me, but I don't have a record of you in my memory. After the last S-level student committed suicide 40 years ago, the only S-level student in Castle Academy so far is Mingfei. Angus said seriously. I have searched with the authority of the Minister of the Executive Department, and this file does not exist. Schneider replied in a hoarse voice, if there is an S-level super executive like you, I would not have overlooked it. Xu Tianzhao's heart sank after seeing Angie's expression, but he still did not give up and asked, like a drowning man trying to grab a straw, what about the former Minister Arsene Beowulf? I want to contact him. Unfortunately, Minister Arsene died in a traffic accident in October last year. Shit. How could his steel body be killed by a car? I don't believe it. It was not a car accident, it was a helicopter crash. This is nonsense. Xu Tianzhao was like a deflated ball, a little exhausted. He could understand that his files and mission records were deleted, but if even Ange didn't remember him, then either he was crazy or the world was crazy. Although my memory cannot allow me to remember all the students with the suffix S usually leave a deep impression on me, Angus said calmly, but as Professor Schneider said, if there really is an S-level person like you, I will never forget it. The last time Castle had an S-level bloodline student was 40 years ago, but he committed suicide. So far, the only new S-level student is Mingfei. After saying that, he looked at Mingfei, who was thinking at the side. Can you explain to us what's going on? Chapter 219. Resurrection of the Next Generation. Mingfei simply recounted his experience of meeting Xu Tianzhao, including the false god Odin and his hometown of Nibelung. Uncle Xu's existence should have been directly erased from your memory by the power of aliens or heretics, so you have no impression of him, Mingfei said in a flat tone, but it doesn't matter. The Weeping Angels will be his new home, and he will fight for the great empire with his children. Shu Tianzhao's eyes widened, and the corners of his mouth twitched. He was just feeling a little sad that his existence was erased from the world, and he felt like a hurried passerby. In this world, there were only a few cold files that could prove his identity. Apart from that, no one would remember that a man named Shu Tianzhao had lived in this world. This made him think of the woman who gave birth to Xu Zihang for him again. This time, I'm afraid, as Xu Zihang said, Su Xiaoyan really forgot his existence. But looking at Lu Mingfei's appearance, his face was calm, as if it was just a trivial matter. Shu Tianzhao even felt surprised that he was taken into the harem by the other party. Do you know what this means? Since the other party can erase my past from the world, the same power can also work on you and other people. Shu Tianzhao reminded him of the danger of this power that can affect the entire world. I'm lucky. At least you and Zihang still know my existence, but if, one day you find that no one in the world remembers you, what should you do? Being forgotten is not a scary thing. As long as the will of the Emperor and the chapter is inherited by the successors, there is no need to fear even death. Lu Mingfei said calmly. In that cold and dark universe, the least scarce thing is eternal death and being forgotten. Even the superhuman Ostatas are just ordinary units on some large battlefields, not to mention those mortal Astra Militarum who only have cold casualty numbers to represent their past fighting for the Emperor. Who would remember the name of a soldier among them? So Lu Mingfei didn't care much about being forgotten. Even if I die in a corner tomorrow and my past is erased by the aliens, I believe Xu Zihang will take my place and let the regiment to continue to move forward in accordance with the will and anger of the Emperor and wipe out all enemies of mankind. Really? Crazy? Shu Tianzhao was speechless. Lu Mingfei's indifference to life and death was not like that of an 18-year-old child. He felt a little ashamed for a moment, as he was still wondering if Su Xiaoyan still remembered him. However, when he thought that even the White Emperor of the Dragon Clan fell in his hands, the specific method was still unclear. Shu Tianzhao became more open-minded. No, now is not the time to worry about this. He shook his head to gather his thoughts and looked at Angus, who was still thinking about Lu Mingfei's concise but informative words. Minister Schneider knew that a good memory is not as good as a bad pen, so he took a pen and quickly wrote down the information that was worthy at the SSS confidentiality level on the document paper. I don't know if you will restore my file, but let's put this matter aside for now. Shu Tianzhao's voice became low. Principal Angus, do you still remember the No. Nord Seal? After hearing the word No. Nord Seal, Angus' eyes suddenly became as sharp as a sword, and he looked straight at the S-level executive who did not exist in his memory. Of course, in a recent memory, I saw it being held in the hands of the elders of the secret party. I have been looking for it all these years. Do you have any clues about it? After a while, Angus retracted his gaze and poured black tea into his teacup again. Schneider's silver-grey eyes were also staring at Shu Tianzhao. No. Nord Seal was one of the important tasks assigned by Principal Angus to the executive department. A team of more than 10 level executives was tracking all the clues about this item. But what exactly is it and what does it represent? Schneider knows nothing. It seems that the principal's memory in this regard has also been affected to some extent, Shu Tianzhao said in a deep voice. After the Watch mission, you issued the mission to recapture Seal No. Nord 2 years ago. After that, I traveled all over Asia and finally succeeded in finding it. But unfortunately, I failed to send it back to the academy. Odeon stopped us that night. Between my son and Seal No. Nord, I chose my son's life. In other words, it fell into the hands of Odeon, the main god of the Nordic world. In fact, this has already involved a new topic, whether the gods named in the Norse mythology really exist. Angus cast his eyes on Lu Mingfei. The warrior who killed the second generation and even confronted Odeon before entering school was the most qualified to speak. He never seemed to be too shocked by the secrets and strength that Lu Mingfei constantly exposed, as if he had already been able to see through some dark and unknown secrets deep in the S-level bloodliner. It could also be a dragon king. Many gods in mythological stories of the bodies and names of dragons, such as giant wolf Fenrir. Minister Schneider added. Whatever it is, it will be completely purified. Lu Mingfei's answer was, as expected, a standard fanatic response. He didn't care about academic research. Then we must find out where Odeon is as soon as possible. He is very likely lurking in human society as a human. Shu Tianzhao glanced at Lu Mingfei. With the super sign who killed the White King, it seems that we only need to refresh Odeon's coordinates and let him kill him with 999 strikes. Professor Schneider, this will trouble you and your executive department. Anger nodded. Understood, Principal. Schneider stood up, pressed the document paper with scribbled German under the oxygen tank, and pushed the cart out of the principal's office quickly. Mr. Xu Tianzhao, regarding the recovery of your file, Angus sighed, I would like to ask you to write a complete report about yourself, as detailed as possible. After that, you'll join Lumenfei's club or rejoin the executive department. It is up to you to decide. It is not difficult to accept a non-existent person like Xu Tianzhao. After all, he himself is standing here alive and has said the existence of Seal No. Naught, which basically confirms that he does belong to Castle Academy. I'm a man in my 30s and I'm still hanging out with the kids in the club. It's not appropriate, right? Xu Tianzhao muttered in his heart, but he didn't say much, and nodded to agree. In addition, regarding Odin's true identity, from a human perspective, we may need to spend a lot of time reading materials and books to guess. Angus took a sip of the black tea in the cup that had become a little warm, but maybe the dragons will know the origin of this Nordic god. Could it be that you, the principal, have planted spies in the dragon clan? Xu Tianzhao was surprised. No, but there are rumors in the European branch that a second-generation dragon is awakened and brought a lot of trouble to the Beowulf family. Angus turned his head to look at Lumenfei. Are you interested in getting rid of it? And by the way, get some key information about Odin or the Dragon King from it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 220 Letter. Are there any second-generation species awakening? Xu Tianzhao frowned. This kind of dangerous dragon species with bloodline are only lower than the first-generation species has appeared in the past history. However, before those targets had time to wake up, the secret party who knew the location in advance filled the coffin with mercury. But the sleeping second-generation species and the revived second-generation species are completely different. The dragon bloodline is stolen by the hybrids will suffer unimaginable suppression in front of the real dragons. There was once a third-generation species with a relatively thin bloodliner that could suppress the hybrids with bloodliner below A level in the revived state. Not to mention that not all hybrids have high-risk or even super high-risk world spirits such as Moment, Time Zero and Junyan. Most hybrids can rely on their own strength after being strengthened by the dragon bloodliner. Location. As he expected, Lumenfei's calm voice sounded beside him, as if he could set off on the journey of slaying dragons at any time. If they can kill the White King, then killing a second-generation species is about the same as killing a chicken. Xu Tianzhao sighed in his heart, feeling that he had been in Nibelungen for more than half a year, but more than half a lifetime. We are still tracking its location. Angus shook his head. This second-generation species awakened quite secretly, and hardly caused any movement. Even now, it is still hiding behind the scenes, allowing the Deadpool inspired by its bloodliner to kill, and not showing up. You can go to Rome to rest first, and then set off after confirming the target location, so as to save time crossing the Atlantic. Okay. Lumenfei nodded, his words were still concise. But some secret party families may not want to see you. If even this first generation is killed by you, then your collection may very likely add another dragon bone cross. And chuckled, in this way, you'll have a very important say in the Nibelungen project. Nibelungen project? Lumenfei raised his eyebrows, interested in the name. Can you tell me more about it? Is it a plan to build the Nibelungen space in the real world? If that were the case, he didn't know whether to agree or oppose it. The reason for approval is simple. The Emperor's divine power can descend through the Nibelungen space constructed with spiritual elements. He and other brothers who believe in the Emperor can enter this state, and the efficiency of purifying aliens can be raised to the highest level. No matter what kind of aliens, they cannot withstand the Emperor's wrath. The reason for opposition is also simple. If the Emperor's power can descend here, then other evil eyes of the Supreme Heaven will also be focused here. One changing demon lord is already troublesome enough. Lumenfei doesn't want another crazy bloodthirsty demon or dirty unclean one to descend on his hometown. No, this is a plan that can greatly enhance the hybrid individuals. Angus looked for the plan, but found that it had been taken away by Schneider, so he had to explain it in words. Through the genes of dragons and alchemical biotechnology, the bloodliner and combat effectiveness of hybrids can be improved to the extent that they can face the Dragon King. This plan was long ago. Lumenfei immediately lost interest. If it was earlier, he might be excited, but now he no longer needs the relevant enhancement plan. Because there is a great emperor. Mingfei believed that the Emperor who created the Imperial Guards, the Primaries, and the Astartes could also create a genetic template for a new type of warrior based on the characteristics of hybrid humans. What he needed to do was to purify the alien heretics while quietly waiting. After patiently listening to Wange's brief explanation of the Nibelungen plan, Mingfei was about to leave to express his politeness, but Ange called him again. "There is one more thing, I believe you will be looking forward to this." He stood up and walked to the desk, took out a white envelope from the drawer and handed it to Mingfei. Mingfei took it and saw a few beautiful handwritten words on the front. "Principal Ange, to Mingfei, received. A letter from your parents, the place of mailing is unknown." Ange sat back on the sofa with a faint smile on his lips. Parents. Mingfei's heart was slightly touched, thinking about this ancient and unfamiliar word that symbolizes family affection. His memories of his parents in his hometown had been precipitated by more than 100 years of battle memories. In that cold universe, the influence of parents was not important. After being selected to become an Astartes, his feelings about family affection were completely wiped out by the surgery and the indoctrination of combat concepts. Only the Primarch was their father. There was red wax on the back of the envelope, which was an ancient way of sealing letters in his hometown. He opened the letter. "Dear Mingfei, we received your admission notice. We thought that the admission notice for Castle would be sent to you after you finished the college entrance examination, but we didn't expect it to be so early. I hope you won't be scared by the other side of the world, and I also hope that I can be with you at this moment. But unfortunately, I can't do it at the moment. What your father and I have done has been done for nearly 20 years. There is not much time left. If I leave, it will cause some unbearable consequences. I'm an incompetent mother, and I hope you can understand me. I heard that the principal rated your bloodline as. Although this is something your father and I have long expected, I hope you don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't take the words "the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility" to heart. Be the person and the thing you want to be. No matter what choice you make, I will be proud of you. Your father and I have set a time to meet you, which is the year you graduate from Castle College. We can't wait to see you in Castle bachelor's gown. You must be very handsome. But try not to join the executive department at the time. It's also good to stay in the college and be a professor. We love you all the time. Mom, Cowan IPS. When I was writing the letter, your father kept dictating to me to write to you, but I think it's all nonsense, so I won't repeat it. Isn't it a bit selfish? Haha. Your emotions are calmer than I thought. And took a sip of black tea. Well. Where are they now? Mingfei stuffed the letter back into the envelope, and Xu Tianzhao, who had poked his head out to secretly look at him, also withdrew his curious gaze. Another left-behind child, but how perverted must the bloodline be for the parents who can give birth to a son who killed the White King? They can't really be super saiyans. He muttered to himself, and couldn't help looking at Mingfei again. Younger than my son, so his parents can't be much older or younger than me, but I haven't heard of any other students with S-level bloodliness in the previous and next few classes. Maybe they are exploring the remains of the Dragon clan in an uninhabited jungle in South America. This letter has been sent for a long time, and they probably don't know that their son has the ability to kill the next generation alone. Angus smiled softly. Do you need a reply? I will send it out for you as soon as I receive their news. No need. I will meet them in person to ask them clearly when I have a chance. Mingfei said lightly. He didn't have much affection for the parents in this world, he just wanted to understand some things. Although he didn't care about his physical condition, as long as his soul was holy and loyal to fight for the Emperor once told him to understand which part of his body belongs to his hometown. Since it was an order, Mingfei would naturally execute it without hesitation. Angus smiled and said nothing more. If there is nothing else, then I'll take my leave first. I need to prepare some things. After Mingfei said goodbye politely, he turned and left. Xu Tianzhao hesitated for a few seconds and whispered to the principal, I'll come to you later, and then quickly followed Mingfei. Watching the backs of the two people walking down the stairs, Principal Angus drank the second cup of black tea, stood up again and walked back to his desk. He seemed to have a feeling, pulled out another drawer, and took out a grey folder. The folder was light and there didn't seem to be much in it. Angus slowly opened the seal and took out 2 pages of drawing paper from it. The lines of the drawings on the paper were fine and lifelike. A boy sat on a high platform, wearing a fine suit and square-toed leather shoes, swinging his feet, with a happy smile on his face. Beside him stood a warrior as tall as a giant wearing heavy armor, with a tearful red heart painted in the center of the thick black and white checkered shoulder armor. Ange stared at it in silence for a long time, his eyes revealing the long-lost emotions of an old friend who had not seen each other for many years, but at the same time a little complicated. Then, he turned to the second page. The second page was a personal painting. A boy with a Greek moon tree crown on his forehead tilted his head slightly, and his eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything penetrated the paper and looked at Ange. Noble, holy, unfathomable. Although there were only a few strokes, the boy's characteristics in the painting were fully displayed, as if the paper was carrying a heavy weight. I don't know how long it took, until the sunlight fell from the skylight to the painting in Ange's hand, dyeing it with a layer of holy golden light. He sighed softly and whispered in an inaudible voice, Emperor. Chapter 221. Exemplary battle armor completed. I heard from Taham that you really killed the White King. What weapon and method did you use? Are you still accepting disciples? Shu Tianzhao quickly caught up with Lu Mingfei and asked in a low voice next to him. I did purify the White King, but it was not entirely my own strength, Lu Mingfei explained calmly. The combat power I can exert in the two different scenes of the real world and Niblung is also different. The power of the Empire cannot interfere too much in the real world. In other words, if you meet Odion here, you will probably be dead. Shu Tianzhao thought for a while and came to such a conclusion. Not sure, so far I haven't encountered an enemy of the same level as that false god in the real world. Lu Mingfei didn't have much emotional fluctuations, but from the memories of summer morning, he did not have enough power in the real world to purify the Dragon King level alien. The false god Odion controls strange weapons, and Lu Mingfei will not forget the carbonization phenomenon that occurred when he was pierced by Kungunir. I still need stronger body transformation, weapons and equipment, and more fighting brothers. Fortunately, all of this is now developing steadily. Well, I thought you could get through it by yourself, Shu Tianzhao shrugged. Now it seems that maybe I can still help you. Where are you going? After walking out of the second floor attic where the principal's office is located, Lu Mingfei changed direction and did not go back to the Holy Blood Hole with him. Equipment department. I have to be prepared for battle before leaving for Europe. Lu Mingfei did not even look back. He was not interested in mastering the dragon bone and controlling the right to speak. Purifying aliens is the instinct of Astates, but he also has to be prepared to deal with it. For example, the model armor that has been commissioned to the equipment department to manufacture so far, it is time to drive it into the actual battlefield for testing. Crossing the campus road into the ice cellar, and then taking the elevator from the special passage of the ice cellar that fell for nearly 10 minutes, Lu Mingfei came to Wadalheim, which is more than 100 meters underground in Castle College. The specific name is Institute of Alchemy and Scientific Engineering Applications, referred to as the Equipment Department. Hey! Champion Lu is here. As soon as Lu Mingfei got out of the elevator and took a breath of clean air that had been filtered multiple times by the Equipment Department, he heard a surprised voice. The members on duty in front of the heavy door of the Equipment Department greeted him enthusiastically. In addition to being keen on making explosives, the crazy people in the Equipment Department are also heavy fans of Warhammer, special effects and video games. The job of taking turns to guard the door has become a cosplay opportunity for these stay-at-home people. After Kamen Rider, Ultraman, and the Saint Seiya of the Zodiac, this time Lu Mingfei was greeted by the Predator, who was wearing soft armor in the style of a jungle hunter, with a weird-looking helmet and a braid as thick as a long snake behind it, which made him think of the aliens like the Elder. But then again, the Predator seems to be an alien. The Wing Zero has completed the final adjustment stage, and is waiting for you to come for a test drive. The Iron Warrior enthusiastically opened the door of the Equipment Department for Lu Mingfei, and at the same time, he simply left his post and took him directly to the Fantasy Manifestation Experiment Department. Deputy Director Carl was still responsible for receiving Lu Mingfei. He was in high spirits. You came at the right time, our champion warrior of Valhalla. Lu Mingfei's mouth twitched slightly. He didn't know when he became the champion warrior of the Equipment Department, and these people simply thought that the title of champion warrior was very cool and in line with their style, so they gave it to themselves. But he didn't say much. These researchers are more cheerful than those cold and unfeeling sages of the Mechanicus, and being their champion warriors, can you feel more at ease when urging them to work in the future? After more than 5 months of hard work, the Model Armor Unit, -01 has officially entered the actual combat test phase. The insulation curtain was lifted, and a heavy exoskeleton armor with an overall color of blood red came into view. Lu Mingfei's eyes lit up and his breathing became a little rapid. He came to inspect once before the winter vacation. At the time, the psychopaths in the equipment department wanted to put various meaningless anime female images on the surface of the armor, and were then forcibly stopped by Mingfei, and he was responsible for the painting and decoration of the patterns. Compared with the last time, the model armor, along with weapons and ammunition, has been loaded and seems to be ready for battle at any time. As for whether it will fall off or explode during the battle, it remains to be tested. Without saying anything nonsense, Mingfei took off his windbreaker and stepped directly into the cockpit of the model armor. This aspect is also one of the improvements made by the equipment department. After all, it is impossible for him to have enough time to change clothes before driving the armor every time. However, the lining he wore was the link combat suit that could fit the armor, which was considered to be prepared in advance. To the cruel angel to the boy's myth, a melodious female voice sounded in his ears, symbolizing the activation of the armor system. When the heavy breastplate automatically fell down to fit the armor itself, Mingfei took a deep breath and said to Deputy Director Carl, who looked almost 40 years old, "Please delete this redundant music next time." "How is it redundant?" Deputy Director Carl widened his eyes. "This is the most classic op of Neon Genesis Evangelion, the thesis of a cruel angel. Don't you think it fits the current mood? Driving a powerful battle armor to blow up the apostles, not the dragon's dog head." "I don't think so." Mingfei took a deep breath, feeling the inside of the armor automatically sensing and connecting with various parts of the body, and the fire control joystick popped out for him to pour out the fierce firepower of this armor. "Don't press randomly. The weapon system is loaded with ammunition," Deputy Director Carl reminded, and handed Mingfei a strange-shaped helmet. He looked familiar, as if some of the giant combat robots called Gundam had heads like this. All the researchers who gathered to watch also put on various strange-shaped helmets. Mingfei even saw a familiar Mark the 7th power armor helmet, which was probably made by the researcher with strong hands-on ability by looking at the picture. Then a researcher pushed a cart of helmets of various shapes for Mingfei to choose from, most of which were from special effects works. "I don't really want to wear a helmet." Mingfei hesitated for a while and shook his head to refuse. "How can you not wear a helmet for protection? If you don't wear a helmet to fight, let alone a sniper, if you're unlucky, a stray bullet can blow your head off," Deputy Director Carl exclaimed. "This way the Emperor can look at me clearly," Mingfei said. The researchers were silent for a while, then took off their helmets in unison, showing a look of surprise, as if they thought Mingfei's words were quite cool and wanted to record them down, but these lunatics probably didn't believe in the Emperor, and would only add their favorite characters to the prefix of this sentence. Mingfei ignored these lunatics and began to control the body of the mobile armor. The weapon system of the left limb of the armor added a third new mode to the two modes of the double-barreled explosive gun with flame spray. The blazing meat hook, which can eject a 40-meter-long alloy chain hook. The weight of this big guy was greatly reduced under the effect of the light-as-a-feather alchemy array pattern, which can provide a certain degree of mobility and terrain-killing response capabilities. And the two seemingly riveted armor plates located on both sides of the head are actually two miniature missile launchers. A total of 24 miniature Starlight individual missiles produced by the equipment department are loaded, which can provide powerful firepower bombing. The right arm of the armor is designed for close combat. Even if it does not wield the full-formed Jinyu Grey Sword, its iron fist can smash the target's head with the help of the thrusters installed on the elbow. There is a pair of golden iron wings on the back of the armor, which are connected to the heavy power core that occupies 60% of the upper body of the armor. When in operation, it will stretch out to both sides to be responsible for the exhaust and heat dissipation of the core energy. The design is like this because the psychopaths in the equipment department wanted to look more handsome. For this reason, they even specially installed additional configurations to achieve the visual effect of light wings when it is in operation. After the improvement of each system and the results of the experiment, the original theoretical continuous combat time has been reduced. If the foot mobility system and the right arm's Pegasus Meteor Fist system are fully operational, the armor can continue to fight for 57 minutes at full energy, said Deputy Director Carl excitedly, and then added, "This is already a great achievement. If the results can be shown to the outside world, the Burning Eyes Fire Alchemy Core is estimated to win every Nobel Prize in Physics before the controlled nuclear fusion technology is developed, but so far we only have this core. This treasure was dug out from the Dragon Mausoleum. It is an alchemy technology unique to the Dragon clan. The Vice President can't restore the alchemy array inside, even the school board doesn't know that such a precious thing is used in Unit 01. The Vice President has issued a death order for us not to leak it. Deputy Director Carl's endless chatter reminded Mingfei of something. Alchemy technology. Doesn't his own regiment happen to have an alchemy sergeant who has recovered a lot of knowledge? It was just right for him to perfect this armor and add some more alchemical technology. For example, injecting the alchemical life form living spirit to replace the machine soul. Mingfei remembered that the Battle Sisters model armor was equipped with an organic soul to assist in combat. When there was no way to drive this armor into the Nibelungen to awaken the machine soul, it could only be replaced by a living spirit. The living spirit of the Jinyu Greatsword was still very obedient. However, alchemical technology belongs to the technology of the dragon aliens. Considering the possible chaos corrosion, Mingfei estimated that he would have to make some more pure marks before setting off, praying for the Emperor's sacred light to dispel the blasphemous power. A new group was created, and interested combat brothers can join it. In addition, the new group is prohibited from establishing a government. The previous group was disbanded not only because of rumors and the crowd, but also because the government was too strong. Several managers couldn't manage it and left the group. The sergeant brother who took over even paid for the management to become a member. In short, you are welcome to join the new group to discuss the Dragon Clan, Warhammer, and other things, but forget about the corruption of Trinch. Chapter 222 Alchemy Tech Tree. Monarch Flame and Plasma Gun. This suit of armor has been fully assembled. Can it be put into the battlefield? Mingfei moved the right arm of the armor and familiarized himself with the functions of several buttons on the joystick under the guidance of the researcher. Switching armor mode, switching firing mode, firing, accelerating, melee charging. These gamers in the equipment department know how to simplify the operation. They just need to replace the joystick with a PS controller. Of course, we have even finished loading the ammunition. Deputy Director Carl was excited. That's good. The first enemy that the exemplary battle armor will face may be a next-generation alien. I don't want any accidents to happen. You can always trust what Alheim in this regard. Deputy Director Carl patted his chest with a manly look on his face, but then added, next-generation enemy. In that case, we have to install a few more cameras. Ahem, we want to monitor all aspects of the battle armor data in real time. That's not important. Where is the exit? Before that, I have to take it back to the Holy Blood Museum. Do you want to take it back, pack it in a box, and ship it to the battlefield? This baby is not a model. It will probably be snatched away by the US Customs as soon as it arrives at the airport. Deputy Director Carl was anxious. What Alheim is modifying a military transport plane to be responsible for the transportation of Unit 01. You can wait a little longer. It's not packing or crating. It's taking it back to receive the binary prayer of the young Messiah and to grant it the mark of purity to protect it from unknown blasphemy and pollution. Mingfei switched the armor to high-speed movement mode. 2 pairs of metal pulleys popped out from the bottom of the armor's feet. For a moment, he felt a little unbalanced, but then he stabilized himself and the built-in balance of the armor. Oh. This setting sounds quite exciting. Deputy Director Carl's eyes lit up. Can I go over and take a look? There was a slight tremor behind him. It was the power core of the model armor being activated. The metal wings painted in gold slowly stretched out, and the air at the heat dissipation holes at the wing ends was slightly distorted. The psychopaths in the equipment department applauded and cheered, and took out their mobile phones to take pictures of this exciting scene. Mingfei did not stay for too long, and drove the armor directly out of the freight entrance of the equipment department. The arms they produced and the fried chicken and coke sent from the cafeteria were all transported through this channel. When such a sci-fi creation with a classical beauty was walking along the campus roads, it inevitably attracted the attention of a large number of college professors, school workers, and executive department specialists. Among them, there were many students who returned to school early after the Dragon King invasion alarm. When Mingfei took photos of the head of the armor on the chest and uploaded them to the Night Watcher forum, almost the entire Castle College knew that S-Class had its own toy. At the same time, the account of the equipment department on the forum was also flooded with various messages. Among the many elite mixed-blood students, there were many otakus who liked mechas and robots. These otakus were all wealthy and asked how much the S-Class mecha cost, how long it would take to produce, and whether they could get one for themselves. Mingfei didn't know the commotion he caused. On the way back to the Holy Blood Museum, he was familiar with the maximum movement speed of the armor. Being surrounded by the cold metal armor made him feel excited. He had a sense of returning to the past. After all, he had been wearing power armor for more than 100 years, and he was always a little uncomfortable without armor to protect himself in battle. If I return to the universe and continue to fight for the Empire in the future, I hope I can get more weapons and equipment for my brothers in the Weepers. Mingfei couldn't help but think of those sons of St. Jeremiah who seemed to be cursed with doom but still had their hearts set on the light. Because they had been wandering around the borders of the Empire for many years, they could not get enough equipment and supplies, which led to their inability to save the people of the Empire from the slaughter of the aliens with higher efficiency. If I could let my brothers come to this world, such an idea suddenly popped up in Mingfei's mind. The speed of the armor slowed down a lot, and he couldn't help but cast his eyes on the verdant hill behind the academy. The white sea of clouds covered the blue of the sky behind it. Such scenery only existed in the legendary garden world in that universe. The warriors of the Weeps were naturally not qualified to go to such a place. They rushed to the border to save mortals from aliens and heretics. After a while, Mingfei gathered his thoughts, and with the roar and tremor of the turbine engine, the armor accelerated again. There will be a chance, even the humanity of the great Emperor has come to this world. He whispered to himself. The metal pool is rubbed against the ground, creating bright sparks. The model armor drifted and stabilized its body and stopped in the courtyard of the Holy Blood Museum. Xu Tianzhao was stunned and said, "Which film set did you come back from?" "Transformers." He walked around the academy, thinking about the time when he studied here. When he came back, he happened to run into this sci-fi creation rushing in from the equipment department. "This set of armor will be the war weapon of the Weeping Angels." Mingfei responded politely, and at the same time switched the armor to walking mode, stepped up the stairs step by step and walked into the museum. "War weapons? Wait, is this thing real? Not a toy model that can be driven?" Xu Tianzhao was stunned, and began to look at the blood-red exoskeleton armor again, especially the fierce weapon combination on the left. The bullets fired from the barrel of that caliber could easily tear a human body into a bloody mist. "I need to prepare for the battle in Europe," Mingfei said. After the expansion of the gate and the passage, the model armor can pass through unimpeded, but it still needs to keep balance when walking down the stairs. "Are you talking about the second-generation seed?" Xu Tianzhao retracted his gaze. "Europe is the headquarters of the secret party. If they are really forced into a corner, there is also an army and armed forces as a backup. And you even killed the White King. You almost cut off Odin's head and kicked it as a ball. Even if there is no field magic, Nibelungen doesn't need such great pressure. By the way, I haven't heard Zhang mention your words. What are your words? What are the specific effects? Can you tell me?" Xu Tianzhao began to be curious. Mingfei's bloodliner level is definitely not low, and the word he controls are probably high risk or even super high risk. "I don't have a word spirit yet." Mingfei turned off the engine and detached from the model armor after the fixing belt and sensor line connected to the body joints were released. The underground floor that was originally used as a munitions storage depot has been transformed into an alchemy laboratory by alchemist Sergeant Ronald Tang, and completely relying on his own strength, heaven and earth as a furnace has become a perfect manufacturing template in his hands. "No word spirit?" Xu Tianzhao was surprised. "It should be that it has not awakened yet. A small change like yours, a hybrid should not have a word spirit." "Maybe." Mingfei was a little careless, and then suddenly remembered that his windbreaker was left in the equipment department. The alien's ability word spirit is indeed a reliable combat aid. For example, Xu Zhang's brother's Junyan is an excellent means of attack for hybrids that have not been transformed. And time zero and moment, Mingfei estimated that even after being transformed into an Astator, this kind of word spirit can make the Astator's combat power further leap. As for why he still doesn't have it, or hasn't awakened the word spirit, Mingfei doesn't want to go into it for the time being. He pushed open the door of the Emperor's alchemy laboratory and heard the high-pitched dragon chanting coming from inside. The one chanting the word spirit is Xu Zhang. The free fire elements in the air gathered into an orange-yellow fireball in front of him, which is the state of Junyan ready to go. "Wow!" Xu Tianzhao, who followed in, couldn't help but exclaimed. Although he knew that his son's word spirit was Junyan, he was still a little shocked when he saw Xu Zhang release his word spirit. Xu Zhang was not distracted by the appearance of Mingfei and his father, and he recited the dragon text completely to the end, but the Junyan fireball in front of him did not blast out directly, but began to compress inward after a period of unstable trembling. The terrible temperature and energy collision seemed to emit a roar that made people's hearts tremble. The temperature in the laboratory soared for a moment, but then disappeared. The silver metal that made up the walls of the laboratory had mysterious rooms flashing and lighting up to guide the overflowing heat energy to other places. If the vice principal saw these rooms here with his own eyes, he would find that the complexity and depth of these alchemy arrays have far exceeded the scope of alchemy that humans can understand so far. The author who inscribed these alchemical arrays, Ronald Tang, was standing beside Xu Zhihan, humming the tune of Blue and White Porcelain. His pair of bright red eyes were staring at the fireball that Xu Zhihan was compressing. Several amorphous silver metal fluids were floating in the air, and they seemed to be able to form something at any time. Is this heating up Junyan? Xu Tianzhao's mouth was dry. He saw Xu Zhihan's behavior. This was simply playing with fire. This was indeed playing with fire. Then Junyan's form went a step further, from a ball of blazing fireball to a perfect ring like a fiery red jade, shining with a dangerous and beautiful luster. Okay, don't panic. Slowly continue to increase the pressure and heat. The field of heaven and earth as furnace had already covered the entire laboratory. Alchemist Sergeant Old Tang stabilized the ring in front of Xu Zhihan with an invisible magnetic field, while controlling the silver metal fluids to melt into a cylinder and suck the ring into it. Xu Zhihan's face and skin all over his body turned red as if bleeding. The fine hairs on his body began to thicken and turn black, clearly visible, until they formed a perfect sword shield shape covering his red skin. The third blood burst. The king's flame warmed up. The ring-shaped king's flame slowly and orderly advanced in the metal cylinder. Each advance represented a further step in the flame pressure and temperature of the ring, until a bright white appeared in the fiery red of the ring. The king's flame at the critical point of plasma form. In theory, the word spirit has the possibility of further growth, but this power is not a devil fruit, and there is no such thing as development. The existing alchemical knowledge reserves of mankind are not enough to support them in conducting experiments on the word spirit of hybrids. I can't hold on, a dull roar came from under the iron blue mask. Obviously, Xu Zhihan's operation to do this was not as simple as lighting a gas stove and turning it to a high fire. The changes in his body after the third blood burst blocked the residual heat of the king's flame, so that the user of the king's flame would not be roasted by his word spirit first. Okay, release the control. Old Tang shouted, and the two ends of the silver metal cylinder were closed, completely enveloping the white ring inside. Xu Zhihan collapsed to the ground as if he had lost his temper. Xu Tianzhao hurried forward and wanted to carry his son away from this extremely dangerous experimental site, but Xu Zhihan's body temperature was as hot as a furnace, so he had to drag himself by his legs instead. Be good and listen, it will only take a moment. Old Tang was also seizing the time to engrave the alchemical A pattern on the metal cylinder. Under his control, the elements of nothingness continued to leave mysterious rooms on the cylinder, but this did not last long. After a while, the metal cylinder trembled violently, and a beam of dazzling white light tore through the metal surface and gushed out, hitting the metal wall of the laboratory head-on and directly melting through it. Hot metal droplets kept dripping. Ah! The most critical step failed. Old Tang sighed. What kind of alchemical experiment is this? You made my son like this. It's really a sin. Xu Tianzhao came up angrily and angrily rebuked Old Tang for treating Xu Zhihan's safety as a joke. I asked him to do it. Mingfei stretched out his hand to stop Xu Tianzhao, and now the experiment seems to have achieved some results. He looked hopeful and expectant. The white high heat energy that just gushed out was very familiar. It was similar to the energy beam shot out by a plasma gun. Although Mingfei had never used a plasma gun, he had seen the Astatas of the Salamanders use it. The hot bombardment of a plasma gun could even melt the armor of a tank, and the Salamanders had a company of warriors equipped with plasma weapons. Junyan's experiment of suppressing it to plasma state through static heating has been successful. Speaking of which, I didn't expect Brother Xu Zhihan to be so powerful. I just mentioned it casually, and with the help of the dot matrix pattern, he actually achieved this level. Old Tang said, Captain, you should know about plasma state, right? I don't know. Mingfei said truthfully. It's not that he, the champion warrior, is illiterate, but that the scientific and technological knowledge should only be known by the technical sergeants of the regiment who have studied on Mars. Anyway, this thing should not be within the scope of science. This is the power domain of the Dragon King who controls the authority, the King of Bronze and Fire. I can't do this, and I can't breathe fire. Old Tang sighed. Now the trouble is how to record the plasma state of Junyan. Record. It's the conceptual arming in alchemy. Convert the power of the word spirit into an alchemical graphic record and store it on a carrier. Old Tang turned around and took out an item from a pile of books in the corner. Captain, have you seen this thing? Lying in Old Tang's palm was a grey octagonal flat columnar ancient stone, half the size of a fist, and the fiery red color, like a flowing liquid, formed a simple Chinese dragon image on the surface of the stone. Is this a talisman? Lu Mingfei felt a little familiar, and then remembered that during the admission counseling, Professor Manstein had taken out these things to demonstrate the power of the dragon clan. There were a total of 4 talismans, each of which stored a different word spirit. Yes, this thing records and stores the power of Junyan. As long as you consume your mental energy, you can release a Junyan. I secretly took it out from the ice cellar as a reference, and I will send it back later. Old Tang said, now you know how I plan to make the plasma gun you mentioned, right? Understood. Lu Mingfei nodded, first released the plasma Junyan through Shuzihan, and then used the concept armament alchemy technology to store its records on a carrier. Then this carrier became the alchemy version of the plasma gun. This production method sounds simple enough, and does not require any complicated technology or STC templates that are strictly sealed by the mechanic cult. It is purely a product of the fusion of alchemy technology and the word spirit. As for whether it is useful or not, whether it is easy to use, we still have to wait until the alchemy sergeant manufactures it before we can draw a conclusion. Chapter 223 Heading to Naples. Xu Tianzhao, who was standing by, was a little confused. What was conceptual armament and static heating at Junction? They seemed to be playing a very novel alchemy. He still had some knowledge of alchemy. After all, alchemy and words-related courses were compulsory courses for sophomores and juniors. Xu Tianzhao still remembered the higher elements theory, which was 100 times more torturous than advanced mathematics, and the bullshit motto in the Emerald Jade record that he had to recite once in every class. However, Lu Mingfei's alchemy sergeant seemed to be more powerful than Vice President Flamel. What about recording words on a carrier and then releasing them? This didn't sound like an alchemy technology that humans could play now. But this technology did exist. The dragon spell with the red sheen on the surface represented the dragon race's achievements in alchemy. Humans were just struggling in the entry stage with an old alchemy formula book. Xu Tianzhao couldn't help but look at the war group established by Lu Mingfei again. Even if Lu Mingfei's personal strength is not strong, with this alchemist who can carve the word spirit, he is enough to challenge all the mixed blood forces in the world. And Angus seems to have acquiesced to Lu Mingfei's independent behavior. But that's right, that old madman can do anything as long as he can slay that dragon, and he may have planned to let Lu Mingfei take over his job. In theory, no matter what level of word spirit can be recorded. Lu Mingfei thought of the word spirit of the alien White King. Mirage, the powerful word spirit that can materialize past memories into reality, so he asked with some expectation. 3 Astartes regiments, a combat non-unit, and 2 got mechanical titans. The aliens in my hometown can't stop such a powerful joint force. Captain, are you asking about the ultimate move of the level of ancient power? Old Tang realized what he wanted to ask. Theoretically, it's possible, but it's difficult to do. This level of word spirits don't have the setting of friendly damage forgiveness, just like Toulon. This stupid word spirit will burn to ashes along with the releaser, not to mention trying to record it. Okay. Lu Mingfei didn't force it. Although it was exciting to materialize his former comrades from his memories and fight side by side, the disadvantages of the illusion cannot be ignored. Enemies in this area can also materialize things from memories. The dragon aliens may not be able to materialize anything threatening. What about the changeable demon lord? Who knows what kind of abominable and blasphemous things it can materialize? The most abundant thing in the subspace is this kind of thing. Lu Mingfei looked solemn, and he almost overlooked this point. But fortunately, the White King who can control this power has been purified, and his bones are also in the hands of his own regiment, temporarily eliminating the possibility of the changeable demon lord wanting to use it. There is a battle armor outside that I commissioned the equipment department to make. See if you can use the alchemy technology you have mastered to make some improvements. Try not to spend too long on the construction period. I may be involved in the battle against aliens soon. Lu Mingfei pulled his thoughts back to reality and directly told the alchemist sergeant the work he had arranged. Battle armor? Old Tang's eyes, like molten gold, suddenly became brighter. He ran out without bothering to clean up the mess left by the alchemy experiment. Lu Mingfei did not rush to follow him out, but went to check on Xu Zihang's condition first. Are you okay, brother? Yeah, it's okay. Further improving Zhongyan is not as simple as I thought. The bloodliner limits the power of the word spirit. It's mainly because of old Tang's alchemy that worked. Shusaham calmed his breathing. The bright golden light in his eyes was fading. The sword shield-shaped iron scales that originally covered the surface of his skin gradually degenerated into normal sweat hair. The changes caused by the violent blood state have disappeared. Damn it, does that old guy give everyone violent blood? Isn't he afraid that the parents of the students will cause trouble for him? Shu Tianzhao was both distressed and angry. As an S-level super executive of the Forgotten Executive Department, Ange had privately given him notes on the bloodline refining technology and knew how risky this method of overdrawing the future in exchange for power was. Take it step by step, no need to rush, Lu Mingfei said calmly. I'm going to Europe next. There is said to be a revived alien there. I'll go with you. Shusaham was about to get up and pack his equipment. No, you stay here. The plasma gun in the alchemist sergeant's plan still depends on your words. Lu Mingfei shook his head. Then let my dad go with you. He is a very powerful warrior. Shusaham said after thinking for a while. I don't mind helping you, the leader, but I have more important things to do right now. Shu Tianzhao sighed that the friendship between the two children was almost as close as the father-son relationship between him and his son, Odion. It took the flesh and blood of the Black King to hawk from me. No matter what it plans to do, I have to find a way to find this damn god. He glanced at Lu Mingfei and gestured. It won't be too late for me to help you, the leader, then. Indeed, the false god Odion is also one of our primary purification targets. Lu Mingfei nodded. Then before your father leaves, you must ensure his faith protection. Understood. Shusaham nodded. The communication between the two was efficient and concise, and the communication was completed in a few words. Wait, what is faith protection? Word spirit? Shu Tianzhao was confused. Your faith in the Empire is your best defense against demons, Shusaham explained simply. I will preach the Emperor's words to you and become his loyal warrior. For real? Although Shu Tianzhao acquiesced to the fact that his son converted to religion and became a faithful believer, he felt that it would take some time for him to convert to religion. It is possible that the false gods cooperated with the Lord of Change or were directly contaminated. Although we are alternative untouchables, we are still at risk of being contaminated, Lu Mingfei said. Believe in the Empire and arm yourself with devout faith in the Empire to help you act alone. After all, we are facing the Lord of Change who is good at deceiving and contaminating. If it is a crazy demon like the bloodthirsty demon, we can still fight to the death. It sounds very biochemical. Okay, I'll listen to you. Shu Tianzhao was helpless. After all, not long ago, he saw himself transformed into a fake Odion with bird wings in his dream, and almost made Shusaham a filial son of Lord Aaron. Then let Yuan Xin go with you. No need, isn't Brother Fingal on vacation in Germany? It's his turn to fight. Laziness is not what a soldier should do. Lu Mingfei left the laboratory to give the father and son some time together. Outside the door, he saw old Tang trying to put himself in the exemplary battle armor. Too cool, Captain. Old Tang's eyes lit up. I want to make a set for myself. Can you replicate it? Lu Mingfei raised his eyebrows. Theoretically, it's possible, but there is no scientific content. It all depends on alchemical technology. Old Tang said after thinking for a while. Then use your alchemical knowledge to improve this set of armor. Don't just melt it and cast it into a new one. I want to keep the scientific structure first. For safety reasons, Lu Mingfei did not rush to let the alchemist sergeant give the exemplary battle armor a major alchemical renovation, or to prepare for mass production of exemplary battle armor. He needed to test whether chaos pollution would take effect on alchemical products. The blasphemous power from the Supreme Heaven could even pollute the structure of the machine. Then let's strengthen the defensor. Then try to make and install a plasma gun as soon as possible, and here can be installed. Old Tang began to immerse himself in research again. Suddenly, Lu Mingfei felt his phone vibrating. He took it out and turned on the screen, and saw a text message sent by his secretary, Norma. Dear Cortos.Lu, this is a mission message. The mission number is SSO 80233. It is absolutely confidential. There have been many Deadpool attacks and injuries in many places in Europe. The European branches of the Castle Executive Department have suffered losses. The Board of Directors and the Elders Council suspect that a second-generation dragon is awakened and is secretly commanding these Deadpools. Please confirm the departure time within 10 hours of receiving the text message. The Academy will book a flight to Naples, Italy for you, and the guns and weapons will take the Academy's special consignment route. Please be fully prepared. Yours sincerely, Norma. Chapter 224 Meeting. The Boeing plane roared through the thin clouds in the sky and landed at Naples International Airport against the rising morning glow on the horizon. This is a famous tourist city in southern Italy. It was built in the 6th century BC. The typical mild Mediterranean climate made it a resort for Roman emperors in the past. When he stepped out of the plane, a cold air with a moist smell of rain rushed into Mingfei's nose. He took a deep breath and then walked down the boarding ladder. "Can you leave me your contact information, handsome guy from China? I really need a boyfriend who can give me a sense of security in all aspects." A beautiful brown-haired girl followed him and walked side by side. Her ragged green eyes stared at Mingfei's profile and smiled brightly. This flight was not exclusive to Mingfei. Although the college booked a first-class cabin for him, his good image and the kind of invisible temperament that could give people a sense of security still attracted a lot of attention. The blood sorrow circulated among the mixed blood seemed to not exist at all. The girl named Abel also talked to him for a long time after he meditated and prayed. "Sorry, Nabril. I have my own responsibilities to fulfill." Mingfei responded politely. "Hectares, here, the word responsibility generally means family. Do Chinese boys already have a family at your age?" The girl clearly heard Mingfei's refusal, and curled her lips in disappointment. Mingfei just smiled and did not reply. A few female calls came from the crowd getting off the plane. There was a very eye-catching wrecked ferry parked next to the runway, and a handsome young man with long hair as bright as gold leaning against the car. His blue eyes were like the sea under the blue sky, and the seemingly calm sea surface concealed an unknown arrogance. "He looks like a perfect man." Nabril raised her eyebrows, and seemed to be amazed by the face and temperament of the blonde young man. "If you are with a man like this, you will probably have to compete with other women for sex. Do you know him?" As she spoke, she saw Mingfei walk straight towards the handsome blonde young man. "We're classmates now." Mingfei turned around and smiled politely. "Goodbye, Abril. I wish you a happy life in the future. Maybe we will meet again. Naples is not big." The girl curled her lips. "Then you'd better not expect such an opportunity. I'm not here for vacation." After saying the last sentence, Mingfei walked towards Caesar Gattuso, who seemed to have been waiting for him for a long time without looking back. "It seems that your trip on the plane is not boring," Caesar said with a smile. "I didn't expect it would be who came to pick me up." Mingfei was also very happy. Caesar was a friend worth making close friends with, and his excellent image always reminded him of his past fighting brothers. Most of the sons of St. Charles have excellent images, even if they have a bad image before undergoing surgery, but after inheriting the genes of St. Charles, they will become handsome and dazzling, and have the same brilliant golden hair as the original body. "I think now in the entire Italian branch, except for me, no one will be willing to pick you up." Caesar shrugged, and his smile became a little helpless. Mingfei was about to ask why, but then he suddenly realized that more than a month ago, Frost, the acting school director of the Gattuso family, tried to use Shuzaham's relatives as a threat to force him to submit to the school board, and then he cut off his arms. This was the result of Principal Angus's plea. "To be honest, I didn't know about this until I got home, but to make you so angry, I think my uncle must have said something to threaten you." "Yeah." Mingfei just nodded lightly. "That's really a sad thing. My uncle once said, people who make mistakes should be punished. Those who have their hands cut off should have their hands cut off, and those who have their feet cut off should have their feet cut off. Otherwise, who will believe in the glory of God?" Caesar's face, which was as perfect as a Greek sculpture, did not reveal too many other emotions. "I hope he has prepared himself to have his hands cut off when he said this." Anyway, Caesar smiled and opened his arms. "Welcome to Naples, amico, friend. You came at a bad time. If you arrived in the afternoon, I could take you to taste the pizza of Sterita, a century-old restaurant in Naples." Caesar put away the hood, and the fiery red ferry drove at a constant speed along the winding mountain road. The rising sun shone on his wind-blown golden hair, which looked even brighter. "This is a little different from what I expected," Mingfei said. "Different? Do you want to ride in my Bugatti Veyron?" Caesar glanced at Mingfei through the review mirror and said with a smile, "It's still parked in the college. I don't plan to transport it back this holiday." The noble son of the Gattuso family, the next heir to the family emperor, is now driving a boy younger than him. If the Gattuso family saw this scene, they would be angry and think that this is a provocation to the entire Gattuso family, but Caesar didn't think so. As a person who had read books such as The Life of Alexander and the biography of the 12 Roman emperors since childhood and was specially trained by the Gattuso family to have imperial spirit, Caesar Gattuso encountered a freshman of S bloodline who was in the limelight when he just entered school. He inevitably wanted to challenge him. For this reason, he even imagined countless scenes like Shakespeare's opera in his mind, such as how he would face Mingfei with a narrow attitude and mind after a fierce battle, or how he would stand up and say something to avoid losing his grace if he lost. However, after getting along with him, Caesar found that the way S-level looked at him was a little wrong. There was no vigilance of being challenged, no disgust or jealousy of the family, no flattery, and no love beyond gender. Such a taboo scene was actually in Caesar's imagination. There was only the gentleness of an old friend who had been away for a long time, and his eyes seemed to be telling that he was a brother who had accompanied him in the past. The entire Shakespearean opera that the young master of the Gattuso family had imagined in his mind was ultimately useless. He decided to first defeat Shuzahan, the general under Mingfei, and then regroup and try to challenge Mingfei, especially after witnessing the battle trial between Mingfei and Principal Angus. His pressure was increasing. Before this, the two could be called close friends. Mingfei naturally didn't know what the young master Caesar was thinking about. He looked at the sea sparkling in the morning sun and said, "I thought the situation would be a little worse." A little worse? Did you expect the situation to be that the awakened dragon flew in the sky and spit fire below? Just like the opening of Dragon Quest? Yes. Mingfei nodded seriously. In the past, when the Astartes received the call for help and rushed to the planet that sent the distress signal was already riddled with holes and on the verge of being conquered by heretics or aliens. How could they be so peaceful and leisurely as they are now, enjoying the wind and watching the sunrise? We don't know the reason either. The dragon has not yet revealed its existence, and the Deadpools have launched various suicide attacks all over Europe, especially where the Behold family is, Caesar said. They have suffered huge losses, as if the dragon is specifically taking revenge on them. Where are we going now? Mingfei asked. The original plan was to go to my estate in Naples, where there is a beautiful lake that is very suitable for swimming. Caesar smiled, but I guess you would rather go to the combat center and discuss the plan to slay the dragon at the conference table. Yes, that's why I'm here. Can you take me there, Caesar? Mingfei said politely. Of course, I have the plan as well. The ferry's engine roared like a beast, and the speed soared instantly. Caesar turned the steering wheel, and the wheels rubbed against the ground, making a sharp scream. The ferry drifted beautifully up the turn and drove off the road, leaving the black bridge cars behind them far behind. If you want to follow, you have to send a few cars that can keep up. Caesar grinned. I hope my uncle doesn't suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, otherwise my, stupid stallion dad will have to come out to connect the meeting. I'm ever on the outskirts of Naples. The security here is strict. The men in black suits did not hide the shotguns and submachine guns in their hands. As long as they received a warning from the sniper, they would open fire and shoot the unidentified enemies into sieves. Behind the high walls of the manor, there are several M134 Vulcan machine guns mounted on the gate, and ammunition belts are linked to the ammunition boxes placed on the ground nearby. Not far away, a grey van parked in the courtyard is stacked with a whole row of individual rockets. Such a firepower configuration should be able to block several rounds of Deadpool's attack. If the dragon also appears, the modern armored force and 129 armed helicopters hidden in the distance will be dispatched immediately. Caesar did not regard Mingfei as an outsider at all, and just told him about the defensive deployment here. Excellent firepower. Mingfei made his own evaluation. The two passed the layers of inspection and entered the basement of the manor. Caesar pushed open the door of the underground conference room and was immediately scrutinized by dozens of eyes inside. I have brought you a guest, a supporter from the Castle Academy headquarters. He is also my good friend, Mingfei. Caesar smiled and turned sideways, focusing the attention of everyone in the conference room on the boy behind him who was wearing a black windbreaker from the executive department but with some extra style. Someone's body trembled violently, and his eyes were instantly dyed with a layer of brilliant golden light, staring at the figure, unable to tell whether it was anger or fear. Frost Gattuso, the acting head of the Gattuso family who was almost killed by Mingfei, was now sitting at the top of the conference table. Chapter 225 Attack. Frost clenched his hands into fists onto the table, and the wounds on his shoulders and chest seemed to start to ache again. After so many years in a high position, it was the first time that Frost felt so close to death. The report of the subsequent treatment showed that the sword that pierced his chest was only a few millimeters away from his heart. This was even the result of his desperate counterattack. Feeling the indifferent gaze of the boy, Frost's expression was uncertain for a while, and finally lowered his head slightly. There was no need to add shame to himself. The boy was destined to be a monster that would fight with the Dragon King. Where is Ange? Why didn't he come? Isn't it not worthy for him to come on stage if he is not an enemy of the Dragon King level? A cold voice sounded. The speaker was a pale and burly old man, sitting there like a thick limestone tombstone, with fine white scales on the corners of his eyes and the surface of his skin. He was examining Mingfei, who came in, with a golden light shining in his eyes. Mr. Beowulf, the Dragon Blood, is a veteran of the secret party. He is over 150 years old, older than the principal. Caesar whispered to Mingfei and gave him a brief introduction. Mingfei nodded. He had read the history of the secret party in the black card area of the library. In the era of sword-slaying dragons before the Industrial Revolution, Beowulf was one of the most prominent surnames. The long poem Beowulf in Norse mythology was written based on the history of this family. In the past, the Beowulf family has always been the most determined, bravest and cruelest dragon slayers. They adhere to the ancient family motto and feed a drop of dragon blood crystal to each boy they give birth to. It is a highly toxic substance, but only after the test of the toxicity will the baby be considered useful by the family. Although this method seems inhumane today, it cannot deny the contribution made by this family in the history of dragon slaying. They are cold-blooded and efficient. Their dead companions are buried and cremated together with the dead dragons. At most, they play a harmonica in front of the grave as a mourning. Moreover, the Beowulf family, whose members are all of high-risk blood, has never had a fallen dead pool that harms mankind. When the men of the family anticipate that they will be swallowed by the dragon nature, they will choose to drink the last cup of strong wine mixed with dragon blood and then commit suicide, so as not to bring shame to their journey and the family. Mingfei admires the Beowulf family very much. There is no doubt that they can provide the war group with soldiers with excellent fighting spirit. Beowulf frowned unhappily. The young man, who was much younger than him, not only did not feel awe, but looked at him with an appreciative look, like a general inspecting an excellent soldier. I know you, Castle's S-level, Anger's most proud sword, he said coldly. Does he think that a student who has not yet graduated from his noble academy can stand on the battlefield against the Dragon Clan? Mingfei was a little surprised, and his eyes turned to Frost, who was sitting above the conference table. The other party still lowered his head and said nothing. After a little thought, he roughly guessed what was going on. Perhaps for the sake of future competition for interests or some other reason, his deeds of killing the second generation were kept secret only within the school board, and the circle outside Castle Academy did not know about it. Give me the location of the enemy or related intelligence, I came here for this. Mingfei said directly, not wanting to explain too much. If there really is such a thing, then I should be hunting the dragon now instead of sitting here chatting with you. Beowulf said coldly. Information. Caesar snapped his fingers, and someone in the conference room quickly handed him 2 copies of information. During this time, he glanced at his uncle, and sighed in his heart that Frost, who liked to suppress others with power, would also be frightened by others one day and couldn't even raise his head. Mingfei roughly glanced at the information. They were all reports of assault and murder cases with photos of the victims attached. These photos were all shocking red. Normal people would probably vomit inappropriately at the scene after seeing them. In addition to ordinary people, there are also many people from the Beowulf family on the victim list. At first, it was a sneak attack disguised as an accident, and then it was a siege and suicide attack. It was not only aimed at men, but also women and children. Including the Dragon Blood Eater himself, he encountered several assassinations, but he was saved by his tyrannical personal force. In less than 10 days, nearly 20 good players of the Beowulf family died, and there was still no clue about the initiate who commanded these dead waiters. No wonder the Dragon Blood Eater was so irritable. This is the first time we have encountered a special situation where the next generation dragon species did not directly conflict with us after waking up, but lurked in human society. There may be another possibility: the enemy is not a dragon, but a hybrid organization of some unknown force. Caesar quickly flipped through the information in his hand and looked at Mingfei sideways. What do you think? I'm only good at fighting, and I'm not good at reasoning and searching. Mingfei said truthfully. In his past combat career, he often began to pour out the Emperor's wrath with the bolter in his hand as soon as he stepped out of the airdrop capsule. There was no chance for so-called reconnaissance and search for information. Generally speaking, Astartes recruits will serve as scouts for a certain period of time before completing the transformation surgery and receiving complete power armor, and then become formal Astartes. However, when Mingfei's transformation surgery was completed, it was already the eve of the departure of the Atonement expedition, and he skipped the stage of scouting new recruits. Then we can only wait for new abnormal alarms from branches in various places. It's best not to go too far away from Italy. Caesar rolled up the sleeves of his windbreaker and glanced at his golden Patek Philippe watch. It has been 27 hours since the last attack. This is the longest interval. Maybe there will be a big attack. This will make it easier for us to act. We can classify it as a terrorist attack and mobilize a lot of power at the national level. What about the artificial intelligence that your castle has invested a lot of resources in developing? Why don't you use it to search? Beowulf said coldly. Are you talking about Norma? Her computing power can indeed cover the whole of Italy, but her power is limited to the internet. For example, unless the dragon wakes up and uses its mobile phone to browse for spook in the grave, no matter how powerful the artificial intelligence is, it will not be able to locate the dragon. Caesar explained calmly. Why are you silent, Frost? You were not so quiet when you were pointing fingers at my intervention before. Beowulf noticed Frost's unusual silence. I have nothing to say. What Caesar said is exactly what I want to say. Frost raised his head slightly, his tone a little absent-minded. Your Gattuso's bloodline classification has always been so interesting. Beowulf's eyes stayed on the young man Caesar for a while. As for the S level of castle, in the end, it will take real battle to prove whether his bloodline is worthy of his strength. Maybe S level is rare in Castle Academy, but it is not outside. None of their dragon-slaying families have sent all their hybrids to Castle Academy. Where are you going? Caesar saw Mingfei turn around and leave without saying a word. Sitting and waiting is not my habit. Mingfei walked out of the door. Then let's go have a sfogliatella together. It's not too late to have breakfast now. Caesar followed with a smile. Come back, Caesar. Frost said in a deep voice. Caesar seemed not to hear, and walked side by side with Mingfei and disappeared in the shadow of the corridor. What are you afraid of, Frost? Beowulf sneered. Frost raised his head and slightly regained his former majesty. He did not answer Beowulf's question, but just breathed a sigh of relief. Do you have any plans? The ferry drove away from the manor, and Mingfei sat in the passenger seat, blowing the cool breeze. No, we can only wait for them to show up. All the men in Beowulf's family are under surveillance, Caesar shrugged. Maybe the dragon has a grudge against the Beowulf family. In that case, we should also take Mr. Beowulf in the car when we leave. Maybe they will show up faster. Do you want to eat sfogliatella? What is that? Cheese-filled puff pastry, the favorite dessert for breakfast for people in Naples. It sounds like a delicious food. But I still want to get the Mingfei didn't finish his words. He instinctively sensed a strong sense of crisis. A premonition from the prophetic psychic power. Attack, from the sky. Several scenes flashed back in Mingfei's mind. He immediately stood up and hugged Caesar Gattuso, who was driving, and jumped out of the car without hesitation. Neither of them was wearing a seatbelt. Caesar instinctively wanted to resist, but after seeing Mingfei's stern face, he roughly understood what was going on and let himself be taken away from his seat. With a thump, the two fell to the ground and rolled several times. Before they could steady themselves and get up from the ground, they heard several deafening explosions like thunder. The ferry that was still driving straight on the road turned into a dazzling fireball, followed by several more fireballs rising behind them. It was the escort convoy sent by the Gattuso family to Master Caesar, but they were engulfed by the explosion without even giving a warning. Caesar's handsome face was covered with a layer of dust, and his sea blue eyes under his messy blonde hair were full of astonishment. He got up and looked around vigilantly, but did not find any figure carrying an RPG. Is it a drone? He raised his head and looked at the sky. With the hybrid's extraordinary vision, he could vaguely see 3 rice-sized aircraft thousands of meters in the sky. Caesar was no stranger to this modern weapon. As early as the Gulf War, drones were used in large quantities. The US military's attack drones attacked Iraq's artillery and ammunition depots. But he never thought that he would become a target of drone attacks. Are you coming for me? Or Mingfei? Go, find cover immediately. Mingfei grabbed Caesar's arm and rushed to the tunnel entrance in the distance. Without any armor protection, they could not withstand the baptism of this kind of hot weapon. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.